Hello, hello. I'm back today with yet another rant review. This time we are reviewing Ruth Ware's One Perfect Couple, which is sort of if you took Love Island and Survivor but made it boring. Before we get into the review, if you don't know me, my name's Aurora. I do bookish content here on YouTube, mostly rant reviews, some other mix of book related things like reading vlogs, though I don't do those as often. If you're interested, stick around. And the way my rant reviews work is I go through the entire book chapter by chapter. I tell you the thoughts I had during the chapter, some of my predictions, and at the end of the review I give you the thoughts I had as a whole on the whole book. That's usually where I get the mouthiest, let's say. So yeah, stick to the end if you want to hear my thorough thoughts on the whole thing. I had a lot on this one. So yeah, let's get into it, starting with the synopsis of the book. First of all, the synopsis compares this book to Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None, which is just the most insulting comparison you could ever make to Agatha Christie. Like, do not compare this book to hers. It doesn't compare at all. It reads, Lila is in a bit of a rut. Her postdoctoral research has fizzled out. She's pretty sure they won't extend her contract, and things with her boyfriend Nico, an aspiring actor, aren't going great. When the opportunity arises for Nico to join the cast of a new reality TV show, One Perfect Couple, she agrees to try out with him. A whirlwind audition process later, Lila finds herself whisked off to a tropical paradise with Nico, boating through the Indian Ocean towards Ever After Island, where the two of them will compete against 4 other couples, Bayer and Angel, Dan and Santana, Joel and Romy, and Connor and Xana, in order to win a cash prize. But not long after they survive on the deserted island, things start to go wrong. After the first challenge leaves everyone rattled and angry, an overnight storm takes matters from bad to worse. Cut off from the mainland by miles of ocean, deprived of their phones, and unable to contact the crew that brought them there, the group must band together for survival. As tensions run high and fresh water runs low, Lila finds that this game show is all too real and the stakes are life or death. So first we get into the prologue, which is so unnecessary. We cannot escape the unnecessary prologues in these thriller books, and this prologue is only like 2 paragraphs. So here we go. He is fighting. He is fighting for his life, but so is she. She is neck deep in the water, there is salt in her eyes, water in her lungs, and she is gasping, choking, unable to breathe. His body is hard and muscled and stronger than she had ever imagined possible, thrashing like a pinned beast beneath the water. And as she struggles against him, she knows 2 things, knows them piercingly, desperately true. 1. It is him or her, and if she lets go, she will be the one drowning under the waves. And 2. To kill someone this way, you have to want them to die with every ounce of your being. The question is, does she? Does she want him to die? Yeah, that's just unnecessary. Honestly, I don't really have much more to say about it than it's unnecessary and kind of just spoils stuff. Then we get into part 1, The Calm, and it's just a date and timestamp of February 15th at 2:13 a.m. saying hello, question mark. And then we go to chapter 1. So our main character Lila is telling Nico that she cannot go to, I have a guest. Hello? She's joining us early on today. Monster, I need you to figure out what you're doing. So we're in chapter 1. Our main character, Lila, is telling her boyfriend, Nico, that she cannot go to a desert island while at her computer, staring at a spreadsheet. And Nico insists that this reality TV show is the opportunity of a lifetime. But Lila says she would not be able to get the time off required to go on the show, and that he should just go alone. Problem is, it's a couples TV show, and he guilts her, saying he doesn't ask for much, which is untrue, and that this could make or break his acting career, and that he has been getting nothing from all his auditions, and this could be his big break. I hate to say it, but I really don't think starring in a reality TV show is going to be a big break in an acting career. Honestly, I don't think that would lead to serious acting opportunities. At least that's not a pipeline I have really witnessed. I've seen the opposite, where actors end up on reality TV shows like, all the housewives. He turns her computer away from her so that she will pay attention to what he's saying.
Don't do that.
It's a new reality show, not much of a prize because it's being done on a shoestring budget for a brand new streaming channel, but it's going to be their flagship launch original, and if it takes off, the exposure could be through the roof. And Ari knows the producer, Baz. They went to uni together. Ari says he can get me in through the back door. Us, I mean. And sorry, what's the concept? 5 couples on a desert island. Elimination format, counting down over 10 weeks. I'm not sure where. Ari was saying something about Indonesia. It's kind of Love Island meets Survivor. You have to stay coupled up to stay in. Sun, sand, sea. Come on, Lil. It's just what we both need. A proper holiday. But it's not a holiday, is it? And how long did you say this would take? 10 weeks? Starting when? Nico shrugged. No idea, but it sounded like they're in a hurry. Ari was asking about my calendar over the next couple of months. I told him there was nothing I couldn't move. I sighed. I'm really sorry, Nico. Maybe your calendar's empty, but mine isn't. There's no way I can just bugger off for the remainder of my contract. You know I can't. Professor Bianchi would sack me, and then how would we pay for rent? Not with Nico's meager snippets of income as an aspiring actor and part-time barista was the unspoken coda, though I didn't say it, but Nico was shaking his head. But Lila, that's the point. If I got this, it'd be real exposure. I could be a household name by the end of the series. We'd be talking TV roles, film, ads, you name it. It'd be proper money, regular money, house buying money. I could take some of the pressure off you. Come on, Lil, think about it, please. He pushed my laptop out of the way and moved to sit on the desk in front of me, holding out his arms, and I leaned into his embrace, resting my forehead on his chest, feeling the familiar mix of exasperation and love. I loved Nico, I really did, and not just because he was funny, charming, and extremely hot, definitely an 8 or 9 to my 6, but he was also an incurable optimist, whereas I was a very firm rationalist. His habit of convincing himself that every rainbow ended in a pot of gold just for him, a habit that had seemed so endearing when we first met, had started to grate after 2 years together. 2 years of me footing the bills and doing the admin and generally acting the grown-up, while Nico chased opportunities that somehow never quite materialized. This sounded like another one of his pie-in-the-sky dreams, just like the West End musical of Twilight that turned out no one had cleared the rights to, and just like his plan to become a YouTube acting coach. There had been so many schemes that had come to nothing, so many shows canceled before the first episode, and pilots that never got off the ground. But if I pointed any of that out, I would be the bad guy. I'd be the person who had denied Nico his chance. So, yet again, we have the FMC saying that her love interest or partner is so hot and out of her league, and she's just so lucky to even be with someone so good looking.
I'm over it. I don't need this anymore.
But anyway, Nico asks her to at least meet with the producers, but she doesn't tell him that she thinks they won't get past the first meeting because she's not the big boobed hottie they were looking for. And yes, those are her exact words. So she's concerned she isn't the physical reality TV type that they usually look for, and she won't fit in with Nico and his gym-toned body. Were they really going to look at a 30-something scientist with fingers stained purple from protein gels and a permanent frown line squinting into the microscope and think, we want to see her jogging down the beach in a skimpy bikini? Unlikely. Female scientist can't be hot. It's the rules, guys. So, thinking that they won't want her on the show, she agrees to the meeting. And Nico is ecstatic, but she warns him not to get his hopes up, that he has to get on the show first. And Nico is confident that they will. And we get a little in-between chapter thing, another date and timestamp, February 15th, 2:13 a.m. Hello, I'm not sure how this thing works, but this is Lila to the over easy over February 15th, 2:14 a.m. Hello, is anyone receiving this? This is Lila to the over easy. Please come in over. And we go into chapter 2. So Lila is at a meeting with her boss, Professor Bianchi. I don't know. I'm probably saying it wrong, like I say all names wrong, but Professor Bianchi, and he is depressed that the latest batch of data is not working out. She specializes in chikungunya, probably butchering that too, which is a viral disease spread by infected mosquitoes, and her predecessor made very successful findings, but left when a private lab headhunted him, so Lila was hired to pick up his work, and unfortunately she hasn't been able to prove his findings, which in theory means she's done her job and discovered it was a false lead, but grant funding apparently does not go to scientists who find something that didn't work, and her predecessor, Tony, she thinks his findings were accurate, even though they're not working now, but when they're tested on a bigger scale, the pattern just doesn't hold up. That's like the most intricate thing we get about her science stuff, besides her just mentioning that she's a scientist like 500 times throughout the novel, and how she's not as pretty as the other girls because she's a scientist. We'll get there. Now she has to break the bad news to her boss and deal with the fallout. And she's stressed she will have to find a new job soon because her contract is almost up and likely will not be renewed. Her contract is actually up in 10 weeks, and now she's going to ask for time off when the show would be 10 weeks. So I was a little confused by her game plan here, but apparently she's only going to ask for 2 weeks. I guess she feels she can write the paper that needs to be written while on the show. I don't know if she's ever seen any of these types of shows, but they usually don't let you have any many personal belongings, especially technology, which we will see. So I don't know why she was thinking she could just write the paper while she was there, but sure. So yeah, he approves the time off, though she doesn't tell him it's for a reality show exactly, just something for Nico's work. I spent the bus ride back to East London watching the winter rain trickle down the steamed up windows and considering my choices. I was 32. All around me, friends from university were buying up houses, settling down, and having kids. My mom's jokes about grandbabies had started to become slightly pointed, but here I was, stuck in a cycle of short-term postdocs that didn't seem to be going anywhere. Once I dreamed of heading up my own team, my own lab even. Talks about the dearth of women in STEM had made it all seem so possible. Funding committees were crying out for driven female scientists, we were told. In truth, though, there had been a healthy proportion of women in my cohort, at least when I started out. My first 2 bosses in the lab had been women, but the funding committees didn't look any more kindly on us than they did on the men, and as the years ground on, more and more of my colleagues had been forced out by the reality of life in academic research. Maternity leave didn't mesh well with funding deadlines and the pressurized race to results. Babies didn't mix with tissue cultures that needed constant tending, cell lines that had to be split at 10 o'clock at night, 5 in the morning, endless round-the-clock work, or else they'd wither and die. And mortgage providers didn't like the uncertainty of short-term contracts. Every time I started a new job, there was a narrow window of security when I was out of the probation period, but not yet under statutory notice of redundancy. And it never seemed long enough to get a foot on the ladder. Combined with Nico's feast or famine line of work, there had been precious little feasting over the 2.5 years we'd been together. It made for a stressful existence, and the longer I'd been in the field, the more I realized that there was a ticking clock, not just one relating to babies. The career pyramid for science was shallow, many researchers, very few lab heads, and the competition was astonishingly fierce. If you didn't tick certain boxes by the time you were in your 30s, you were just not going to make it. Maybe it was time to throw in the towel. Admit once and for all that the dreams I'd held when I left uni were never going to happen, that I was never going to be able to fund my own lab, that Professor Lila Santiago was never going to exist, would never give the keynote address at a prestigious academic conference or be interviewed on This Week in Virology. With every year that ticked by, it was looking increasingly like that I'd be forever a lowly postdoc scrabbling around for my next short-term contract, and maybe it was time to face up to that and figure out what to do. It didn't help that Nico was only 28 and decidedly not ready to settle down in any way. He'd barely changed from the cute wannabe actor I'd met almost 3 years ago at a friend's Valentine's Day Massacre horror-themed party for pissed-off singletons. He'd been a disturbingly sexy Freddy Krueger. I cheated and borrowed a lab coat from work, splattered it with some fake blood. We'd mixed Bloody Marys in the kitchen, watched Friday the 13th on my friend's couch, shrieking and hugging each other during the jump scares, and ended up snogging in the bathroom. The next day, my friend had ribbed me about pulling out of my league. Rude friend. For 6 months, I'd almost forgotten his existence. The only reminder, the occasional thirst trap photos he posted on Instagram. They were easy on the eye. I had to admit it. And they made a nice break to my workday. I'd be flicking through my phone on coffee break, and there would be Nico, sweatily tussled at the gym, all crunched abs and tangled dark hair. On the bus back from the university, there he'd be again, sprawled on a beach in the Algarve, tiny swim shorts stretched across his hips, smirking up at the camera from behind mirrored shades. For half a year, that was it. Me, single, bored, head down at work, barely thinking about the handsome actor I'd groped in my friend's bathroom, and then one day, out of the blue, I'd posted an Instagram photo of myself. It was uncharacteristic. My normal feed was dinners I'd cooked and funny memes about the hell of working in academia. But I'd ordered a dress online, and when it turned up, it was almost comically undersized. The skirt just skimming my thighs, my boobs spilling out of the top. I posted it as a funny what I ordered, what I got pic, but I was aware that while I wasn't going to keep the dress, it also wasn't exactly unflattering. It was about as un-me as it was possible to get, but it also squeezed me in the right places, and my tits did look pretty awesome. The first comment was from Nico, just a string of chili peppers that made me laugh. And the second was a reply from him to his own comment. It just said drink? Question mark. The drink turned into drinks, which turned into dancing, which turned into tequila slammers and drunken snogging, and eventually a shared Uber, which Nico promised to split but never did. Girl, that was your first red flag. Come on. Nico, it turned out, lived around the corner from me in a house shared in Dalston, but that night we ended up at my place, and well, somehow he never quite moved out. 2.5 later, I was older, wiser, and considerably more jaded, facing up to the realities of living in one of the most expensive cities in the world on a researcher's salary. My rent had gone up, my pay had not. I had started to think about plan B, maybe even plan C, but Nico was still dreaming of Tinseltown, still refusing to sell his dinner jacket in case one day he needed to attend the BAFTAs or the Grammys. Nico was still fighting, still hustling for his dreams, and most days that was part of what I liked about him. His relentless optimism, his faith that one day his ship would come in. But on a day like today, the grayest kind of gray London, when even the sun seemed to have given up and gone back to bed, the optimism was a little hard to take. I can relate a little to Lila's and Nico's story here. When I met my boyfriend, I was the breadwinner, and he was chasing dreams of becoming a professional gamer, and I supported him for a long time, and he eventually did get a job at a gaming company. Not professional gaming, but he now works on the game he was trying to go professional in, and now he's the breadwinner while I'm chasing my dreams. So I don't think there is anything necessarily wrong with her being the breadwinner for them. I think that's great. But the problem comes when it's been so long that she's starting to resent him for it and not happy in their relationship. Plus, she has an issue that he's younger and she wants to settle down and she knows that he will not want to. So I just don't get why she would stay with him. I get she thinks she won't do any better because he's so hot, but I think you need someone more stable in your life, girl. I don't think you need to be going on a reality TV dating show for him when you're not even sure about your relationship. If you weren't sure about your relationship, would you take the time off when you're already unstable in your job to go on this show that might very small potential in saving his career? I wouldn't do it, but I guess she likes Nico that much. Anyway, that rant aside, she goes home, gets off the bus. When she gets inside, Nico's on the phone, and when he hangs up, he picks her up and twirls her around because apparently he had sent photos of them to Baz, the producer of One Perfect Couple, and he loved them and wants to set up a meeting with them. He said we're exactly the kind of couple they're looking for. They want real authenticity, not the usual Love Island types. Real authenticity? I looked down at myself. Crumpled t-shirt, wet jeans, old trainers for working in the lab. Is that code for needs a wax and to lose 5 pounds off her arse? Actually, he said he reminded him of Zoe Deschanel, Nico said. And by the way, your arse is perfect. I noticed he didn't comment on the wax. As someone who is overly self-deprecating, is that how fucking annoying I sound? Because the amount of self-deprecating comments she makes about herself in this book drives me crazy. And if I sound anything like that, which I probably do, oh my god, I'm so sorry for my boyfriend because he deals with me making all those comments. I'm really bad about it. But yeah, Nico reassures her that Baz likes that she's a scientist and says that she is girl next door fuckable. Lila thinks this comment is gross, which I agree it is. And Nico explains that they're just talking types, like reality TV types. And he goes on to tell her that they start filming in a matter of weeks, and they are filming on an exclusive boutique resort in the Indian Ocean, which isn't actually open to the public yet, but Baz is getting it for free for PR, and he shows her pictures of the place, and it is a really nice fancy villa, but there's a twist. Holy fuck, Nico, it looks incredible. Doesn't it? Nico was smirking. He knew he'd scored a hit with the pictures. It's an elimination, so we have to commit to a minimum 2 weeks, maximum 10, plus the winner has to agree to do PR on return to the UK. I don't totally understand the format, but from what I could make out, each week there's some kind of challenge, and I think the loser is out, and the winner can pick who they couple up with, so the couples shake up every week. If there had been a soundtrack to our conversation, this would have been followed by a record scratch. I'm sorry, what? You very much did not mention the recoupling part. Didn't I? Nico looked a little uncomfortable and more than a little guilty. Judging by his expression, Baz absolutely had mentioned it, and he had deliberately failed to tell me. I mean, it's not a big deal. It's just for the cameras. Are you telling me this is Love Island, only the twist is wife swapping? I mean, I don't think anyone taking part is married, so technically, Nico began and then saw from my expression that this particular argument was not the one that was going to win me over and hastily changed tack. But the point is, it's just to mix things up. You don't actually have to shag the person you're coupled up with. It just means you're a couple within the show's format. You could choose to stay coupled up with the person you entered the show with, but obviously they're not going to want everyone to do that. I imagine couples who stick together too closely are going to find themselves eliminated in the tasks. You mean they'll rig the outcome to get rid of faithful couples? I knew my voice sounded shocked and I could hear the primness, but somehow I couldn't stop myself. Nico rolled his eyes. Lil, these things are always rigged. It's not Jeopardy. Nobody's watching this to see how good your general knowledge is. They want drama. They want big characters. They want screaming arguments and people just shagging in the jacuzzi for the cameras. Anyone boring is going to get the axe. So is that what you'll be doing after I'm gone? Shagging in the jacuzzi? What? No, stop twisting my words. I didn't say that. I said it has to look like that. I'm not going to be shagging anyone. But yeah, maybe I'll shed a few tears after you've gone, talk about how you were my soulmate, cry on some girl's shoulder while she strokes my hair. I'm a fantasy first boyfriend, remember? That's what they'll want from me. And I'm girl next door fuckable, I said with a touch of bitterness. So what does that leave me doing? Fucking the guy in the next villa? Over my dead body, Nico said. And now he grips me by the waist, kissing the side of my neck. Seriously, Lil, this is an acting job. That's why they're contacting acting agents. You're not an actor, and they know it. They'll be fine with you failing the first task, maybe the second. You'll be on a plane home within fortnight. And I'll melt everyone's hearts with how broken I am after you're gone. Make a strategic friend zone alliance with some heart of gold influencer, and lose with some good grace in the final. And then I'll come home as the abs that launched 1,000 TikToks. Ugh, I pulled myself out of his grip and picked up the tea he'd left on the table, nursing it as I walked to the window, more to give myself time to think than because I really wanted it. Nico, I don't know. I really wish you'd explained all this before I spoke to Professor Bianchi. Yeah, I don't know about you, girl, but hell no. I'm too jealous for my man to even pretend to shag another woman or even have her lean her head on his shoulder. Like, no. Hell no. Do not touch my man. Also, is anyone else bothered by the fact that he expects Lila to get sent home early while he goes on dating other girls? And that he refers to himself as potentially being the abs that launched 1,000 TikToks? Yeah, I have the ultimate ick. This would be potentially breakup material for me, even suggesting this. I'd be like, oh, you want to go date other women? I don't care if it's for pretend to go do it. But she tells him that her time off was approved if she types up the results of her findings while she is there. And Nico is so excited thinking that this is really going to happen. She is doubtful that the show will actually get aired, much like Nico's other projects, but at least they will have an all expenses paid vacation. So she agrees to the meeting. It's just a meeting. They might not even want me. Of course they'll want you. How could anyone not want you? You're a fucking scientific genius and you're hot. What more could anyone want? The scientific genius wouldn't have ended up in a research dead end with a publication record that had holes in it the size of the Grand Canyon, I thought a little wearily. But Nico was still speaking. And you know what? I know you can only take 2 weeks off, but I don't care. We're the perfect couple no matter who takes the prize. We are, I said. I put the cup down, stood on tiptoe, and kissed Nico on the lips, feeling his wide smile against my mouth, irrepressible even as he kissed me back. This is going to change everything. He spoke the words close to my ear as he gathered me into him, squeezing me tight. I can feel it in my bones. I could only hope he was right. Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to change everything. Just not in the way either of you were hoping.
Harry, I have a bad feeling.
We get another in-between chapter radio call, February 15th, 2:14 a.m. Over easy, can you hear me? The wind is really picking up and I'm getting seriously concerned. Is there any kind of storm shelter on the island? February 15th, 2:16 a.m. Over easy, if you're receiving this, please come in. This is urgent. The storm is getting really bad and I think we might need to evacuate. In fact, just now. Oh God. Chapter 3. So they have their meeting with Baz. He keeps referring to her as a boffin, which I guess is British slang for a scientist, engineer, or technical expert and can come off as really patronizing. And it's pissing Lila off, and she corrects him, saying she prefers scientist or virologist, and if he thinks she is being funny for some reason. And then the convo moves on to her and Nico's relationship, and then Nico himself. He asks Nico's 5-year plan, and he says he sees himself as the next James McAvoy or Adam Driver. Yes, those two successful actors who also famously got their start on reality TV shows. Sure. Baz clearly tunes this out and calls Lila Leela. He will continue to call her by the wrong name and asks her plan. It's Lila, actually, I said slowly, buying myself time to think. It wasn't just that Nico's answer was sort of delusional. Did he really think that he was on an Adam Driver career path? I might as well compare myself to Rosalind Franklin. It was also that not one word of his answer had featured me, or indeed any kind of home life at all. 5 years, I stopped. Where did I see myself? In 5 years, I would be 37. A few weeks ago, I might have answered, if not confidently, then at least optimistically, heading up a research team on something exciting. Dengue, maybe there was some exciting work on IgA antibodies coming out of the US with a permanent academic post. I'd have bought a flat somewhere in East London, convenient for my mom to come and stay. Maybe even a little house if I were prepared to commute. There might be kids on the horizon, if not actual babies, at least the idea of one in the not so distant future. Now, after the conversation I'd had the other day with Professor Bianchi, I honestly wasn't sure. I felt like I'd screwed my chances with this project, and I badly needed a few publication credits on my CV. The long gap with no papers was starting to look ominous. And how long would it take me to find another more promising project, get hired, complete the postdoc, write up a couple of papers, and get them through the publication hurdles? 3 years? That was pushing it. I'm gonna butcher this. The chikungunya research had been supposed to give me a boost onto the next rung of the ladder. Unfortunately, that rung had just broken. And then she continues on to answer that she is at a crossroads and has some decisions to make. Baz asks her, what decision? Sweetheart. Yes, he says sweetheart to her. Girl, this would be where I leave. This would be where I leave. She says she has to decide if science is still for her, and Baz says this show will get her more high profile than when she came in, and she thinks that this really isn't the kind of profile she wants for the academic world. So if you're also concerned that this will affect your professional career, why would you do it? She asks him to clarify what the winning prize is and how the show is structured, and another producer explains that the prize money isn't fixed. It's determined by how everyone does in the challenges, and in the end it could be split or given to one person, but the details are still confidential. And really the point isn't the money, apparently, it's the professional opportunities the show will open up for you. But anyway, she asks what the format is. It's elimination, the unnamed producer said. 10 contestants at the start, and they'll get whittled down one by one each week over 9 weeks. There will be some strategic advantage to being in a couple for the tasks, so there will be a recoupling opportunity each week, and you might find there's a few twists and turns to shake things up. But again, the details of that are top secret at this stage. All you need to know is 5 couples go in and 1 couple comes out. And it could be you. But Baz was speaking, his microphone overriding mine, and he clearly felt like he was the one who was supposed to be asking the questions, not me. So we know about Nico from Ari here. He gestured at the place where Ari's face presumably was on his screen, although confusingly it was the opposite side from mine. But let's hear a bit more about you, Leela. Would you call yourself a feminist? A feminist? I was puzzled. I wasn't sure what I'd been expecting on this Zoom call. Questions about my relationship with Nico seemed fair game, but this was a surprise. What on earth was Baz trying to find out? I mean, I guess so. I believe in gender equality. Doesn't everyone?
Sure, in a perfect world.
Define gender equality. I guess having the same pay for the same work, the same professional opportunities, the same bodily autonomy. I was more and more mystified. And you wouldn't say you had that already? Baz was leaning forward towards the camera, frowning, but he didn't look put off by my responses. If anything, they seemed to have encouraged him. Well, I was completely at sea now. I mean, I'm a scientist. If in doubt, I look at what the data is telling me, and according to the data, no, we definitely aren't there yet. In my own industry alone, less than a quarter of science professors in the UK are female, even though women make up nearly half the workforce. Citing your sources, I like that, Baz said with a grin, even though I hadn't cited any sources at all. Actually, my stats were from an article I read in Nature a few years ago, but Baz had no way of knowing that. What on earth was he on about? My jokey remark to Nico about needing a wax and to lose 5 pounds came back to me, and an image floated into my mind. Baz turning to his assistant, concerned. We gotta find out if she's Harry Mary under that lab coat. I stifled a laugh, and then hastily straightened my face, remembering that we were on camera. Fortunately, Baz was still talking. In your politics, would you say they're left of center, centrist, right? I guess center left? Sorry, is this relevant? Sorry, you're right, I got off track, Baz said with a wave of his hand, but finding out what makes you tick, what makes you different, sure, that's important. We don't want to end up with 5 identikit couples on the island. We want to get people from right across the spectrum. I suppose that's what we're going for with the show. That's what we're going to sell to real TV. We want real couples, real authenticity, you know? None of this Love Island manufactured shite. We want real partnerships tested to the hilt in the white heat of competition. If you're looking for authenticity, you've come to the right place, Nico said, putting his arm around me. Lila and me have that in spades, and we're in it to win, right, Lil? Right, I said, stretching my lips again in that fake smile. It felt like the meeting was coming to a conclusion without any of questions being answered. Nothing had been clarified. There was no real information at all, just smoke and mirrors. It was completely antithetical to the way I was used to working. Every fiber in me wanted to pin Baz down and get a proper answer from him, but I could feel Nico beside me practically begging me not to fuck this up for him, and I guess that it was probably just how TV worked. Fake it till you make it, wasn't that what they said about Hollywood, or is that Silicon Valley? Either way, it was a long way from the world I knew. Faking anything at all was the polar opposite of good science. Well, Baz looked across at the colleague sitting next to him and raised one eyebrow when she nodded. He turned back to the camera. I think we can safely say you'll be joining us on the island in a couple of weeks. I fear Miss Lila here isn't seeing all these questions as the red flags they are, but it doesn't matter because obviously now that they've been accepted, Nico is going to drag her onto the show whether she likes it or not. But she seems kind of like a doormat, so she's just gonna go with it. Baz tells them to be on the lookout for emails with contracts and flight details, and Lila is thrown off by how fast this all seemed to have gone, but Nico is concerned that she's seriously going to turn this down when they could be famous. And to think about his career. She says the only reason she's even entertaining this is for his career, and that Baz gave her a weird vibe. Of course, Nico thought he was great, never mind the fact that he repeatedly called your girlfriend sweetheart and by the wrong name, and then downplayed her career as a scientist. Sure, yeah, he's great. And Lila says he seemed like a bit of a chancer. A chancer? Nico looked at me like I was mad. In what way? Well, I scrabbled to try to remember one of the warning bells that had gone off during the call. Effing Productions, calling me Leela. I didn't think Nico would care about any of those, and I certainly couldn't say that he reminded me of Ari. Okay, for example, what do you think Baz meant about selling it to real TV? What do you mean? When he was talking about us being an authentic couple, he said, that's what's going to sell to real TV. But I thought they'd already sold it. Ari made it sound like it was a done deal, their flagship show and all that. Nico waved a hand. You're reading too much into it. It's just a figure of speech. He probably meant that's what Real will like about you and me. I guess I don't know. I was surprised no one from Real was on the call. They're busy people, Lila. I mean, let's be clear, they're setting up a whole new TV network. It's not surprising they don't have time for meetings about flight times. Well, that's not what the meeting was about, Nico. The meeting was about who would be on the show. So, are you Delulu or are you lying to her about how stable this really is? I personally think Nico knows the show is not picked up yet and is gaslighting her about it, but that's actually never really revealed. She goes on to say she wants to be supportive, she just wished they had answered more of her questions, and Nico says that he knows this is out of her comfort zone, but there is contracts and legalese that is Ari's job to worry about, and he has years of experience, and he will not get them caught up in something not kosher. Yeah, sure. So, of course, she then agrees to do the show, despite her unease. and he tells her that she will need to get herself a bunch of bikinis and she can use his credit card to do it. And then they go ahead and do the deed because they're so excited about it. Then we get another in-between chapter radio call. I think that's what we're going to call it. February 15th, 6:34 a.m. Hello, is anyone out there? This is an emergency mayday call. We're stranded on an island in the Indian Ocean after the storm last night. I don't have any coordinates, but we flew into Jakarta and sailed southwest on a yacht called Over Easy. The yacht is gone and we have no idea what's happened to it. Several of our group are seriously injured and need medical help. I don't know how long the battery on this radio will last, but if anyone can hear me, please send help. I repeat, this is an emergency mayday call for medical assistance. Can anyone hear me? Can anyone help? Over. And then we go to chapter 4. Over the next few days, they sign contracts, NDAs, and book flights. Her mom was surprisingly the only one to raise any concern about the show, bewildered and concerned that Nico is having a midlife crisis, and Lila explains that the show is for his career. Her mom is still confused why she has to go, since Lila can't tell her the format of the show. She can't tell her it's like a dating show. I don't think she would tell her anyway, even if she could, because she knows her mom would talk her out of it. The fact that the format was couples was why I'd been invited. It wasn't why I'd said yes. Why I'd said yes, well, I wasn't sure if I was ready to probe too deeply on that. Part of it was the knowledge that Nico and I were at a crunch point. Not a midlife crisis exactly, but we couldn't carry on like this. Him banging his fist on the closed door, me increasingly resentful of supporting his dreams, when my own were receding further and further. Nico needed a break, and so did I, just in different ways. So you're self-aware that this relationship isn't really going anywhere, at least that you want it to go, and you think a reality dating show is going to solve it. Right, okay. I just think, my mom said, filling the silence, that this is the wrong time for all of this. You're 32, love. You and Nico should be settling down, and I can't imagine your boss is too pleased. Mom, Nico needs this, and I love him, I said, and that's what you do for people when you love them. You support them. Yeah, I also don't think what you do for people when you love them is ask them to go on a reality TV dating show and potentially date and fake snog other people, but I guess she doesn't have a problem with Nico asking her to do that. She loves him. But we skip to February, where they arrive in Indonesia, and on the plane ride, she begins her paper. So she's dead tired, but Nico rested the whole time. So he's cool, chill, and carefree. He looked fresh and positively bouncing with excitement as he wheeled his carry-on to the air-conditioned bus, whereas I felt gray and drained. When I caught sight of my reflection in the bus window, I didn't look anything like a contestant on a reality TV show. I looked like what I was, a stressed and mildly hungover scientist who was trying to spin straw out of gold and form a publishable paper out of dog crap results. Guys, how many times do you think we're going to hear about her being a scientist and how she is an ugly hag compared to Nico and that she's so lucky to be with him? Because I think it's going to be way too many times. They meet their driver, they drive through Jakarta and pull up to a harbor where Camille, Baz's assistant, tells them that they are the last to arrive, so as soon as they are ready, they will gather for a Q&A on the boat, where they can meet other contestants and ask any questions they want. Nico is upset that they're the last ones there and everyone else had a chance to form connections already, but Camille gestures them to a big yacht with Over Easy painted on the side, which the boat we hear talked about in those in-between chapter snippets. One of the crew members tells Camille the captain wants to talk to her about a storm that's coming in 2 to 3 days, and she brushes him off saying that's a question for her boss, and they move off to find him. And Lila is nervous at this mention of a storm, which she should be, yet she still gets on the boat. And on the boat, they are assigned to a crappy, cramped cabin, and Nico admits that this is not what he was anticipating. The pictures of the resort were super grand, so he thought the yacht rooms would be too, but they take off. Lila showers, and before she is done, Nico tells her that Camille said they were all ready for them, and Lila says she'll meet him up there, and 10 minutes later, she struggles to find them, but eventually does, and she sees the group of people and is jealous of how beautiful they all are. They take turns to introduce themselves and share something about their partner as a little icebreaker activity. So lock in, guys, this is gonna be where we get to meet the other contestants. My name is Angel, short for Angelique. I am shockingly French. You may not have guessed. There was a little ripple of laughter from around the circle. A fact about me, I wanted to be a Formula One racer when I was a little girl. More laughter, this time a little uncertain, as if no one was quite sure whether she was joking or not. I have been with my boyfriend Bayer for 2 years. A fun fact about him, he detests wasps. There was another round of laughter, this time more confidently. The big dark-haired man sitting beside her spread his hands and raised his eyebrows, making the piercing in his right brow wink in the sunshine. What? He looked Italian maybe, or perhaps Turkish. His accent was pure Vinnie Jones, the kind of guy you could have met working out in a gym in Hackney any day of the week. I could smell his aftershave from across the circle, and his t-shirt looked to be at least 2 sizes too small, presumably aimed at making his impressive biceps look even more pumped. But there was a self-deprecating twist to his grin that made me like him. He looked like he would be quick to take offense, but quick to laugh at himself too, if the joke was against him. Am I wrong? Little bastards never met a pint of beer they didn't want to fucking drown themselves in. Anyway, I'm Bayer. Been with my girl for 2 years, like she said. I'm 28. Facts about me, I can bench press 400 pounds. There was no laughter this time, only an impressed murmur from around the listeners, though the stat meant nothing to me. Was 400 pounds a lot? Girl, you keep going on about how you're such a smart scientist, but you wonder if 400 pounds is a lot to bench press. I guess it must have been from the way he trotted it out. Fact about Angel, he paused, thinking. She can get her ankles behind her head in yoga. Ain't as fun as it sounds, lads, trust me. There was more laughter this time, a proper guffaw from some of the men, an ankle shot Bear look that was 1 part you disgust me to 2 parts ha-ha, very funny. But I could sense the affection beneath. They felt like a good couple, like the kind of people who would be sending each other up in public, but would have each other's back if it came down to it. We continued slowly around the circle, introducing ourselves, although the names and facts of each couple began to blur into each other. There was Romy, who looked like she was going to fill the bubbly blonde casting niche. She did a lot of giggling and hair twirling during her brief intro, and she seemed like an odd match with her boyfriend Joel. He was skinny and serious looking with thick, angular glasses, and he forgot to give a fun fact at all. In fact, his introduction was very brief, as if he wanted to get it over with. Romy's fun fact was that she had 150,000 subscribers on YouTube, which seemed like more of a flex than a fun piece of trivia, but I suppose no more than Bayer's. Next came Santana, who was a stunning, curvaceous strawberry blonde, something like redheaded Adele, with the poshest accent I'd ever heard in real life, and cleavage that made me feel better about having my own on display. It was a look that was definitely working for her. Her boyfriend Dan had surfer dude, sun-streaked hair, and was cute in a boy band kind of way. Their fun facts was a joint one. They had matching tattoos of Mickey and Minnie Mouse, which seemed like a weird thing for 2 adults to admit, but the rest of the circle cooed and smiled appropriately. The next couple were Connor and Zaina. In a room full of beautiful people, they were easily the standout, as much for the contrast of their good looks, different but complementary, as a couple in a way that Joel and Rami had not been. Neither gave their ages, but Connor looked to be late 20s or early 30s, tall and lean with a close-shaved head, sharp cheekbones, and startling light gray eyes, made all the more striking by his deep tan. He had the kind of feral grace that you saw in people who were extremely fit and supremely in command of their own bodies. I found myself wondering if he was a professional athlete, a climber maybe, which would have fitted with his contained strength and the tan. But when he described himself, he said only that he was in media, which could have meant anything. His fun fact was that he'd been born at 6:06 on the 6th of June. Maybe it was Connor's air of complete confidence, but his girlfriend Zaina looked much younger and much less self-possessed. Barely out of uni, I would have said. Though that could have partly been down to her size. She was small, barely 5 foot, and almost ethereally slender, with a heart-shaped face, huge Bambi-like dark eyes, fringed with sooty lashes, and long, shimmering chestnut hair that cascaded like waves over her shoulders, hair that I'd noticed and envied through the door. She spoke very quietly and didn't give a fun fact about herself, and when she sat down, I got the impression that she was relieved to be out of the limelight. It was then that I realized that everyone else had spoken and Nico and I were up. Nico stood up holding my hand and smiled around the circle. Hey guys, I'm Nico, I'm 28, and I'm an actor from East London. Lila and I have been together almost 3 years. Again, I bit back the urge to correct him, but let it pass. And our fun fact, and I guess it's a joint one like Dan and Santana, is that it's our 3rd anniversary this week. I did a double take and then realized he was right. Well, if you counted our anniversary as the day we got off in my friend's bathroom. It was the 2nd week of February, almost Valentine's Day. 3 years. 3 years. Even if I quibbled Nico's definition of together, it sounded like a lot. There were wolf whistles from around the group, and someone made a crack about it being time for Nico to propose maybe. I was so distracted that I stammered my way through my introduction, saying something about working in science, and then sat down, loosening my sweaty hand from Nico's as soon as I reasonably could, and wiping it surreptitiously on the skirt of my red dress. I'm Lila, and I have no idea what I'm doing here, was what I had really wanted to say, but it was the one thing I couldn't admit. Fake it until you make it, I heard again in my head. But I wasn't a faker. I was a scientist. Okay, we get it. The absolute opposite of a faker. Someone whose prime duty was to the truth. Could I really do this? Could I bullshit my way through the next 2 weeks? I took a gulp of my drink. It was disgustingly warm, and this time the sweetness made me shudder. We got another scientist mention. I really should have kept a tally, but that would have driven me crazy. So after their introductions, Camille tells them they have the rest of the evening to get to know each other. They just need to turn in all of their devices, which everyone is shocked about, even though it was apparently in the contracts. They argue about it, and Baz comes in saying anyone who doesn't like it can fuck off, and he will sue them. Lila asks if she can keep her laptop without internet on to do her paper, and of course they say no. Camille assures them they will have a procedure with contacts and a dedicated number for families to check in, and they would tell them if anything crucial happened at home. And then one of the other guys, Bayer, asks how they know they'll tell them. They could just sit on the information. Baz interjects again that they don't know, but they can go home if they have an issue with it. Then Connor stood up. Standing, I realized he was even taller than I thought. He had a good 6 inches on Baz, and in the muted light filtering through the awning, his pale gray eyes looked almost uncanny. Your word is good enough for me, Baz, he said. I left my phone in my room, but I'll get it to you as soon as possible, and so will Zaina. And then he smiled. For a moment, Baz didn't say anything. Thanks would have been the natural response, but he didn't say it. He simply stood there, staring Connor down, unblinking. I looked from one man to the other, trying to figure out what the energy crackling between them meant. I've never been a body language kind of person. I prefer data, figures, cold hard facts. But now I wished I had Nico's gift for reading between the lines, because there was something going on here. And I couldn't for the life of me figure out what it was. Baz should have been grateful to Connor for backing him up, but he didn't look it. He was looking at Connor almost as if he disliked him. Was he pissed off at Connor for acting like Baz needed his support to get the group on his side, or was there some other undercurrent, something that I was missing? Connor, meanwhile, was acting not quite conciliatory, but there was a touch of magnanimity to his voice, as if he was making it clear that he didn't have to comply, but was choosing to. What was going on here? Did these two know each other? It was Baz who looked away first, down at his phone as if to underscore the fact that he, at least, didn't have to give up his tech. Very, very interesting here. But with that out of the way, they give them information packs and they leave them to mingle. Guys, I'm just really shocked Lila didn't put up more of a fight about not being able to have her laptop. Like, that was the whole reason she agreed to do this, was if she could write her paper at the same time, and now she's just like, oh well.
That's the whole point.
We get another one of those in-between chapter tidbits. February 16th, 2:28 p.m. Hello, my name is Jill Richards. This is, God, I'm not sure, maybe our third Mayday call. Please, if you can hear us, send urgent help. We're stranded on an island about 20 hours south of Indonesia. 20 hours by boat, that is. We came here by boat. It was swept away in the storm. We don't know what happened to the crew. There are people here with serious injuries, life-threatening injuries, and my girlfriend... God, my girlfriend. Look, please, this is a Mayday call. If anyone can hear me, please respond or send help. We don't know how long they will last. I don't know, guys. I don't really like these little in-between chapter Mayday calls. Like, they're kind of spoiling some of the plot here, but maybe that's just me.
But anyways, like and subscribe.
But we go into chapter 5. They're back in their cabin, and Nico is on his phone making the most of the little time left he has with it, and Lila tells him that was weird. Nico says it wasn't that weird, they just missed it in the contract. Did you seriously not read the whole contract? Nico, sure, I don't think he would read the whole contract. But Lila is a scientist who is very into the details and facts about things, as she keeps telling us, and she was hesitant to even do this. And you're gonna tell me she didn't read the entire contract? Yeah, that's not believable to me. Anyway, Lila says she wasn't talking about the phones when she said that was weird. She was referring to the tension between Baz and Connor. And Nico brushes her off, saying he has to call his mom, so she goes to hand in her tech, and while she is waiting for Jewel to hand in all of his and Rami's stuff, she looks at one of the information brochures. First couple listed was Connor, 31, and Zaina, 22. And the age gap made me do a double take. Was it that weird that a 31-year-old was dating a 22-year-old?
It's really creepy.
Not that much weirder than my 4-year age gap with Nico, I guessed. Connor, whose bio said he was a YouTuber and NFT trader, was grinning in his headshot, his cheeks crinkled in a wide, infectious smile that had me smiling back, almost in spite of myself. Zaina, on the other hand, stared seriously out from under narrow, straight brows and described herself as a part-time model, which wasn't hard to believe. She didn't say what she did with the other part of her time. Then there was the couple who had spoken first at the round circle, Bayer 28 and Angel 28. Bayer describes himself as a fitness instructor from North London, Angel as a Pilates coach and influencer, not necessarily in that order, whatever that meant. Maybe she influenced people to do Pilates? The next couple listed was Dan 25 and Santana 25. Dan's picture showed him laughing and topless, flexing for the camera in a way that looked a tiny bit narcissistic for my taste. His bio described him as a swimsuit model. Santana was finger combing her strawberry blonde hair, and her bio said that she was a champagne socialite, another term that left me at sea. Was socialite a typo for socialist? Or was it her idea of a joke? Perhaps it was a fancy way of saying she was unemployed, though she didn't look it. In person, she'd had the glowing, glossy look of someone with a lot of money. Then there was Joelle, 33, a teacher from South London, and the only contestant older than me, and Romy, 31, beauty influencer. Their headshots reinforced the impression I'd had at the meeting of an oddly mismatched couple. Joelle grinned shyly at the camera through thick, blocky glasses that gave him an endearingly geeky look. He was handsome in a kind of nerdcore way, but he looked like he'd be totally at home in one of the labs I'd worked in. A sharp contrast to Romy, who was made up to the nines with thick foundation, platinum hair, and lashes I was sure couldn't possibly be real. I tried to imagine her pipetting a tray of samples and failed. There was no way you'd be able to fit a pair of nitrile gloves over nails for a start. Yeah, Lila, girls who wear makeup and have fake nails surely couldn't be scientists. So annoying. Finally, I got to meet Nico. Nico, 28, actor and presenter, and Lila, 32, doctor. Oh, for fuck's sake, I said out loud. Sorry, did I? I looked up. Joel had come around the corner of the deck and was standing, looking a little anxious at the foot of my lounger. Sorry, not you. I was reading the information pack, and they've got my job wrong. I'm not a doctor. I mean, I am a doctor, I suppose, but not in the medical sense. I'm a PhD. I work on viruses. I bloody hope no one's going to expect me to do tracheotomy. I can't say that. I know the word, but I can't say it right now. Tracheotomy while we're here. Joel laughed. Join the club. They've got me down as a teacher. I'm actually a lecturer in journalism at St. Clement's. I already told them once when they sent the pack around the first time. A lecturer? I sat up and pushed my sunglasses up my nose. No way, I thought I recognized a fellow academic. How do you find St. Clement's? Honestly, bloody shit. I don't know about science, but my side is all 0 hours, contracts, and no job security. I imagine research is probably a bit better? I snorted. I wish. Well, I mean, to be fair, it's not 0 hours, but it's all short-term contracts, so you're always budgeting from one 24-month postdoc to another. Tell me about it, Joel said ruefully. Then he laughed, and for a moment we just sat there, or rather I sat and he stood, grinning at each other like idiots, savoring this weird moment of camaraderie in the middle of the Indian Ocean. It was Joel who broke the moment. So, what brings a virologist on a reality TV show, hoping to invest your prize money in cutting-edge COVID research? I laughed. Nothing as fashionable as COVID. Okay. I'm working on this fucking word, guys. Chikungunya at the moment. When Joel looked politely blank, I added, it's a mosquito-borne disease, a bit like malaria, but not quite as deadly. There's no cure and no treatment. It's classified as a neglected tropical disease by the WHO, which basically means there's also no funding. Anyway, as you can probably guess, I'm here for my boyfriend. He's the one with hopes of breaking out. It's a weird format, isn't it? I get the impression that's how a fair number of us ended up here, dragged along by our more extroverted half. Guilty, Joel said, placing a hand on his chest and smiling again. He really had the most endearing smile. It crinkled his eyes at the corners and changed his rather solemn expression completely. As you may have guessed, I was not the one who applied to go on the show. Rami, that's my girlfriend. She's the one with the dreams of the big time. If I'm honest, though, he paused and then stopped. What? Well, look, I'm conscious, and this probably sounds a bit snobbish, and I don't mean it to be, but I watch a lot of these shows with Rami. She's kind of a reality TV addict, Real TV's ideal subscriber, and there's a real type. They're all influencers and YouTubers and so on. They're only on it to make it big. I think it's what made shows like Traders so compelling, because it was the kind of people you'd never get on Love Island or Selling Sunset. Just normal, regular people. And I think at the end of the day, that's what people want. Yes, they want the Real Housewives and the X Factors, but they also want normal people being normal. A bit like how Big Brother was when it first started, before people realized it could be a passport to fame. I think that's why they've gone with this format. It's quite canny, actually. Huh. It was the first time I'd heard anyone offer a good explanation for what had seemed to me, ever since Nico explained it, a very strange setup, and Joel's theory made sense. It also explained why Baz had been so excited about my authenticity. It was a code word for exactly what Joel was talking about. The fact that I was a million miles from your usual reality TV contestant. You could be right. And I guess there's something pretty compelling about watching real couples be torn apart in front of your eyes, Joel said, and now he wasn't smiling anymore. He looked, if anything, a little resigned. How do you mean? Well, shows like The Bachelor and Love Island, yes, they're all hooking up, but it's mostly strategic. They've only known each other for a few days. There's no real emotional connection there. Whereas this show, if they succeed in breaking up one of the couples, yes, it's going to be a lot harder to do that. But if they manage, it's going to be car crash TV, a real long-term relationship ripping apart on screen. God, a shiver ran through me, realizing he was right. Do you really think that's what they're going for? Girl. Joel shrugged. Honestly, I have no idea, but I don't imagine they'd be upset if it happens. And for the entertainers, the stakes are pretty high. If someone starts to feel their partner is weighing them down, he stopped, raised one eyebrow. I felt a sickness that had nothing to do with the motion of the waves. Nico and I have a pact, I said slowly. I can't take more than 2 weeks off of work. I'm going to try to flunk one of the first few tasks, get eliminated. He's going to try to make a strategic alliance with one of the other singletons. But we agreed it. I can't see him really betraying me. Okay. Joe smiled again, but this time his smile was different, still sympathetic, but it didn't reach his eyes. I'm sure you're right, he said. Girl, this show is a format of real-life couples going in and then recoupling. Of course they want to break up couples for the drama. That's what would get ratings and views. I thought you were smart, Lila, but you keep proving to me that you're not. Then Connor, the YouTuber and NFT trader, interrupts him and asks him if they're setting up alliances already, and she checks out his ripped torso with 2 huge eagle wings spread across his abs. As a tattoo girly, that tattoo is a bit of a red flag to me, but she likes it. Joel tells Connor that he actually knows him because his girlfriend is a YouTuber, and he says that he's always pleased to hear about female fans. Yuck. The NFT stuff was news to me, Joel said with a laugh. I had the slight puzzling impression he was trying to change the subject, though I couldn't say why. Connor rolled his eyes. It was news to me too. I made one video about buying Bitcoin, and they've obviously extrapolated out from there to make out I'm some kind of tech kingpin. I think they've decided I'm their key to drawing in the NFT bros. Either that or they're trying to set me up as the douchebag. Every show needs a villain, right? The remark took me aback, but now he said it, I realized he was right. Every reality TV show did have a villain. Who was it going to be? I think you've got other qualities, mate, Joel was saying, a smile twitching at the corner of his mouth. Other qualities? Connor said. Joel jerked a thumb towards his bare torso, and he laughed, a little sheepishly. In my defense, I was sunbathing. I'm not planning on walking around topless for the whole series. I think the production team will be confiscating your shirts now that you show them the goods, Joel said dryly. I'm sensing a little, at first I was thinking Joel and Lila were gonna have a little bit of a thing, but now Joel seems to be thirsting after Connor a little bit. But Lila decides that she likes Connor, that he wasn't what she was expecting, and she is, as she says, quote, always a little suspicious of good-looking people, especially if they know they are. Interesting. She asks what his YouTube is about, and he says politics, current affairs, and general chat. So I thought maybe a Hassan Piker kind of thing, but we will see later on that no, it's kind of the opposite of that actually. And she's shocked that he has over 10 million subscribers and asks why he would go on this show then. And he admits he thinks it'll give him credibility, that people are snobbish about YouTube, which is crazy because I would argue that people are more snobbish about reality TV, but okay. And then Joel's girlfriend Rami comes around and is whining that she has been looking all over for him. And of course Lila has to note that she is in the world's smallest bikini. She's just giving judgy. She's just giving judgy a lot, especially towards the women. You said you'd meet me at the hot tub. I didn't, Joel said mildly, but with a touch of testiness in his voice. You said you were going to the hot tub. Well, whatever. I've been waiting for you for hours. I couldn't even text you. I suppressed a smile at that. Joel had handed in his devices not 10 minutes before, so it was hard to take her complaints too seriously. I tried to break the tension with a laugh. I guess we've got to get used to that, haven't we? Got to get used to what? It was Nico strolling along the deck wearing a pair of swimming shorts and a towel slung over his shoulder. Being without our phones, I said. But Rami had already turned to Nico and was speaking over the top of me. Hey, you're Nico, right? Did I see you in Holbley City? It was the right question, and Nico instantly turned the full beam of his charming smile on Rami and regaled her with the details of his acting CV while she gazed up at him, batting her lashes in a way that was frankly a little OTT. I don't know what that means. I wasn't bothered. I could tell she was only doing it to punish Joel for chatting to me instead of meeting her at the hot tub.
I'm not jealous.
But it was a puzzling contrast to her hostility to Joelle. "Shall we talk about this at the hot tub?" she was asking. "I'd love to hear how you got into acting." "Of course," Nico said earnestly. "Lila, are you coming?" I smiled and shook my head. "Thanks, but I can't think of anything worse in this heat." So yeah, she's giving like cool girl who wouldn't care that her boyfriend goes and hangs alone half naked in a hot tub with some really gorgeous girl. Like, hey, you trust him. That's on you, girl. Joel complains to her that he doesn't get why Romy is mad at him, that he went on the show for her, but it seems like he just can't do anything right these days. Yeah, I don't think these guys are gonna last a week on the show. Except when I wrote this, I didn't really know what was gonna happen. I was right, but not in the way I thought it would be right. Joel thinks that he's being cast as the nice guy who's going to be humiliated. I don't know why he agreed to go on the show then, but yeah, they all then go their separate ways. Get another in-between chapter thing that's like, again, just asking them if anyone can hear them. We go to chapter 6. They arrive at Ever After Island, at least that's what the producers are calling the island, and she showers and heads out onto the deck, and the guy with the Mickey Mouse tattoo, Dan, he says he hopes the resort is as nice as the pictures, since the cabins on the yacht definitely weren't. And he says that he bet Connor got a suite because he was best mates with Baz and dated his niece or something. That's what his agent told him. And he slips up that he wishes Elijah, his boyfriend, was here, which he did not mean to say because him and Santana are coupled up. Guys, I can't believe how easily these people are spilling their secrets to strangers that they are about to compete in a reality TV show with. But anyway, him and Santana really do have matching tattoos, so I guess they're just best friends. And he asks her if her man is jealous about all of this, and she says no, it's all gonna be for show. She plans on being booted off early on, but not to tell anyone. Girl, you've already told the first 2 people you've talked to. Maybe you should stop telling everyone. Dan says they might be filming them right now and gestures to a camera above them and says they might already be making up a storyline about their bond. And then he leaves to go pack, and she enjoys the view of the island drawing closer. We get another in-between chapter thing of them calling for help. This time it's February 22nd, so a good few days after, at 9:37 a.m. "Oh God, please do. Why isn't anyone coming? We have no idea what to do. The boat has gone. They have took our phones, and all we've got is this fucking radio that Persone doesn't know how to work. Please answer us. People are dying. People are dead. Oh, duo." It's the girl that speaks French. "We will all be dead soon if someone doesn't come. Someone has to be monitoring this channel. No, Tazboy, Joel, I will not turn this off. I fucking will not. I don't give a shit about the battery. What good will the battery make when we are all dead?" And we're going to chapter 7. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that word. She keeps saying it. It's capital D-I-E-U. But yeah, we're chapter 7, and they step off onto the island. It's beautiful. A producer prompts Lila to tell Nico how beautiful it is and how she feels, but to not look at the camera, or she does immediately. Just let's pretend the cameras aren't there, which is not so easy, honestly. I could tell the producer was becoming a little testy at my failure to understand what was required of me, but it was quite hard to pretend the crew weren't there with the huge black camera looming in my face and the boom mic waving overhead. Behind me, I could see Bayer and Angel vamping it up for the cameras, Angel squealing and spinning around with her hair fanning out like the petals of a flower, Bayer scooping her up, grinning and kissing her as she wrapped her long legs around him. Only 10 minutes ago, Bayer had been tantruming about having his bag searched. Now they looked like something out of a movie. I could see precisely how the scene was going to go down with viewers, the heart eye emojis, tweets about what a cute couple they were. Farther over, Santana and Dan were wandering hand in hand across the wet sand. Dan had his shirt off and his trousers rolled up. Santana's high heels were trailing from her free hand. They looked like the kind of soft-focused aspirational poster your coworker would have pinned up in their cubicle to help them get through the working day. Maybe with the slogan, "Happiness is your hand in mine," or something equally sappy in a flowing font. Every single one of them was providing an object lesson in what the camera wanted, and what I was completely failing to provide. Wow, Nico, isn't this great?" I said at last. Nico swung around. He had undone a couple of buttons on his loose white linen shirt, showing his tan chest and just the right amount of chest hair. No Burt Reynolds. Styled chest wig, more Paul Dark's scything scene. What? I don't know what that means. Anyway. Whatever he'd been doing in the gym recently was working. I could see his abs through the shirt. It's paradise, he said seriously, and I could tell that although he was looking at me, he was speaking for the camera. And the only thing that makes it better is that I'm here with you. You're all I've ever wanted, Lil. And then he came over, took my face between his hands in a way he had never done before, a way I realized suddenly that people did in the movies, and kissed me passionately full on the lips. Yeah, I couldn't do this. Not the cameras necessarily, but my partner playing it up and acting inauthentic for the cameras instead of being himself with me. And Lila actually has a similar realization that she isn't kissing her boyfriend, she's kissing an actor who is performing for the camera. I hate to say it, girl, but that's like exactly what you signed up for. And then when they break apart from their kiss, Lila notes that she resists the urge to wipe her mouth. Girl, do you even like this man? Instead, she takes off her sandals and they walk along the shore, and then they follow a path that leads up to the villas. Nico is playing up his reactions the entire time, dramatically praising the beautiful villas, and yeah, I get the ick so fast, guys. And I say that as someone who did acting growing up and thought about doing it as a actual career, but I could never act with my real life partner, at least not for a reality show. But anyway, he says a curse word and the producers admonish him because apparently they're trying to keep this program PG-13, so no cussing, which I feel like is kind of odd for a dating show that they're comparing to Love Island, but okay. They hunt for which villa is theirs, and Lila asks the producer where the crew is staying, and she says they will all be on the boat and there won't be any crew in the evening, but there will be radios for them in case of emergencies, which is such a red flag to me personally. Like, having no crew there at night feels very, very odd, especially when we learn that the boat is going to go back and forth each night to take any kicked contestants off. So even if there was an emergency, the crew could be miles and miles away out in the water. But she explains that the out-of-hour footage will be done remotely with cameras everywhere besides the bathrooms, and that they will not be showing any nudity. And Lila is shocked, but again, it was all in the contract that apparently nobody read. I turned to look at Nico. Did you know about this? Cameras in all the rooms? Lil, Nico said. He had that voice on, the calm down Lila, don't be so uptight voice. That's guaranteed to make me lose my shit. Have you ever seen a reality TV show? This is how they work. They want unguarded moments. Unguarded moments? Is that the new term for people shagging? The cameraman took a step forward, swung the lens towards me. I gritted my teeth, resisting the urge to tell him to fuck off. At least if I did, they wouldn't be able to use the footage, unless they bleeped it, of course. And then how would it be edited? Probably me reading the note saying that the water villa wasn't for us, then cut to me throwing a hissy fit at Nico. Did you know about this? Then, and you fuck off as well to the cameraman. Week 1. Lila is promoted from Bofin to Diva Bitch. I remembered Connor's words on the boat. Every show needs a villain. With a temper tantrum like that, I'd be putting myself forward for the role fair and square. The question was, did I mind? In some ways, it might work out better for Nico. When I was eliminated, he'd look a lot more sympathetic pairing up with other people if I'd be edited into a complete cow. But Connor's words kept coming back to me. Every show needs a villain. And I didn't watch much reality TV, but I did know one thing. The villains were hardly ever eliminated, at least not until the final showdown. They needed that grit in the oyster to make the show interesting. I had no idea how the challenges were going to work, but one thing I was absolutely certain of, they could be rigged. And if I made myself too interesting, they were never going to let me go. I forced myself to smile sweetly. You're right, I was being naive. Of course they'll want to get as much footage as they can. Come on, let's find our villa. And then I turned and stomped off the beach, trying not to let the anger show in the set of my spine too clearly. So they go and find their villa, and she stresses out about not having any bug spray on and wonders what diseases the mosquitoes here carry. And we get this little tidbit from her. In all the haste of disembarking, I'd forgotten to put on any DEET. Now I wondered what mosquitoes carried here. Probably not malaria if this island had the same risk profile as Indonesia, but possibly dengue. I hadn't managed to get a good look at the mosquito that had buzzed past my face. The fact that it was out in the day meant it was most likely Aedes aegypti, the kind that carries dengue, and chikungunya, again I can't say it, not Anopheles, which is responsible for malaria. Part of me was intrigued, although I'd spent years studying mosquito-borne illnesses, I'd never actually had dengue or chikungunya. Perhaps now is my chance. In the first time you got dengue, it wasn't usually much of an issue. It was reinfection with a different serotype that was the big risk factor for
I can't pronounce it.
hemorrhagic fever. But on the other hand, I had made a mental note to get the D out of my luggage as soon as we were allowed to, and to remind Nico to do the same. She's saying she wants dengue? Probably not saying that right. She wants that disease? Nico calls her to come see the rest of the villa, and it's all nice and brand new. This is beautiful, I said sincerely to Nico, and he grabbed by the waist and swung me around, whispering I love you into my hair. I never liked it when Nico did his twirling around act. It made me feel off balance, and kind of like he was flexing the undeniable fact that he was bigger and stronger than me, and he could pick me up if he wanted, no matter how much I didn't want him to. But this time, I pressed my face into his neck, and I let him, knowing it was his way of trying to make up for our simmering non-argument at the beach. Again, girl,
You don't even like him.
also, I think this moment is inauthentic by him because then she spots a camera in the corner of the room that he seems to have purposely placed themselves right in front of to do the kiss. But then Camille knocks and gives him a bunch of tropical flowers, which is kind of like her excuse to get in the room and look at the cameras. There's a problem with the sound in some of the villas, unfortunately, so we might have to send someone over to do filming in person tonight. It'll depend on how it goes with the task this evening. The cameras are filming okay, but the mics aren't picking up any speech. We'll get that fixed tomorrow, but in the meantime, please try not to say anything too interesting. We can guarantee that, Nico said with a laugh. Don't forget, Lila's a scientist, so unless you're into viruses. Joke, he added, poking me in the ribs as I made mock offended face. Camille's rather tense expression broke into a reluctant smile. I'm sure you're both very interesting, Nico. Now we'll have to give you a few minutes to freshen up, and then we'd love to see you in the cabana for some brunch. I don't know, I kind of feel like Nico's just making fun of her career, to be honest. Nico and I waited as her shape disappeared between the trees, and then he turned to me. So, I mean, this is everything we were promised, isn't it? I nodded. It was true. The island really had lived up to the pictures Baz had sent. I couldn't deny it. Yes, you're right. It's just as beautiful as the photos. Nick rolled his eyes. You what? You just what? For God's sake, Lila, we're in literal paradise. Are you never satisfied? I am satisfied, I protested. It's not finished. Doesn't that bother you? You can literally still smell the paint, and half the facilities aren't even built yet. So, I can't imagine Baz would have got this place free once it was up and running and taking millionaire guests every week, and we're the first people who get to enjoy it. Isn't that something to celebrate? It's not the point, Nico. It's more the fact that we're acting as guinea pigs for this place. If there are any issues with the infrastructure, we're going to be the ones finding out. What happens if the generator gives out, or the desalination plant breaks down? Desali what? Nico looked blank. The water, Nico. They have to get it from somewhere. They're hardly going to be piping it thousands of miles from the mainland, so they must be desalinating the seawater. Reverse osmosis, I'd guess, which is a pretty technical process. I mean, they can't even get the cameras working properly. I gestured at the box on the wall. What if something that actually matters goes? Then I imagine they'll call in an engineer from the mainland. Nico broke in impatiently. This is what Telly's like, Lila. You're the scientist, so I'm not going to argue with you about reverse whatever it was, but this is my professional area, and I'm telling you, this is totally normal. You don't get it because you only see the front of everything when you watch a show. You don't see the unfinished woodwork behind the set and the costumes held together with glue and staples. We're backstage at the theater, honey. This is what it looks like. Don't call me honey, I snapped. It's a term of endearment, Nico retorted. But I knew it wasn't, not really. When Nico was feeling affectionate, he called me Lil and told me he loved me. Honey was reserved for something else, the moments when he felt I was putting him down and he wanted to hit back. For a long moment we stood glaring at each other. Then Nico's face softened. Look, he said, moving across to me, putting his hands on my shoulders. Lil, I get it. This is weird for you being in my world, but this is my world. So could you please just trust me that I know what I'm talking about? Because I do know TV, and I'm telling you, this is a hell of a lot more fancy than most of the sets I've been on, and I think we're pretty lucky to be here. But more to the point, we are here, and like it or not, there's no going back, so you might as well stop fussing about the details and enjoy the ride, because there's nothing else you can do. His words were meant to be reassuring, and as he put his arms around me and hugged me close, I knew he wanted me to say that they were. That I was just stressed about my own work and taking it out on him. But the truth was, I felt the exact opposite of reassured, because he was right. Everything he said was completely correct. We were here, and there was no going back, and there was nothing either of us could do about it. And then we get another in-between chapter radio call. It's February 23rd at 9:54 a.m. Hello, if anyone can hear us, please send urgent help. My name is Lila Santiago. I'm marooned along with 6 other survivors on an island about 14 hours by motorboat south or southwest of Jakarta. Our boat was swept away by the storm along with the rest of our party. We have very limited food and water and are in urgent need of medical assistance. 3 people have already died. I repeat, this is an SOS call. If anyone is monitoring this island, please send help. We have no idea how long we can last. We will make the same call this time tomorrow. Over. We go into chapter 8. They go and meet everyone else for breakfast, and Lila is worried about how she can't measure up to all the other girls and how beautiful they are, and she can't do makeup like the other girls, even though she does do her makeup, just apparently not as caked up as the other girls. So she says she will have to try to lean into the low maintenance girl next door charm. They are then greeted by Dan and Santana, and Lila clocks that Santana has a glucose monitor on her arm, so she must be diabetic. Yeah, this girl is gonna be in danger, unfortunately. And then next, Angel and Bayer join them. She again has to point out every girl's makeup and every guy's muscles. And then everyone else joins them, and Camille tells them about the format of the show. She says the majority of the show will be voiceover, but they will have a celebrity presenter that they can't yet reveal. Hello, the most beautiful girl in the world. Anyway, Dan whispers to them that not revealing the celebrity yet means they don't actually have anyone yet. They're hoping for Neil Patrick Harris, but they're probably going to end up with that perm-tanned guy from the shopping channel. And for logistical reasons, it's just easier if they record their commentary to be dubbed on afterwards. Again, haven't signed anyone, Dan whispered. Shh, I hissed back sternly, and he made a mock contrite face and folded his hands. So what's going to happen is I'm going to read off the challenges, the crew will film your reaction shots, and will overlay my voice with the voice of the mystery presenter and edits. For that reason, please try not to look at me when I'm reading out the tasks. We want it to sound like there's a disembodied voice, and to really maintain the idea that you're alone on this secluded island. To make it easier, I'm going to stand out of eyeline. She indicated a bamboo screen standing in the corner of the cabana, and then moved across to it, shuffling a stack of cue cards in her hands. Okay, everyone ready? There were murmurs from around the table, and Camille cleared her throat. Welcome to Ever After Island, contestants. Here will we find out who among you is truly the perfect couple, and who are Mr. and Mismatched. There was a pause, and then she stuck her head out from behind the screen. Kim, I don't love that pun. I'm not sure if Baz approved it, but we might tweak it in edits, okay? I think something about kissing frogs would be better. So guys, she turned to us, just bear in mind that the final voiceover might not be exactly the same, but we'll make it work in the editing suite. She cleared her throat again, then continued. For this first challenge, we'll be running a Mr. and Mrs. with a difference. You'll each be assigned a tell-all questionnaire to fill out about everything from your favorite dessert to your deepest and darkest secrets. There was a distinctly stagey gasp from Angel, and glancing around the table, I realized that the other islanders were vamping up their reaction shots in a way that I totally wasn't. There were varying expressions of shock, surprise, and laugh trepidation. Nico was looking around the circle, wide-eyed. Romy, Joelle's partner, had her hands clasped in a pantomime of terror, and Bear was blowing a kiss at Angel with a very macho display of self-confidence. Only Connor was leaning back in his seat, looking truly relaxed, though beside him, Xana looked anything but. She was gripping the edge of the table so hard that her knuckles were white. Glancing across at the crew, I saw that one of the cameras was pointing my way, and I tried hastily to adjust my face to something that wouldn't look completely gormless on screen. A kind of intrigued surprise, and then realized Camille was still speaking, and that I probably needed to listen to what she was saying. End of the day, you'll be asked for the answers, and we'll find out the truth about how well you all know your partners. Who was their childhood crush? What's their worst habit? To truly love someone, you have to know them through and through, flaws and all, so let's find out who's really the one perfect couple. There was a brief pause, and then she emerged from behind the screen and said, "Was that okay, Kim? Do we need any more reactions?" "I don't think so." Kim was staring down at the screen in front of her, apparently scrolling through the various camera angles. "We've got plenty of angles, and we can always patch it together with other footage if we need to fill in time." "Okay, you're good to eat, guys," Camille said. "I'll be coming around with the questionnaires in just a minute. In the meantime, fill your boots because we won't be stopping again until dinner." So they dive into the food, which is actually all just like pre-packaged stuff. Even the fruit is from cans, so they're on an island with a bunch of fruit. So Angel then freaks out that it's all carbs and no protein, and Romy starts requesting the crew make her scrambled eggs, and Xana wasn't eating it at all, despite Connor filling up her plate for her, and Lila clocks this as an Ed Sheeran, we'll call it. Camille then comes back with a set of envelopes and tells them that the girls and the guys will split up and write all their answers down. So she walks the girls down down to the beach in front of Ever After, and Zaina tells Lila that she is scared of the ocean. Great show for her to sign up for then. She thinks that there are monsters in the water that would grab her, and Lila comforts her by saying that the water is clear here and that there are no monsters at all. They go and sit down, and Lila begins the questionnaire. It's questions like, what is your star sign? What's your favorite color? Blah, blah, blah. Lila, of course, does not believe in astrology and asks Angel if she knows anything about Pisces. And Angel tells her that Pisces are typically highly spiritual and make good romantic partners because they are very intuitive. And when she sees Lila's skepticism, she adds that they can also be very analytic. So Lila writes down that she is analytic and intuitive. Next question is childhood crush. She wasn't the girl to have childhood crushes on anybody, so she just makes up that she was into Keanu Reeves because she saw a movie he was in a bunch of times. Then for the ideal night in, she writes food, a drama series, and someone to cuddle up with, but then notes to herself that Nico isn't the best guy for this because he can't pay attention for more than 5 minutes. Again, the girl, do you even like this guy? If this is a guy you can't even have your ideal night in with, then why are you with him? But anyway, next is ideal night out, and we learn that Nico apparently goes out 3 or 4 nights a week without her, which doesn't even bug her, but I find to be insane. Her night out looks a lot like her night in. She would like to go to a restaurant and share a meal. The next question then is, what is your biggest secret? And the answer that immediately pops into her head is that I can't see myself with Nico in 5 years' time. Yeah. She doesn't like this guy at all, guys. Nico does not fit into the picture of her ideal life in suburbia with babies. And of course, she can't write that on the form, so she tries to think of something else, and the next thing that comes to her mind is that I didn't really want to come here. I only said yes to make Nico happy, and obviously she can't write that either. So the next best thing she can think of is that until I was 12, I thought pregnancy was a disease you caught from being around pregnant women. This is why sex education is important, guys, okay? We need it in schools. She even adds, sometimes I still hold my breath when I pass pregnant women on the street. You know what? I can't blame you, girl. That's not a disease I would ever really want to catch. The rest of the questions were less tricky. Favorite film? The Godfather. Pet hate? Pet hate. She mean pet peeve? The author wrote pet hate. I don't know if this is just differs in the UK, but here it's pet peeve. People who stand on the left of the escalator on the underground. Thing I dislike most about myself? The way I judge people.
Wow, more self-aware than I thought.
Significant ex, my uni boyfriend John who broke my heart, and a bunch of others that didn't give me more than a few minutes pause, which I did run around on the last one. Which male contestant other than your boyfriend would you want to be stuck on a desert island with? After a few minutes of pondering, I put down Joel, mainly because I felt like Nico would find him the least threatening option. So she finishes filling it out and notices that Zaina is the only one who isn't done filling hers out, and so she asks her what question she is stuck on, and Zaina is worried about Connor having to guess the answers and actually looks terrified about it for some reason, and Lila tells her that she could just put fake answers. Obviously, no one's actually going to want their biggest secret revealed on TV, and Zaina says she knows, but she's worried about embarrassing Connor, and Lila tells her that he loves her and won't care what her answers are, but she asks what if she puts something wrong, and at this point Lila is just like annoyed at her being over dramatic about this, so she just gives her an answer for worst habit, which is spending too much money on lattes, and Zaina writes this down. And then the producer asks them if they're all ready. The girls want to fix their makeup first. So then Lila realizes she made a mistake not bringing any makeup down here with her, like the other girls, not even lip gloss. Gotta keep lip gloss strapped to you, girl. I've been reapplying like 20 times throughout this so far. Santana, being sweet, tells her that she can use her makeup, and then before they go and play the game, they film their OTOs, which is the take that they do alone, like the little interview segments. Then we go into chapter 9. They are taken to the OTO room, which is set up in the staff cabins. I don't know why they're staff cabins, and apparently no one's freaking staying on the island. But the room is super hot and smells of the crew and the people interviewed before them. But luckily the interviews go quick. It's basically just them reading their answers to the camera and then guessing their partner's answers. And since her and Nico didn't discuss how early on she should start flunking the challenges, she just answers honestly what she she thinks Nico's answers would be. And then they go back to Ever After Villa to film some background footage of them chatting and are instructed by the crew to talk about their boys. Yes, the crew keeps referring to them as girls and boys, which is something that Lila is gonna point out a lot. But yeah, the sun is setting by the time they get back to the cabana, and the crew keeps supplying them with more and more alcohol and no food. And then they film another voiceover bit. So, couples, you spent the afternoon looking deep into your own hearts and trying to guess the secrets of your partners. Now it's time to see how well you did. How well do you really know the person you came here with? Do you know the inner workings of their heart, or is it a closed book to you? Or could it be that your perfect match is on the island but arrived here with someone else? It's time to find out. She rustles through some sheets and then said, okay, so at this point there will be a montage of everyone answering the questions to camera, intercut with the partner guessing the responses. We won't be showing all of them obviously, just the funniest or most moving or whatever. We haven't settled on the final lineup, but in the meantime, here's a rough cut of some of the best. She pressed something on a remote control on the desk and a screen above the bar lit up with what I guessed was the logo for the show, a stylized desert island in the shape of a heart. After a short countdown, Connor's face appeared. He was sitting on the wicker chair, speaking directly to the camera and looking thoughtful. My perfect night out, I'd have to say taking Xana somewhere truly stunning, maybe the restaurant at the top of the Eiffel Tower or a gondola in Venice. We'd drink champagne, I'd feed her favorite dessert, chocolate dipped strawberries, and then we'd walk home hand in hand and kiss under the stars. As for hers, he blushed his tan face, looking almost embarrassed for a moment. God, I don't want to sound hopelessly big-headed, but I think she'd say a night at my place. I know that's not really a night out, but she just loves spending time together. The camera cut to Zaina staring into the lens with her huge brown eyes. Connor? Oh, I think he'd say a dinner somewhere sophisticated and exotic, a restaurant in Paris maybe, or the Maldives. Fine wine, good food, we toast each other and then walk home. He loves to walk at night. He loves the stars. As for me, she looked down at her lap, twisting her fingers. The truth is, I'm more of a simple stay-at-home type. I'd be happy anywhere Connor was happy. That's the honest truth. Then a shy little smile flickered across her face, though I wouldn't say no to a chocolate-dipped strawberry. Camille paused the screen and turned back to the group, a big smile on her face. I don't know about you guys, but I'm giving that 10 out of 10, right? There was a wave of assent, rather half-hearted, from the other contestants, and some laughter and clapping. Connor put his arm around Xana, squeezing her hard as Camille hit play again. We went through all of them. There were some incredibly lucky hits. I scored a bullseye guessing that Nico's perfect vacation would be Las Vegas, which was a total shot in the dark. And another when I'd guessed that his biggest secret was that he used fake tan. I'd guessed correctly that he wouldn't mind admitting that. There was also some comically bad misses. Angels had said understandably that her worst habit was smoking, whereas Bayer had said that it was clipping her toenails in the shower and leaving the shards, which caused her to shoot daggers at him. I also knew perfectly well that Dan's biggest secret was, because he told me, it was the fact that he had a boyfriend. I could see from the panic in his eyes as he answered that question that he knew Santana would be skirting around it and wasn't sure how best to handle the uncertainty. In the end, he said that his biggest secret was that when he was little, he'd wanted to be a cage fighter when he grew up. Santana, on the other hand, guessed that his biggest secret was that he couldn't tell the time on a clock with hands. That provoked a gale of laughter at the secret as well as the mismatch between the two. It was fairly sympathetic. Dan, however, looked like he had a sense of humor bypass, and I could understand why. What? Santana mouthed across at the table at him. I'm sorry. It was one time. I can tell the fucking time, Dan said irritably, prompting a throat-cutting motion from one of the producers, reminding us about swearing. But the biggest surprise, to me at least, was how many things Nico got wrong about me. I wasn't sure if they were picking out comically bad examples, but I didn't see them screen a single right answer from him. He'd said that my childhood crush was Harry Styles, whose career didn't even launch until I was in my 20s. He said that my biggest secret was that I was afraid of mice, which I'm not and have never been. He said that my perfect night out would be a pub curry and a pint with friends, which okay, I enjoy a curry as much as the next person, but it's not exactly my dream night out, and I don't drink pints. It was just bad shot after bad shot. I couldn't believe this was the person I'd shared nearly 2.5 years of my life with. Had he been paying any attention at all? Nico had ended up on the other side of the table from me, between Dan and Bayer, and as the clips unfolded, I tried to catch his eye, see what he was making of it, but his gaze was fixed on the screen, laughing along with the others. As if it was hilarious hilarious that he seemed to know nothing about his own girlfriend. At the end of the reel, Camille clicked off the screen and turned back to the group. The sun was properly setting, fairy lights had winked on around the edges of the cabana, and I could see that everyone was very tired, very hungry, and very drunk. Tempers were, if not fraying, at least wearing a little thin. Dan looked like he was still seething over the telling the time thing. Bear, who had made several stupid mistakes with Angel, including revealing that her biggest secret was that she'd had a boob job, looked sulky. In the camera lights, I could see moss and mosquitoes beginning to gather. I swiped as something settled on my arm and was glad I'd remembered to put on repellent beneath my bronzer. And now, Camille said, the moment of truth. Which couple truly knows each other through and through, and which couple are a hopeless mystery to each other? And finally, she paused dramatically, which couple are really the most compatible on the island? There was a long pause. I could hear crickets in the trees, and far off a bird screamed, or maybe a monkey, I wasn't sure. The person who got the highest score on their partner's answers was... There was a long pause, Camille dragging the tension out until I could tell everyone around the table wanted to scream. Lila. There was an audible gasp from around the table, maybe because they just watched Nico fuck up response after response. Nico looked positively smug. Congratulations, Lila. You truly know your partner through and through. His heart is an open book to you. I had no idea what to do. I could tell the cameras were zooming on my face, and I could only blink and say, thank you. And then, almost as an afterthought, I love you, Nico. Love you too, babe, he called from the other side of the table and made a heart shape with his hands. But Camille was still speaking. The table quickly hushed, hanging on her words. The person who scored lowest on their partner's response was... There was another long pause, even longer than the one before. This time Camille really dragged it out. I heard a groan from across the table and saw Bayer drop his head to the tabletop and bang it on the surface in what looked like real frustration. Was, Camille repeated, and then finally she put us out of our misery. Nico. There was another set of gasps from around the table, and I realized that one had to come from me. I knew Nico had done badly, but the worst out of everyone? We'd been together a little over 2 years. Clearly I had been paying attention at some point during that time, long enough to salt away enough information for a bunch of lucky guesses anyway. And what did this mean for the show? Was Nico... But then my stomach seemed to drop. No, absolutely not. There was no way Nico could be going home. My results had to count for something, didn't they? Nico, Camille was saying, and now she looked compassionate and something else, something close to a little nervous, I thought. Nico, I'm so sorry. What? Nico said, interrupting. You're going home. Ooh, okay. I actually like this twist. Nico getting sent home first was honestly not what I was expecting. And Nico, of course, wasn't either because he really puts up a protest. Is this real? Nico asked, this time with a tinge of real outrage creeping into his voice. Are you seriously kicking me off the show? I felt a sense of panic grip me. This was not the plan. This was never the plan. Nico, I said blankly, and he turned to face me. You stupid cow.
That was completely uncalled for.
I recoiled. I'm sorry, what? Honestly, what the fuck were those answers? A paneer? What the whatever it was the fuck? How was I supposed to guess that? And Keanu Reeves? He's old enough to be my dad. Paneer Chira is what I always get. I feel my temper flare, not helped by Camille making stop swearing gestures behind Nico's head. I don't need reminding that this was all on camera. Every single time. It's not my fault if you always leave me to order. And Harry Styles? Seriously? How could he have been my childhood crush? You sabotaged me, Nico said, his face suddenly ugly. You did this deliberately. What game are you playing? What the actual fuck? I knew Camille was signaling, and I didn't care. The more I swore, the less likely they were to use this footage of my relationship imploding. Are you serious? I don't care about your stupid little... Fuck no. I had enough self-control to backpedal from what I'd been about to say, which was stupid little reality TV fantasy. Whether or not Nico went, I would still be stuck here for another week. Insulting the show in front of people who were presumably happy to be on it wouldn't go down well. Supposed games? I finished, stumbling over the words as I tried to recover. I'm not playing anything. I try to say things I thought you'd guess. It's not my fault if you guess wrong. It's not my fault if you haven't paid attention to anything I said the entire time we'd been together was what I really wanted to say. That felt like it would be crossing a line. That would be crossing a line? Not him calling you a stupid cow? Whatever he'd just said to me, I wasn't ready to dump my live-in boyfriend on national TV. I remembered Joel's words on the boat. If they succeed in breaking one of the couples up, it's going to be car crash TV, a real long-term relationship ripping apart on screen. And now that car crash was Nico and me. "You humiliated me," I heard from Nico, but 2 crew members were leading him away. He was still shouting over his shoulder, "You set me up. This wasn't what was supposed to happen. This wasn't what we agreed on." And then his voice faded between the trees and he was gone. There was long, stunned silence. The thing that kept rattling around in my brain absurdly was how upset my mum was going to be when I told her about what had happened. She loved Nico. He was a son she'd never had. Handsome, charming, a little bit geeky, but for myself, I felt nothing. Only numb. Was I in shock? Angel silently slid a bottle of wine across the table to me, and I forced a smile and filled my glass, knocking it back with the hand that was still shaking. "Well," Dan drawled, leaning back in his seat, "at least you didn't accuse him of not being able to tell time." There was a sudden gale of laughter, the nervous, explosive laughter of people with pent-up emotion, relieved to channel it into humor rather than anger. Wow. I knew Nico was not great, but to talk to your partner of 2 years like that over a reality TV show? To call her a stupid cow? That's insane. I would have dumped him right then and there. But Camille comes back after escorting Nico to the ship and asks Lila if she's okay. Lila says no and thinks about how this certainly isn't going to help Nico's career like the plan was, but it is going to put her on the map, which she doesn't want. And they ask her to do an OTO and give all her thoughts about Nico's departure, and she asks if she can at least have a drink first. Camille agrees and says they should all probably eat first before filming the OTOs anyway, and Camille tells them that the last bit of filming will be the final big reveal, that as the highest scorer, Lila gets to spend the night in the Ever After villa, and the twist is she won't be there alone. They compared other Islander answers to hers, and the person that most closely corresponded with Lila's answers was Joelle. So, Rami is pissed that Joelle has to stay in the Ever After villa with Lila, and Camille ignores her and says, "Joelle, you'll be spending the night in the Ever After villa with Lila to find out if the two of you are really the perfect match for each other. Romy, you'll be spending the night alone at Island Dream. Everyone else, you'll have 1 week to look deep into your hearts to figure out if the person you're coupled up with is really your perfect match, and if not, to seek out a new coupling in time for the first Ever After ceremony this time next week." She closed the script and then said, "And that's when we'll go to the credits. I should say you don't necessarily have a week before the first Ever After ceremony. The week refers to the viewer's week, not yours. We're playing the schedule by ear, but it'll be at least a couple of days as we have to get some of the other challenges out of the way first." "Hang on," Rummy said icily. What's your name?" "Camille," Camille said without rancor. "Camilla, yes. Look, I'm sorry, but my boyfriend is not spending the night with some slag." She turned to me, "No offense." "None taken," I murmured, trying not to let the hysterical laugh that was threatening to erupt bubble out. "In some shag pad villa. That was all for the cameras, right?" "I'm afraid not," Camille said apologetically. "They actually do have to sleep in there? I mean, obviously no one has to do anything they don't want to." "I should fucking hope not," Bayer growled into his beer. "But that's the format. The winner of each task and their perfect match, and that's decided by a different format each time. We'll spend the night together in the Ever After villa, and after that the 2 contestants can decide whether or not to return to their former partners or make a new couple. While the format," Rami spat, "can go fuck itself right in the hole." "Rami," Joelle said. He had stood up and was leaning across the table towards her. Rami rounded on him. "Did you put her up to this?" "What? No, who?" "Her," she jerked her head at me. "I saw the 2 of you plotting together on the boat." "Did you give her your answers?" "No, of course not. How would I even know to do that? We had no idea what the task would be." "Well, if you wanted to humiliate me, congratulations, you succeeded." "Rami," Joelle was scarlet with mortification. "First, could we please not do this here?" He made a small, almost involuntary gesture towards the ranks of the camera operators spaced around the cabana. "Second, why the hell would I want to humiliate you? You never got over me and Dean, even though I told you I was drunk and it was a mistake, even though I said sorry like 1,000 times. Are you ever going to stop holding him over my head?" A muscle twitched in Joel's jaw, and there was a short, charged silence in which the only sound was the palm trees rustling in the wind coming off the sea. "You're the only person mentioning his name right now," he said at last very evenly. "Well, he's not doing it," Rummy announced, turning to Camille. "He's not going to that villa. Are you, Joelle?" "That is enough," a deep voice came from the back of the room, and my first clue as to who'd spoken was the fact that the whole crew seemed to stiffen and stand to attention. A small group of producers and assistants parted like the Red Sea, and Baz came through, his face dark as thunder. "You," he pointed to Romy. "I've heard enough from you. If you don't like the rules, you can get off the island. Now." Romy opened her mouth to speak and then shut it again. "And you," he pointed to Joelle. "And you," jabbing a finger at me, "will be sleeping in the Ever After villa tonight. End of. What you do there is between the 2 of you, but you'll abide by the rules or fuck off. Got it?" Got it, Joel murmured. He shot an apologetic look at Rami, whose face was scarlet with a mixture of wine, sun, and the effort of not biting back at Baz. Now wind the shit show up and get the crew across to the water villa to do the ever after sequences, Baz snapped. I want the whole crew back on the boat by 9 p.m. to go over today's footage. I know reality TV has a lot of rules, at least nowadays, so would they actually not know the format of the show before they began filming and before they signed any contracts? That seems very strange to me. I don't know if they could legally do that, but I'm questioning it. And apparently, I'm not the only one questioning the setup of the show, because as the crew leaves for their all hands meeting, Rami starts complaining that the show has no welfare team or psychologist, and she knows how shows like this are supposed to be run, and this is not it. Santana asks what she means, and then adds that she's starving, and Romy says it's exactly what she means, pointing to the glucose monitor on her arm. There are supposed to be medics and psychological interviews that she has tried out for a bunch of these shows, and none of them are run like this. That they should have evaluations, access to a therapist or a trained counselor. And then Angel finds a banana and gives it to Santana to hold her sugar over until they get fed, or until she can get her glucose tablets. Dan adds that it does seem like they're cutting corners, and he had a friend who did Love Island, and Rami's right, they're supposed to have all the stuff she listed. And Lila recalls the booklets Camille gave them that mentioned a welfare team, but where are they? Dan continues that the crew is also weirdly small, and Santana adds that don't they think it's weird that there's no staff outside of the production crew, like maids or chefs? I do accept that the resort isn't up and running yet, but shouldn't Baz have brought these people in temporarily? I'm not convinced they've sold it, I said. My voice was quiet, and Bear turned to me, his eyebrow raised so that the ring glinted in the glow from the string lights. What did you say? I said I don't think they've sold the show. I repeated more loudly. The others turned to look at me, their expressions ranging from skeptical to perplexed. Something Baz said in our interview about everyday contestants like me, and I looked around the circle trying to assess who wouldn't mind being described as everyday, and Joel being what would sell it to the networks. Ari, that's Nico's agent, he made it sound like a done deal, but I haven't seen a single bit of evidence that real TV is actually on board, have you? There was a quiet murmur from around the table as everyone assessed this idea. Dan spoke first. It would fit with there being no presenter. I mean, they're not going to get a big name for a show that hasn't sold, are they? And it'd make sense of why the budget is so tight, Santana said slowly. If Baz is doing this out of his own pocket, hoping to sell it on spec, shit, do you think it's true? If it is true, I will fucking kill him, Connor said. His voice was low, but full of menace, and turning to him, I realized it was the first time he had spoken. He looked extremely contained, but in a way that a bomb might, a sealed package full of volatile material. I'll strangle Baz with my bare hands, and then I'll fly back to the UK and do the same to my agent. If they've dragged me halfway around the world to some show that hasn't even sold to a network. He broke off. Santa's eyes were fixed on him, and she was biting her lips, looking almost as pale as Santana. Look, I have to get some food, Santana said at last, into the strained silence, or I'm going to go hypo. Does anyone want to come down to the staff quarters with me to see what we can fix up? They must have some kind of supplies, and presumably there's a kitchen. The others nodded with varying degrees of resignation and exhaustion, then began making their way down the pebbled path towards staff area. So Xana seems terrified about getting questions of Connor wrong, and now Connor is threatening to kill Baz, so it's certainly giving me violent abuser vibes. But as Lila trails after the other couples, she wonders if she is single now and what Nico is doing, and she realizes that today is actually the anniversary of when her and Nico made out at the Valentine's Day massacre party, and is sad about how the show basically ended their relationship. I knew it was gonna happen, but I definitely didn't expect it to go like that, or to happen that fast. And we get another of those in-between chapter radio calls, and it's February 24th, 7:47 p.m. Listen to me, if anyone is listening to this, you need to get out here now. Now, do you understand me? Because this is not a game, it's not a joke, this is life or death, and we are stuck on this fucking island with a murderer. We are shit. Hello, hello? It's dead. And we go into part 2. The storm, and instead of the in-between chapter radio call bits, we get journals now from Xana. My name is Xana Robertson. Today is Monday, 26th February. At least I think that's right. My head aches. It's hard to remember. What follows are the pages of a diary I've been keeping since the storm. I don't know why. I've never written a diary before. I told myself that it was because I was frightened of losing track of the days, but I think it was more than that. Maybe it was so that if we were found, I'd have some kind of record of what had happened. Some way of remembering that this totally totally unreal experience was actually real. Or maybe it was the opposite. Maybe I began to write this because even in those first early days, I knew it. We might not be found, the boat might not come back, or not until it was too late. It's taken me a long time to face that possibility, and even now there's a voice in the back of my head that insists that we will be found. We have to be found. Someone must be out there looking for us. Someone knows what happened. We just have to hold on. But we are almost 2 weeks in now. The water is starting to run low, and there is no boat in sight, and I have to admit this could be it. This could be how it ends. So maybe that's why I started writing this, because I want people to know how hard we tried, how long we fought, how tenaciously we took care of each other. If you found this, if it's too late, just know that we tried. We really, really tried. We go into chapter 10. Lila and Joelle are staying together in the Ever After villa, and they both can't sleep because the wind has really picked up after the camera crew has left. Lila presumes that it's the storm that the boat crew mentioned. She tries to reassure herself that these buildings must be up to code, right? So like they should be fine and they should withstand a storm. But apparently after Santana scrounged everyone up some food, they were dragged off to interviews and then to the Ever After villa, which had rose petals shaped in a heart on the bed and a champagne bucket, and they had to film some like romantic looking b-roll. And Lila learned that Nico was back on the ship being filmed and debriefed, and as soon as the rest of the crew was on the boat, they would sail overnight for an island 6 hours away. So the crew is going to be sailing every single night or every single time they have an elimination 6 hours away, and then turn back and come around for another day of filming. Seems like a very narrow window to me and a lot of work to return one contestant. I don't know why they wouldn't just have him stay on the boat for a week until more people joined him, honestly. Anyway, now, currently, Joelle and her had agreed to sleep on opposite sides of the bed, but to tell Romy that he slept in the bathtub, though obviously the cameras aren't going to show that when they watch the show back, but Lila thinks that Romy and Joelle won't last anyway, so what did you put on your answers then? Joelle whispered, and I sighed. Pretty much exactly the same as you, going by the snippets they broadcast. I mean, our ideal nights out were virtually identical, and I picked The Godfather as my favorite film too. And for the place I'd love to go but have never been, I put Venice. Same. What did you put for your favorite book? Rebecca, what about you? I put Remains of the Day, Joel said. Romy put 50 Shades of Grey, he sighed, and above the sound of the wind I could hear him rubbing his hand unhappily over his face as if trying to rub away the reality of the day. I know, says it all, doesn't it? Joelle, why are you together? I asked without thinking and then wished I'd bitten my tongue. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it like that. It's just that the two of you're not, what? Not a very obvious couple, I guess? As soon as the words came out of my mouth, I regretted them. I had tried to phrase it as neutrally as I could, but I could tell that Joel was nettled. His voice, when he spoke, sounded defensive. I could say the same about you and Nico. I shrugged. I wanted to argue, but he had a point, one the last few days had made painfully obvious. There was a silence, and then Joel spoke, his voice very low, as though he were trying to make sure it didn't get picked up by any hidden microphones. I don't honestly know anymore. We've been together for years. We met backpacking in Goa after uni, and somehow being far from home, maybe it felt like we had more in common than we did, but since then we've just gotten more and more different. She doesn't like any of my friends. I try, but to be honest, I'm not really interested in any of hers. I'm sporty, she's not. I'm a saver, she's a splurger. We watch completely different programs. When we met in Goa, we were both these grubby, cheapskate students in flip-flops and ripped t-shirts, and since then she's got more and more high maintenance while I'm only marginally more scrubbed up than I was in Anguilla Beach. But it's more than that. We just don't spend any time together anymore, and somehow now we're here. He trailed off. I thought of Nico and me the nights I spent at the lab listening to my podcast as I pipetted and quoted my samples. Nico off at some bar, the way he was extrovert, I was introvert. He was instinctive, I was analytical. He lived life in the moment, I was a planner, and the way we had rubbed along for the best part of 2.5 years, our mutual attraction papering over the cracks until Ever After Island had turned them into a chasm. I know what you mean, I said at last, a little unhappily, and suddenly I wish I'd never brought up this topic in the first place. Well, we better get some sleep, I guess. Good night, Joelle. Good night, Lila, he said, and then turned over. So, after finally drifting off to sleep, Lila is jolted awake by a loud roar of wind and a huge wave over the jetty that slaps against their windows, and she can see that water droplets have come through the window and made their way onto the floors, and she tries to turn on the light, and it doesn't work, so she wakes Joelle up saying she is worried about the storm, and that she's going to go and see if she can find anyone and anywhere else they can sleep, and she goes outside alone because Joelle is apparently not a gentleman. She's fighting the wind and rain, and she finds the staff huts, which all seem to be kept empty. And as she is going to check the last huts, a branch whips out and strikes her across the cheek, knocking her back on her knees. And it cut up her cheek pretty bad, and she worries how it'll look filming. Yeah, I don't think you need to worry about that, girl. But the rest of the huts are empty. She does find the one with the radio, so she tries it and tries to call the over easy. No response. And then something bangs into the hut, making it shudder, and the entire wall is bowed in where it hit. So she radios the over easy one more time, saying it's urgent, but then something else comes crashing through the window. If she had been standing 10 centimeters to her left, she would have been dead. And then she feels cuts from the glass all over her, and she runs out of the hut. And we go into chapter 11. She runs back for Joel and is searching the bed for him. Water is crashing through the windows and the room starts to flood, and Joel finally wakes up because apparently he can sleep through anything, and he's confused, and Lila tells him that they need to get out of here and that she tried radioing the over easy but no answers, and they leave the villa just before another wave sends the whole structure on the beach awash. Now they have to cross the veranda, but the sea is much higher, so they hold hands and begin to cross it, except a wave flings Joel against the rope balustrade. So he's getting flung in the water and she's trying to save him, and luckily she's able to pull him up, and he is very thankful that she saved his life. And she tells him they need to go back inside the villa now because there's no way they're going to get to the island tonight, and they just have to hope that the building can ride out the storm. So they go back into the villa, they push the bed against the doors, and they change back into their clothes and then climb into the bed to wait it out. And she wonders how Nico is doing. The yacht made it before the storm broke, or if he's still on it. And we go into chapter 12. Joel wakes Lila up, telling her that he's gonna go find Romy, and Lila assesses the beach. So dozens of trees came down, and she sees a chunk from one of the villa's roofs, and she asks him how he will get across, and he says he thinks he can swim it. He's a pretty strong swimmer because he used to surf. She wants to go with him, so he guides her on what to do, and Lila grabs a bag to put his glasses in that he can tie to his hand, and then he goes first. She watches him go into the water and then gets scared when it takes him a bit to surface, but he does, and then he waits for her to go. She does not have as good of a time doing it as he did, but she does make it, and he leaves her trying to catch her breath in order to go find Romy. And a moment later she follows him, but a wild-eyed Dan crashes through some of the trees, shirtless and covered in dried blood, and he grabs Lila, saying thank God she is okay. They thought they'd be dead in the water. We're fine, I said. The jetty got swept away, but the villa was okay. But Dan, what happened? It's Santa. His voice broke. Oh fuck, Lila, I know you're not a real doctor, but you work in medicine, don't you? No. I was getting really alarmed now. Dan, no, I work on viruses. It's not the same. What's happened to her? She went out into the storm to try to get help. She got hit by something, metal sheeting, I think. I got her back to the villa, but she's badly hurt. And though she isn't a doctor like that, she knows she's likely the most qualified person here to help her, so she agrees. Except before they can make their way back to Santana, they hear Joel cry Romy. So they go through the clearing to see that the villa she was in had a huge palm tree fall on top of it and crush it with her inside, which they know because they see a foot sticking out from one of the chunks of debris. Joel sees the foot and runs to it, and all three of them clear the debris over her to find that she is dead. Joel is obviously sobbing and blaming himself, and Dan tries to reassure him that there was nothing he could have done, that if he was in the villa with her, they would have both been dead. I could have woken her up, Joel sobbed. I could have told her to get out. Mate, we tried, Dan said, and me and Santa, we tried to get out, and it didn't end well. He glanced at me, and I knew what he was trying to say. We needed to get back to Santana. Joel, I said gently. Joel, listen to me. Santana's hurt. Will you be okay here for a few minutes if I go and see what I can do? Joel shook his head uncomprehendingly, but I wasn't sure if he was really listening to me or just brokenly trying to refute the reality of what was in front of him. Joel, listen, I have to go and try to help Santana, but I'll be back, okay? I will come back, so just stay here, alright? Alright, he whispered, but I had no idea if he was just echoing back my own words, or if he'd really taken in what I just said. Come on, I said to Dan. Show me where she is and I'll see what I can do. So she follows Dan to his and Santana's hut, which is still mostly intact, and Santana's on the bed. The sheet's covered in blood, and Lila sees that her thigh was ripped open about 6 inches, and Lila knows it is crucial to make sure the wound does not get infected, so it needs to be washed and covered, so she goes to look for clean water and bandages. She gets to the staff area. She ends up all scratched and bruised from having to scramble over debris in just her underwear because she had to take her dress off when she dives in to save Joelle. So yeah, she's just in her underwear this whole time. And there is only one hut left standing in the staff area. So she tries the radio again, making a mayday call. No answer. She goes back to searching for a first aid kit, but she just finds a water bottle, a pack of open Oreos, a roll of janitorial paper, and a roll of duct tape. And she heads back to the villa, but along the way, she finds a body laying under the bushes, and it's a woman who was one of the producers. They didn't even know her name, but she was hit in the head by something and she bled out. So fighting her revulsion and fear, she gets back to the villa and asks Dan if he has anything sharp like a ballpoint pen or a pocket knife. Luckily he has a pen, so she gives Santana the Oreos to get her blood sugar back up. Then she brings her over to the shower, stabs the pen into the water to create a stream to wash her wound, to get the metal dirt and bits out, and then she wraps paper around her wound and then the duct tape, and it's the best she can do until Santana can get medical help. She says she needs to go back to the others, and Santana asks if Joelle is okay. They tell her that Romy is dead, and Lila then tells both of them about the other dead person she found, and Santana tells Dan to go with Lila to help whoever needs it. And we get another journal from Zaina. Today is Thursday, 15 February, and I have decided to write a diary. My head is so full of everything that's happened since the storm last night, and I needed some way to make sense of it all. We are all reeling from the storm, which seems to have blown our boat off course, but also from the terrible shock of poor Rami's death. She was killed when a palm tree came down on her villa, crushing it to bits. It's hit all of us, but Joelle the worst. He's destroyed. We found her early this morning, and I will never forget his cries. Connor was trying to persuade him to come away, so he and Bear pulled the debris off Romi's body. Didn't happen. I remember him cradling Joelle and saying over and over, "I've got you, brother, I've got you." This did not happen. The only comfort is that Lila says she didn't suffer, that it must have been instant. And there is a kind of comfort in that, although I don't think poor Joelle is ready to see it yet. Romy wasn't the only casualty from the storm. One of the producers was killed. We don't even know her name. Santana was hit by some flying metal and got a horrible gash in her leg. And Bayer's shoulder was dislocated, but Connor managed to pull it back into place. I keep replaying the sound it made inside my head, that sickening crack. I thought I might throw up. Bayer went green with pain, but he looks better afterwards. I'll have to keep it strapped up. But thank God Connor knew what to do. I have no idea how he knew all of that. 8 of us, just 8, and 2 injured. It feels more vital than ever that we take care of each other until the boat gets back for us. How long will it take to get here? 2 days? Not more, surely. We can do this. I know we can. We just have to stay strong. And we go into chapter 13. So, why is Zaina already twisting the truth a little bit in these journal entries? But after finally convincing Joelle to leave Romy, the 3 of them head towards the beach. On the way, Lila ducks in for some clothes and sunblock, and then they find the others, Bayer, Angel, Connor, and Zaina, and they all huddle up at the cabana, and they explain to them what happened to Romy and Santana. Connor tries to comfort Joelle, but he flinches away, and then Lila worries about Nico, thinking that the over-easy should have been back by now. Dan then tells them all about the dead producer, and Bayer says the storm took half of their villa's roof, and when they ran, a tree came down on Bayer's shoulder, so Connor pops it back in, and then they debate when and if the yacht will be back for them, and Bayer calls Lila a woman during the conversation in a very derogatory way. I just had to point out. And then Lila tells them that she heard them talking about the storm before they got on the boat, but said it wasn't due for another few days. And then they make a plan to move the mattresses into the huts left standing and then dig graves for the bodies. And we have another journal entry. 2 days since we saw the Over Easy, and I think we're all starting to get seriously worried, though everyone is trying to keep it together in front of the others. By day, we're keeping ourselves busy, catching fish, trying to patch up the villas. Santana's leg is looking better, and that's something at least. The question we're all asking in secret is the same one. What do we do if it doesn't come back for us. No one has had the courage to say it out loud yet. I think we all know that once we voice the suspicion, it will become real. I haven't even told Connor my fears, but I can see them in his eyes, and I know he is doing the same, trying to stay strong for me. But the question is there, beneath the surface, eating away, and it's worse at night when it becomes unignorable. What will we do if it doesn't come? In chapter 14, they have a makeshift dinner of food from the fridge that is about to go bad when Connor says it's time to bury the bodies. But surely we can't, Santana looks puzzled. Should we leave the bodies for, I don't know, the police or something? This ain't a crime scene, woman, Bayer said angrily. The pain in his shoulder was evidently nagging at his nerves, and he had been snapping and growling at everyone. Even terrified, Bambi-eyed little Xana had been called a stupid cunt when she knocked his bad shoulder accidentally, handing him a sandwich. Yeah, I'm not digging his sexist remarks here. Connor had said nothing, but I had seen the muscles in his jaw move as he gritted his teeth to stop himself from replying. Now Bayer had been drinking. Beer was one of the few liquids we had other than water, and I could see he was spoiling for a fight. It's not a crime scene, Santana said spiritedly, but they're both unnatural deaths, and I'm assuming that means they'll have to be autopsied. For Christ's sake, Joel broke out as if he couldn't bear to hear it anymore. I thought that for a brief moment this afternoon he had managed almost to forget about what had happened to Romy, kid himself that she was on the boat back with Nico and the others. Now it was coming horribly back to him. Yeah, poor Joel. But Connor says they can't leave the bodies though because they could attract predators or disease, and at least if they bury them now, it can be with dignity. So they bury them, say a few words about them. Joel says he loves Romy and he's sorry he wasn't a better boyfriend to her, and then Santana leads him away when he starts bawling again, and we go into chapter 15. Connor says since they are already on day 3 stranded here and they don't know how long they will be, they should have a plan for the worst case scenario and see how much water and food they have, or if they have any means of contacting the mainland. Lila tells him that there's a radio and they agree to go try it and then take inventory. They don't have much, a lot of water, but not much food, some toilet paper, and some cleaning supplies. Also, no first aid supplies, and it looks like the desalination plant was destroyed, which keeps the water clean. They also can't figure out how the power was supplied, so they just pack up the food and bring it back to the cabana under Connor's instruction, and Bear is having an issue with him bossing them around. Lila gets Bear's frustration, but is glad at least someone is taking charge. And then before their third trip to bring supplies back, Angel refuses to carry any more food when the boat should come eventually, and yells that Connor is not the boss of her. And he tells her that if she wants to eat, she will carry it. Bayer yells, "Don't talk to my woman like that," and Connor questions him on her benefiting on everyone else's hard work. So they all start fighting, and Connor suggests that they take a break and some space, and then get some food and finish all this in the afternoon. And then before they go, they try the radio. No luck again, and they figure out that it's battery powered and will eventually die. "You're both right," Connor said at last decisively. "Joelle, you can stay here and broadcast a mayday call on half a dozen different frequencies. See if you could get any response. If you can, write down what the frequencies were. And then if that doesn't work, we turn off the radio to conserve power and try again tomorrow." "Lila, did you scroll through to see if you could hear anything?" No," I said a little shamefacedly. As soon as Connor had said the words, it seemed like such an obvious step. Of course, if there were a channel people were already using, it made sense to put a call out on that one. "No, I didn't think of that." "Well, it's probably a good idea to do that first, to see if we can pick up anything. If we can't, just pick some frequencies you can remember, Joel, and we'll try different ones tomorrow." "Okay," Joel said. He picked up the receiver and began turning the dial, listening intently as the static ebbed and rose. "The rest of us will take one more set of supplies up to the cabana, and then we'll break for lunch." So they do that, and we get another journal entry. "Today is 17 February, 3 days since the storm, and I think the gravity of the situation we are in has begun to sink in. Something must have happened to the boat, which is a terrifying thought. Yesterday we had a group meeting and totaled up all of our water and food supplies. Bayer worked out that we have just over 200 liters of water, plus some liquid from the tins, and whatever we can forage from coconuts and so on. It's not a lot. Even if we restrict ourselves to a liter a day, which Lila says is barely what you need to survive in heat like this, we're talking 8 liters a day between all of us, which is about a 25-day supply, less than a month. Today was the first day we tried the new allocation, and God, it was hard. Breakfast was fine, but by the evening I was so thirsty. I couldn't think of anything apart from water. I was fantasizing about it, about taking big lugs from a jug or standing in a shower and letting it pour down my body. We had agreed to dole out the evening allocation when the sun hits its tall palm to the west of the island. But as we watched it inch over the forest, I nearly cracked and begged for my allowance early. I think if it hadn't been for Connor, I would have. but he talked me through it. We played this game. I closed my eyes and imagined myself walking through the rooms of my childhood house, describing each one to him. It felt so incredibly real, and when I opened my eyes, I realized that the sun was almost setting, touching the tip of the palm tree. I nearly ran to the cabana. I have never been so glad to see anyone in my life as Bayer handing out the cups of water. I am dreading how much harder it's going to get, but I can't think about that yet. Someone will come. Someone has to come. And then we are in chapter 16. The next day, Lila wakes up earlier than anyone else for their villa, and she walks to the far shore of the island where the boat anchored the first day. No boat was on the way now, though, and Connor comes from behind asking if she's watching the horizon too. She asks him what they're gonna do, and he says all they can do is survive, that someone will eventually come looking for them, that Baz hired this island off somebody, and there has to be a production company back in the UK that will eventually follow the breadcrumbs. And how long will that take, especially if the storm was as bad or worse on the mainland? They may not have the local resources to be out looking for a parcel of idiot reality TV show contestants. I don't know, Connor said quietly. Obviously, I hope this hurricane wasn't too destructive. If it wasn't a big deal on the other islands, well, put it this way, I'm almost more worried about that possibility. What do you mean? I was puzzled. You're worried the storm wasn't bad enough? That doesn't make sense. I mean, if the storm was a big deal, it'll have made the news in the UK. People will want to know we're okay, and when they can't contact Baz, they'll start to get worried. Family members will start making a fuss, contacting Real TV. But if it was just a local thing... Shit, suddenly my hands felt cold in spite of the rising heat of the day. If no one in the UK knows what happened, they may not know to send out searches. So basically, they might be stuck there the minimum of the time it was supposed to take them filming until someone gets concerned that they're not back yet, and they have no idea if Baz was checking in with anyone else or sending footage to anyone else that would also be worried. Then she tells Connor she heard that he knew Baz. He seemed shifty about it, saying that they had people in common, but it's not much to hang their survival on. She asks him how long he thinks they can survive, and he says it depends on how much fruit and fish they can scrounge up, maybe even bats. Lila is confused and says they have a ton of food, but Connor says there are 8 of them, and even if they limit themselves, they have a few weeks of food at most. And he's more worried about the water, actually, that they only have at most 3 weeks supply, and she suggests that they could get the desalination plant working, but Connor says it was missing huge chunks out of it, so it's not looking good. They can set up water butts in case it rains, but it's currently looking unlikely. And then back at the cabana, the others are making breakfast. Dan and Santana were drinking cups of something that looked and smelled a lot like black coffee. Angel was picking a tin of fruit salad, and Bayer had unscrewed the lid of one of the water bottles and was chugging directly from the neck, water running down his chin. Joel was nibbling a brioche. On the far side of the clearing, a bird was sitting in a tree, balefully nibbling on a brioche it must have stolen when no one was looking. Only Zaina wasn't eating or drinking. Look, I found coffee, Santana called as we came closer, holding up her cup. You want some? Put that down, Connor said flatly. Santana set down her coffee cup.
Fellas, don't drink that coffee.
I beg your pardon? Not you, him. He nodded at Bear, who lowered the water bottle with menacing slowness. What did you say? His voice was full of pent-up aggression that made me pause in my ascent of the steps, but Connor didn't blink. He walked up to the table and sat, his demeanor calm. Look, we should have talked about this last night, but we need to start rationing our supplies, particularly water. Lila and I were just down at the cove. There's no sign of the boat, and we have to assume we might be in this for the long haul. What do you mean, particularly water? Angel raised one eyebrow. We have liters and liters of water. We spent all day hauling the stupid stuff up from the staff quarters. We actually don't have that much, I said, a little diffidently. I sat down beside Joel. Connor and I were just running through the mass, and he's right, we're going to need about 8 liters a day just to survive. At that rate, we'll be through the water in 2 or 3 weeks. Sorry, but 8 liters is ridiculous, Santana said with a smile. Even the biggest hydration freak wouldn't drink that much. We don't need to wash with bottled water, we can use the sea for that. Not 8 liters a person, Connor spelled it out. 8 liters for all of us, a liter each, per day. What? Dan was looking confused. But that's not enough to survive. Not in this heat. Unless it rains, it'll have to be. I went all over the island and there's no water supply. We could dig a well, Santana said uncertainly. Connor shook his head. We're basically a big sandbar in the middle of the ocean. Any well is just going to be seawater, and we've got plenty of that already. Fuck, Bear banged the big bottle down on the table so hard the water splashed and splattered the surface. Everybody winced. I caught Joel staring at the droplets, watching as they evaporated from the hot surface of the wood. God, I hate Bear. And do these people even want to survive? Like, holy moly. Santana says the boat has to be back by 2 or 3 weeks, but Connor says he thinks if the boat was coming, it would have been back by now, which he knows is not what everyone wants to hear, but they need to be realistic. They all go big time trying to think of reasons. No one has gotten to them by by now, but realistically, it's looking like no one knows they are there. Either way, they all have to act like no one is coming to save them. And we get another journal entry. Today is Wednesday the 21st, exactly 1 week since the storm. When I woke up this morning and the boat still wasn't there, I felt, I don't know, something close to despair. A week. Even if the boat had broken down, surely they would have raised the alarm by now. Something terrible must have happened. If I think about it too much, I feel like I might go mad. The only thing that's keeping me sane is the fact that I'm here with Connor. He's so calm, so strong, even in a situation like this, and he's practical too. He was the one who thought of rounding up all the food and water from the staff quarters and figuring out how long we could ration it out to survive. I'm writing this in the water villa. That's where we're living now, me and Connor. It's not ideal, the jetty is very rickety, but there were only 3 villas left standing after the storm. Ours, Lila's, and the water villa, so we didn't have much choice. In some ways, it would have made more sense for me and Connor to stay in our original villa, but Bear's shoulder was dislocated in the storm, and since then he hasn't been doing so well. We had a private chat, Connor and I, and he asked whether I'd be prepared to offer Bear and Angel our villa, give the 2 of them some space, and give Bear some peace and quiet to recuperate. I'm not so keen on water, but I agreed that it wouldn't be safe for Bear to try to make it out here every night. If he fell in, I don't know if he could swim with his bad shoulder. So in spite of my misgivings, I told Connor to go for it, to tell Bear and Angel to take the palm tree rest. And you know what? I'm glad I did. The water villa, it's beautiful. And somehow out here, surrounded by the waves, I'm not so scared anymore. But the real reason I said yes was for Connor. He makes me want to be a better person. God, I love him so much. We'll go to chapter 17. Over the next few days, we fell into an uneasy rhythm. In the mornings, we gathered at the cabana for breakfast. Then someone, usually me or Joelle, would make our way back to the staff quarters to try the radio. The rest of the day, we would spend fishing, exploring the island, and then as the heat grew more unbearable, everyone would retreat for the afternoon to the shade of the villas, playing cards, sleeping, and trying to ignore our growing thirst, waiting impatiently for the sun to touch the leaves of what we'd started to call the water palm on the tip of the island, when Connor doled out the evening ration. Connor, Zaina, Angel, and Bear seemed at first to have established themselves in Palm Tree Rest, the villa Nico and I were to have had, but after the altercation between Connor and Bear over breakfast, it quickly became apparent that that wasn't going to be an arrangement that could stick long term. I had been expecting that one couple would make a move to begin renovating one of the wrecked villas, probably Bear, as he seems most unhappy with the current arrangement, and in fact had twice spent the night in the ruined ocean bluff sleeping under the stars. But what actually happened was something quite different, something none of us had predicted. We didn't notice it until we gathered at the cabana for supper one evening, and then it was Santana who spotted it. She was leaning over the railing of the cabana, looking out at the sunset beyond the beach when she gave an exclamation. "Wait, who's been rebuilding the jetty?" "That would be me," Connor said with a grin. "Caveman tools, a rock, and scavenged nails, but it worked, kind of." So at this point, I wasn't sure how I felt about Connor yet, but I had to give him some credit that at least someone was taking charge and doing things no one else seemed to be doing. But Connor says him and Zaina will be sleeping at the water villa, and that Bear can have the palm tree rest. And he sarcastically replies, "Oh, I can I?" And I don't know what's up Bro's ass, but he's also drunk, smelling of beer, and Angel tries to calm him down. And Lila worries about how Zaina will be feeling in the water villa with her fear of water and everything. Don't like that the journal entries are saying what's going to happen in the next chapter before they actually happen. Yes, they don't happen exactly the way she says they will, which you'll get later on why, but it's still very repetitive to read, and I don't like it. But anyway, Zaina answers that she's fine with it, though Lila wonders how Connor could be unaware of her phobia of the water. And then Dan shows them the bananas and coconuts that him and Lila found that morning, and they divide them up, and Bayer spits a banana out saying it tastes like shit, and Joelle and Angel get a coconut open and get some water out of it, which Bayer also aggressively rejects, saying that they put crap in his water. It's just coconut hairs, but still he gives it to Angel. I was expecting Bayer to make a fuss, say that he'd been joking, maybe even take Angel's water from her. The idea of lasting all night without any more water wasn't pleasant, but he did none of those. Instead, he pulled the big 5-liter water bottle towards him, the one Connor had set down carefully measuring out our rations, unscrewed the top, and took a long gulp. For a moment, there was absolute silence. We all just stared at Bayer, unsure what to do. Then, almost involuntarily, I found my eyes going to Connor. "Put that down," Connor said very quietly. The words dropped like stones into the silence. Bear put the bottle down and grinned widely. There had been almost a liter left in the bottom. Now there was barely half a cup. "Sure," he said. "Listen to me." Connor's voice was calm, but deadly, and it made a shiver run down my spine. "I'm giving you 3 strikes, Bear, and you've had 2 of them, but if you try something like that again, you're out." "Out?" Bear gave a guffawing laugh. "I don't know if you've noticed, mate, but there's no out. There's nowhere to fucking go." Connor had stood up, towering over Bear, and now Bear stood up too, putting them nose to nose. The air crackled with testosterone, and beside me I heard Joel swallow nervously. Guys, he tried, but neither of the other two men even acknowledged him. You think you could take me? Bear was saying. Connor just shrugged. I could hold my own. Bear laughed scoffingly, as if he doubted that. Looking at the two of them, I wasn't so sure. True, Bear was more muscled. He must have had a good stone on Connor, and he looked like he wouldn't mind fighting dirty, but he also had the beefed up bulk of someone who spent a long time pumping iron but not much time on cardio, and his dislocated left shoulder definitely wouldn't help. Connor, on the other hand, looked fit. There wasn't an ounce of fat on him, and his muscles were hard with tendons like whipcords, and there was something in his stance that told me this wasn't the first time he'd been in this situation, and that he wasn't scared. I swallowed too, my throat suddenly dry in spite of the coconut water. Bear, Angel said now, standing up. Bear, stopping a dickhead. Connor, look, Bear should not have done that. He knows this, but it was one time. He will respect the ration from now on, won't you? She glared at Bear. Won't you? Respect has to be earned, Bear said, his lip curling, but he turned away from Connor's pale, unflinching gaze and began walking into the night. Come on, babe. Angel gave a look back at the group, as if to say, what can I do? And then she followed Bear into the gathering darkness. Yeah, this guy's gonna be a real problem. Then Lila realizes that even without the cameras, they're pretty much falling into the reality TV tropes. Bear being the alpha male, duking it out for the prize, except the stakes now are life and death. I'll follow up, Joel said. Give Connor and Xana a hand clearing up. I nodded. Thanks, Joel. Will you guys be okay? We'll be fine, Connor said. Won't we, Xana? Yes, Xana said almost inaudibly. I bit my lips. I had to say something. Xana, listen, are you sure you'll be okay getting out to the water villa? Because if you're not, she'll be fine, Connor said reassuringly. Won't you, Xana? I was asking Xana, I said, unable to prevent a note of irritation from creeping into my voice. Connor smiled and put up his hands. You're right, rude of me. Xana? I'm fine, Xana said, echoing Connor's words, but she didn't look it. She looked deathly pale. I turned and looked at Santana, trying to communicate my unease, but Santana was frowning down at her diabetes monitor, fiddling with something on the display. Dan, I said at last, but he only shrugged. I'm bushed. Are you coming or not? I felt a wave of powerlessness sweep over me, but what could I do? If Xana was determined not to admit her fears in front of Connor, how could I bring them up? Okay, I said, good night all, and then I turned and followed Dan and Santana in darkness. Yeah, something's definitely up with Connor and Xana too. We get another journal entry. It's now more than a week since any of us have had a shower or washed our faces in fresh water or drunk as much as we want to slake our thirst. And honestly, right now, I would give my kidney for a cold Coke brimming with ice or a huge pitcher of fresh lemonade. Oh, I love lemonade, girl. I feel ya. Misted with condensation, I lie awake at night and dream about water. In my dreams, I'm gulping it down. It's running over my face. I'm not the only one suffering. I know the others must have found it just as hard, maybe even harder, particularly the men who have more body mass and probably by rights ought to get more water, though we agreed we'd share it out equally. I tried to persuade Connor to take some of my fruit at least, but he wouldn't. We help each other to keep strong. It's amazing what you can survive when you have people telling you that they have faith in you, that you can get through it. If I get through this, God, if we get rescued, I swear I will never take water for granted again. We go into chapter 18, where Lila wakes to Angel standing in the middle of the cabana, speaking frantically in French. Lila asks her what she's saying, and she says the food and the water is gone. I thought it was gonna be Bear. Actually, that took it. But no, none of them know where the water went, and Dan says he was gonna get something for Santana since she's been having trouble keeping her insulin right in this heat. But Connor comes and admits that he took the food, that Rats started going for the packaging, and he felt it would be safer over at the water villa. They're all mad that he unilaterally made this decision, except Joel doesn't look shocked, so Lila asks if he knew about this, and Joel says that Connor's right, there were rats trying to get into the food, and that the water villa is a much safer place to store it, and Lila says, then we discussed that. You don't just wait until bed and make a unilateral decision, and Connor says, we're discussing it now. Okay, I hate this guy too now. There is fucking nothing to discuss, Bear said furiously. The veins in his neck and forehead were standing out, and I could see one big vein running down from his jaw that was throbbing visibly. Nobody died and made you king of the island, you fucking prick. Give me back my share, or I will end you. He said the last words with barely contained ferocity that sounded like he meant it literally. I think if he could have killed Connor in that moment, he would have done it, but Connor didn't back down. He didn't even move. He simply set the water bottle down on the path and folded his arms. I'll give you your share when you prove you can be trusted, he said. Then he smiled. I think it was the smile that did it. At that, Bear snapped. He rushed at Connor with his head down like a bull and slammed into him with a force that I felt in my knees. Connor folded with the impact, and the two of them crashed onto the path, grappling like pro wrestlers, rolling this way and that on the sand. Angel was shrieking again. Dan was shouting, "Stop it, just fucking stop it, the two of you." Connor had pulled himself upright, and now he was backing away from Bear towards the cabana steps, but Bear rushed him again, and they both fell to the ground again, their bodies thumping against the wooden stairs in a way that made the whole cabana shake. For a few minutes there was nothing but confusion, their bodies rolling this way and that. First Connor uppermost, then Bear, then Connor again, and then somehow Bear was on top, straddling Connor. He pulled back his fist and punched Connor square in the face. Blood sprayed everywhere, splattering across the sand, and then Connor twisted out of Bear's grip and was on top of him, straddling him like a bull. He was hitting Bear again and again and again in the head, Bear's skull bouncing off the steps with every blow. "Stop it," Angel was screaming. "Stop it, you're killing him." And then Suddenly I knew she was right. Bear was no longer fighting back. In fact, Connor had him by the front of his t-shirt with one hand, hitting him with the other, and Bear's body was flopping like a rag doll with every one of Connor's punches. "Connor," I shouted. "Connor, for God's sake, stop right now." For a minute, I wasn't sure that Connor had heard me, and then with what looked like supreme effort, he got a hold of himself and let Bear's shirt go. Bear fell back onto the steps with an audible thud, and Connor stood up and staggered over the bushes, spitting out of his mouth. Angel rushed across to Bear, and I followed. "Bear," she was crying, kneeling beside him. "Bear, are you okay? Wake up. Fuck Lila, help me. He won't wake up." "Bear," I crouched beside her, touching his cheek. There was no reaction. In fact, no sign of life at all that I could see. Blood in his nostrils wasn't bubbling, and I couldn't detect any trace of breathing, though it was hard to hear anything above Angel's stifled sobs. "Bear," I said. I slapped his cheek very gently and then pulled back an eyelid. My stomach turned uneasy. Beneath the pupil of his hazel eye was dilated to a glassy uniform black, and it didn't contract as light hit it. I pressed a hand over one ear and put the other to his chest, but could hear nothing above the sound of Angel weeping. "Angel, I'm sorry. Could you be a little quieter?" I felt horrible asking her, but it was impossible to hear anything with her gulping next to my other ear. "Angel," Dan said softly. "Angel, come and sit over here with me for a second. Just a second, okay?" He led her a few feet away, and I put my ear back to Bear's chest, right over his heart, and I held my breath, the better to hear. There was nothing. No familiar thump or whoosh, no gurgle of lungs struggling to breathe as they filled up with blood. So, yeah, then she asks Joel to come and check if he can hear anything. And no. Angel must have sensed something about our interaction, because now she stood up, her expression wary. "Bear, Lila, is he okay?" "Angel, I stopped. How the fuck did you say this?" Is he okay?" she demanded more forcefully, stalking across the decking towards us. I stood too. "Angel, he is, I think Bear is dead." Her scream echoed around the clearing, sending the birds shooting up into the clear blue sky with alarm, and the fruit bats shifting uneasy on their branches. Connor had turned and was looking at us perplexed. It seemed like he hadn't heard what I said, and perhaps he hadn't, with his ears still ringing from the fight. The front of his t-shirt was running with blood, and he was pinching the bridge of his nose as if trying to stem the flow. "Angel," he asked, as if confused, "what happened?" "You fucking monster." She ran at him, slapping and hitting and screaming. Connor didn't try to fight back or restrain her, just fell back, his arms up protecting his face, and it was Joelle and I who had to try to hold Angel back, prevent her from scratching out Connor's eyes. When we finally had her, she was panting and weeping, and Connor's face was adorned with several long scratches in addition to his bloody nose. So yeah, she yells at him that he killed him and then tells everyone else to leave her alone and says she's gonna leave and runs away, presumably to the radio. So yeah, Bear is dead.
It's escalating quickly.
Murder already. That was fast. I mean, Bayer kind of asked for it, and his attitude definitely wasn't sustainable, but I'm really not convinced Connor won't be just as much of a problem later on. They bury Bayer at sunset, and Angel's radio calls met with no response, and before the burial, they spent the day fishing, picking fruit, and rigging up rainwater collectors, and now they leave Bayer's grave and head back to the cabana, where Joelle already has a fire going, and Lila is freaked out remembering that this is where the death happened, and Santana tries to comfort her, being the only one who didn't witness it. Lila asks Santana how long her insulin will last, and she says she brought 3 months worth, but doesn't know how long it'll last without being refrigerated, and if she runs out, she dies within 36 hours. So with that morbid conversation sidelined, Joelle tells them dinner is almost done. He barbecued octopus. Angel takes her portion and leaves to go eat alone, but Connor stops her, telling her to put it back. "I'm sorry, what?" Angel said. said. She stopped in her tracks and looked back, one eyebrow raised in haughty disdain. She was staring at Connor like he was something she had scraped off her shoe. You heard me. Connor moved closer. Not for the first time, I noticed how tall he was. He had a good 6 inches on Angel, who was tall herself. And now, without apparently even trying, he exuded a kind of physical menace as he stood over her, forcing her to look up at him. Put that back. You didn't contribute a thing today. You don't get first pick of the food. Connor, Joelle said uneasily, come on, mate. What? This is a collective. We all contribute. We all eat. Connor, her boyfriend died this morning, Santana said. At your hand was the unspoken coda, though it hardly needed stating. It was too fresh for anyone to have forgotten. Give her a break, maybe? I am giving her a break, Connor said calmly. I'm letting her eat, in spite of the fact that she's done nothing all day. But this, he gestures to the side of the portion, is taking the piss. I'm not letting her take the piss. Why would they serve up an unequal portion like that in the first place? You're letting her eat? I couldn't stop the words coming out incredulously. Connor turned to me. His pale eyes were ice cold. Yes. Do you have a problem with that? Connor, the voice was quiet, but it made us all stop, more in surprise than anything. It was Zaina. She moved across to where he was standing, uncomfortably close to Angel, and put a hand on his arm. Connor, maybe? Just this once? Connor said nothing. His face was impassive, but I had the sudden disquieting impression that he was holding his emotions in check, and only barely. Then he turned and smiled, but there was nothing about the smile that gave off warmth. It was the coldest, most frightening expression I'd ever seen. You're right, just this once. Go ahead, Angel. Fuck you, Angel said. She pushed past him back to the table and slammed the plate down, flicking her fingers at it with a contemptuous gesture. I don't want yours. She stopped searching for the English word, and then with a noise that was more expressive than any sentence, she gave a snort of fury and stormed off into the night. There was a collective exhalation of breath, and we all picked up our plates. Damn, Connor, you just killed her boyfriend and you can't let her have some fucking octopus?
This guy sucks ass!
But Dan suggests that someone goes after her, but Connor says to leave her, and then cheerfully tells Joel the octopus is really good. It was unnerving, but Connor then passes out beers, which helps everyone relax a little bit, and Santana tells Lila she's impressed that Zaina stood up for herself, but Lila wonders what the outburst will cost her. We have another in-between chapter journal. Bear is dead. Oh my god, Bear is dead. I'm sobbing as I write this. It doesn't seem real. Part of what makes it so hard to accept is that it was so sudden. He hadn't been looking great the last day or two. His arm was very swollen, and he kept complaining of a headache. We tried to persuade him to have a bit of extra water allocation, or at least drink some more coconut juice, but he kept refusing. He said it wouldn't be fair on the rest of us. But then this morning, as we were all heading up to breakfast talking about the day, he got halfway up the steps to the cabana and just stopped, kind of swaying back and forth. He took a step, then another, and then he crashed out full length. His head hit the stair with the most awful sound I've ever heard, a kind of crunching crack. Angel just screamed. We knew it was bad straight away because there was blood. It spattered all over the steps. We all ran over to try to help him up, and that's when we realized he was dead. Just dead. He wasn't breathing, and we couldn't feel his heart. Lila pulled back his lids, and his eyes were black and unresponsive to light. And just like that, he was gone. His life snuffed out. I keep running over what happened in my head, trying to figure out what he did wrong, how we could have saved him. Was it heat stroke? Did he need more water than the rest of us? Or was it something to do with his shoulder? Some kind of clot maybe, that broke away and traveled to his brain? Lila says we'll never know, that there's no point in torturing ourselves. Connor is broken by it. Bear was probably the person he was closest to on the island after me. He shut himself in the water villa, and I know he was crying, although when I came to him he pretended he was okay. Our only hope now is the radio. Poor Angel spent the rest of the day down there trying to find a ship, trying to find a signal. I know she blames herself, thinks that if she managed to make contact earlier, someone could have saved Bear. Please God, let someone find us. We are 7 people now, just 7. How long can we hold on? Ooh, girl, that is not what happened. Why are we lying? We go into chapter 19 where everyone is complaining about how hungry and thirsty they are, and Dan is resentful that Connor took control of the supply. If we're not careful, we're all going to end up like Zaina. Dan said. I'm sorry, what? Joel said. He sounded puzzled. What the hell has Zaina got to do with anything? And what do you mean, end up like her? I mean, he's pretty controlling, Santana said. Don't you think? It's not just over her. There was a long silence. No one had discussed Connor's increasing autocracy and the decreased willingness of the group to stand up to him. It wasn't just his grip over the food and water. It wasn't just the brutal efficiency with which he had taken out Bear. It was everything. In the beginning, I think we'd all been grateful for his willingness to take charge, set the rules, make us all feel safe. But day by day, inch by inch, Connor had slowly eased himself more and more into a position of control. Now, somehow, we had found ourselves in a situation where he was dictating not only how much we ate and drank, but when and even if. His remark to Angel that he was letting her eat had been an admission of something that none of us had wanted to face. But now, Connor had put it into words, and I felt cold, chill certainty coalesce in the pit of my stomach. Zaina was not okay. None of us were, and we were too scared to challenge him. She's frightened of him, I said. It felt like a realization, but as I said the words, I knew that I wasn't. Not really. It was an admission of something I'd suspected almost since the first day on the island. What? Joelle said nonplussed. How do you make that out? I've never seen them exchange a crossword. You've never seen them exchange a crossword because she never stands up to him, Santana said tartly. I nodded. That argument tonight about Angel's food, that was literally the first time I've seen her push back at anything. Even though she's terrified of that bloody water villa, and she's a completely different person when she's not around him. I spent all day trying to rig up the rain catcher with her, and it was like being with another girl. What do you mean? Joelle asked. It's like, I struggled to put into words. Well, for one thing, she's got a personality when she's not looking over her shoulder and worrying about what he's thinking. She'll argue back, she'll make her point. She had this genius idea about sinking the bottles into the sand to minimize evaporation, but when she's around him, I trailed off. When she's around him, she seems scared, Santana finished my sentence for me, and I nodded, although I knew no one could see me in the darkness. On his mattress, in the other side of the double bed, I could hear Joel shifting uncomfortably, as if he didn't know what to say. Dan goes on to say he should have known how Connor would be from his YouTube videos. The first thing he did when they got the info packs to their homes was Google everyone. I frowned. What info pack? But Dan was still speaking, sounding like he was trying to marshal his thoughts. He's one of those I'm just asking the question guys, you know, the kind it's really hard to pin down because they never actually say the racist stuff themselves. They're just like, hey, thought experiment here. But what if racism wasn't so bad at all? He'll have someone incredibly shitty on his channel and he'll be like, well, now I'm not endorsing Andrew Tate, obviously, but I am interested in his point of view. And the end result is that you find you've sat through 20 minutes on some men's rights nut not being challenged about his views because Connor just quote unquote asking questions. Yeah, but Joel sounded like he was struggling. I have to say, I've seen some of his stuff. Wait, you've seen it? I don't know why, but the news shocked me. Then I remembered Joel's words to Connor on the boat on the day we met. I know who you are, of course. At the time, I just assumed he'd simply come across him in the press. Now the remark had a very different slant. Are you one of his subscribers? I'm not a co-bro, if that's what you mean, Joel said a little defensively, and Dan burst out laughing. Co-bro? Is that what his fans call themselves? Joel carried on doggedly, as though Dan hadn't interrupted. In fact, if you want to know the truth, I came across him because he had a run-in with Romy, so I'm hardly some kind of uncritical admirer. What? This was all getting more and more confusing. I'm sorry, did Romy know him? No, but he called her out on his channel. She was absolutely furious about it. He did this whole segment on beauty influencers and body image, and he called out a load of TikTokers he felt had damaging messages. Romy wasn't the target, but she was one of the channels he quoted. Anyway, she was mad as hell, but when I watched it, he shrugged helplessly. Honestly, I thought he had a point. Some of the stuff she says, he swallowed painfully, and I saw him correct himself, said was kind of toxic when he really thought about it. Let me guess, Santana's voice was unimpressed. All the toxic people he called out were young women, yes, and his 10.4 million followers probably descended on their feeds and made their lives miserable. So much for standing up for women. If it looks like a misogynist and barks like a misogynist, can we not just go by what he's actually said? Joel broke in. He sounded like he was becoming frustrated. You're telling me this smart guy wouldn't just read between the lines? Not him being red-pilled and dumb.
Ignorant and willfully so.
Okay, he's had the odd controversial guest on, and okay, his followers don't always behave perfectly, but unless you can point to me where he said or done something wrong, this feels a bit guilt by association. Look, you've clearly watched his channel more than me, Dan said, his voice placating, though beneath it, he didn't sound convinced by Joel's point. So I'll take your word on that. But for someone who claims he's not a racist, homophobic piece of shit, he sure attracts a lot of racist, homophobic piece of shit followers. Joel made an unhappy noise, and Dan waved his hand, dismissing the point of Connor's YouTube. Let's put that aside, though. It wasn't even talking about YouTube originally. It was the food and water situation I wanted to discuss. Is no one else bloody uncomfortable about all this? Yes, Santana and I both said at the same time, as Joel said, but it makes sense. What makes sense? Santana demanded. Him hoarding all the supplies over at his villa? How does that make sense, Joel? Help me understand, because at the moment, all I'm seeing is some animals are more equal than others. What? Dan sounded puzzled, and Santana made an impatient noise. Animal Farm, Dan. We were in tutorial together at uni. Did you pay any attention that year? But regardless, it doesn't make sense, Joel, and you know it. All that stuff about rats getting at the food was just an excuse. How was it an excuse? Joel said. His voice had risen, and he sounded more than a little aggrieved. I'd guessed he was feeling got at by the implication because of the way he'd fallen in trying to defend Connor's YouTube channel, and now his complicity in helping to move the food. He wasn't making that up. I saw it. There have been rats at the cardboard boxes, and there were trails of ants all over the place. None of that's a problem out of the water villa. So what's the excuse with the water? I can't see rats getting out the water. The reason, Joel said, his tone irritable now, is because some people didn't seem able to stick to their rations. What if we came down and found Bayer had drunk the whole lot? First, Bayer is dead, Joel. Do I need to remind you? At Connor's hands, no less. Second, you give everyone their own allocation, Santana's voice was rising too. You don't make a unilateral decision to hold everyone's water hostage. And then what, Joel said. He had sat up in bed, plainly too annoyed to lie down, and I could see his shape silhouetted against the night sky, his shoulders visibly tense even in an outline. When the water started to run out, what if someone decided they disturbed a bit more and felt like they'd take it by force? No, you give it to the strongest, most trustworthy person and put them in charge of making sure it's doled out fairly. There was a long silence. Then Dan spelled out what everyone apart from Joel was apparently thinking. The problem is, mate, we don't trust him. And to your point about rations, we have no idea if he's sticking to his allowance out there because we have no idea what's going on. No, I'm sorry. The longer we let this go on, the harder it's going to be to challenge it. I'm going to say something tomorrow. God, why is Joel defending Connor so much? It's coming off like he has like a crush on him. I'm not gonna lie. Is that how these manosphere people work? Also, I'm afraid for Dan to confront Connor because last time someone got in a spat with him, well, we see how that ended up. Connor definitely does not like being challenged. Oh, also, earlier when I said that it sounded like Connor's YouTube was kind of like a Hassan Piker thing, turns out it is the opposite, and he's more like an Andrew Tate. But anyway, Dan says he's just going to calmly point out that this way of organizing isn't fair, and if everyone backs him up, surely Connor will have to listen. He asks Joel if he will back him up, and he is hesitant but nods his head. I pray this doesn't result in Dan being hurt, because he's the only guy on this island I like at this point. But we go into chapter 20, and after breakfast, Dan brings his concerns up. He says they would all feel more comfortable if they each had their own individual rations of food and water, and Connor immediately says that's not going to work. Then he asks Dana to go check on Angel, who hasn't showed up, and I thought maybe something here happened to Angel. Thank God it didn't. Connor, listen, this is a democracy, and I think we all are agreed. Who said this is a democracy? Connor said pleasantly. I heard Santana's intake of breath and saw a muscle twitch in Dan's jaw. I'm sorry, he said. Connor shrugged. You heard me. No one said this was a democracy. I certainly didn't. Hell no. Hell no. Connor says again that the food is safest in the water villa away from pests, and he has the end say on what is fair. And Santana asks if Joel or Lila have anything to say about this, and Lila tells Connor that she understands his point about the food being kept in the villa, but everyone is uncomfortable about the idea of him having control of every aspect of it, and they would feel uncomfortable with anyone having that control, not just him. And she suggests they each keep their own water ration, and Connor says it's too risky because what if someone drinks all of their ration? They would then feel pressured to share theirs, and someone could steal their allowance, which Lila has the same thought as me, which is Connor already stole their allowances. But Dan gets fed up and tells Connor he didn't want to come to this, but there's 4 of them and 1 of him, and Connor is unperturbed by this and just asks if anyone wants to join him fishing, and this makes Dan square up to him. And even though Dan is fit, Connor has 4 inches on him and several dozen pounds. Plus, he took Bayer out easily, who was bigger than both of them, I believe. So Lila tries to get Dan to back down. But Connor was smiling down at Dan and looked very far from snapping. I did hear what you said, he said pleasantly, and now I'm going fishing. No, Dan said. No, you're not. Joel? He turned to look at Joel, who looked like he wanted to melt through the floor. Dan, he said very quietly, I don't think this is the right way to handle this. Oh, fuck you, Dan said. I had the strong impression he was trying not to cry, though I had no idea whether it was tears of anger or betrayal that he was holding back. He turned back to Connor and snapped his finger towards him. And fuck you too. Watch your back, mate. Then he stalked off into the trees. There was a long silence, and then from the opposite direction we heard the sound of long, slow hand clap. We all turned, and Angel was standing in the clearing in a long white dress that billowed in the sea breeze. Bravo, Dan, she said, but she was looking at Connor as she said the words. Someone finally stood up to the murderer.
Facts!
Yeah, I was really worried Connor did something to Angel, but luckily she seems fine. But Lila is over the whole situation, everyone fighting, so she announces she's gonna go to the Radio Shack, needing time to herself and hoping someone will then respond. And guys, can I be honest? Like, we're 60% in and I'm pretty bored so far. Almost feel like the actual game show continuing on would have been more interesting. But maybe that's because it makes me think of The Compound by Aileen Rowell, which I loved and highly recommend. But I don't know, let's see if this ramps up soon. Here's another journal entry from Xana. I couldn't sleep last night. I was so thirsty, but it was more than that. I kept running over all the what ifs everyone has been so carefully staving off, trying not to think about. What if the boat doesn't come? How long will our water last? What if Santana runs out of insulin? I was trying not to cry, but the tears came in the end and woke Connor up, and God, he was amazing. He just held me and sang to me hour after hour all of our favorite songs and some I'd never heard before. And the whole time he was telling me that it was going to be okay. It was all going to be okay. We just had to stay strong, look after each other, hang in there until help arrives. And eventually, sometime before dawn, I drifted off to sleep with him holding me. I don't know if he slept himself. Connor's arms are the only place I feel safe now. The only place I feel as if nothing can harm me. But even that makes me feel scared, because what if something happens to him? I feel like he's the only thing on this island keeping me from falling apart. It's not just me. Everyone's tempers are fracturing. This morning at breakfast, Dan broke down and demanded more water, and when everyone banded together to tell him he couldn't have it, that we were all thirsty as he was, he stormed off. We haven't seen him all day. We're all just praying he's okay. The truth is, it's getting to us in a way it didn't before. And at this point, I was like, why the heck is Xana lying in her journal entries? Is it just to protect Connor when they are found? But wouldn't everyone else have to corroborate the story? Like, unless she thinks no one else will be left? I don't know. When we go to chapter 21, Angel is theorizing that Connor is either a psychopath or sociopath. Plus, he is a Gemini, and they are notorious serial killers. Santana and Lila just look at each other when she says this, and then back out to Joel and Connor fishing, and they haven't seen Dan all day. He didn't even come for his water portion. And the girls, besides Xana, spent the rest of the day on the headland that had been Angel and Bear's villa. Angel suggesting they use the timber from the broken villa to create a bonfire ready to light if a ship came past. And Angel wants to ask Xana to join them, but Lila isn't sure if she will come since she is terrified of water and only crosses the gangway when Connor makes her. Angel thinks that is more proof that Connor is a psychopath, because who would put their girlfriend through that? Lila goes to use the restroom before dinner, the only thing on the island that is still operational if they fill the pan with seawater. But something seems odd when she enters the villa. Doors open, which it wasn't before, and she calls for Dan thinking maybe he came back, but there was no answer. So she uses the restroom, returns to the cabana where Santana is starting a fire for dinner, and then they watch Angel talk to Xana. Do you think she's being abused? I said to Santana, who sighed and stood up. I don't know. I only know. She stopped and I looked at her puzzled. What? Well, look, I didn't say anything because it seemed weird, but I knew his ex. Whose? Connor's? I was puzzled. Santana nodded. I was at school with her. She was in the year below me. She was 17 when they got together. He was 24. Yikes. Which at the time sounded quite glamorous, but looking back, I mean, it's borderline creepy if you ask me. 7 years is a lot when you're 17. Borderline creepy? He's a proper PDF. God. I nodded. I could see that. 17-year-olds aren't even adults. They can't legally drink. They can't vote. They can't buy cigarettes. 24-year-olds are in a different world. What was he like back then? I asked. Santana shrugged. That's the thing. I never met him. I just heard about him from Callie. It was Connor says this, Connor says that. You'd have thought he could walk on water. So how did you join the dots? I asked, wondering where this was going. There was something about Santana's tone I didn't like. I mean, there are a lot of Connors. Are you sure it's the same guy? When we got the information for the show, I realized I knew his name. I asked around, and one of Callie's sisters confirmed it was him. And she also told me what had happened to Callie. Which was, I asked, a little puzzled by her reluctance to get to the point. She's dead, Santana said flatly. She paused and swallowed, but I didn't get the impression she was holding out on me, more that she was trying to gear herself up for how to say something upsetting. She committed suicide 2 days after her 19th birthday. 2 days after he left her. Oh my God, Santana, that's awful. I know. 19, Lila. 19. I tried to process what that meant. Why didn't you say something? Say what? Santana said unhappily. She turned back to the fire, poking at it with a little stick, though it didn't really need tending. She seemed to be avoiding my gaze. Oh, you don't know me, but I went to school with your ex who killed herself. It's not really something to bring up over dinner, is it? No. I ran my hands through my salt-stiffened hair. No, God, no, I can see that. But do you think... I stopped, unsure where I was going with my train of thought. Santana waited for me to continue, and when I didn't, she finished the question for me. Do I think she killed herself because he was an abusive piece of shit? I have no idea. I honestly haven't got a clue. He could have been a model boyfriend whose girlfriend tragically couldn't deal with their breakup. But at the very least, it shows a pattern, doesn't it? A pattern of picking emotionally fragile younger women and making them very, very dependent on him. I looked out to see where Angel had taken hold of Zaina's arm and was coaxing her, plank by plank, across the fragile jetty, and I couldn't deny Santana was right. After dinner, the girls are washing dishes at the shore, and Joel and Connor are at the cabana talking over a map that Joel had sketched of the island, and seeing Joel being so friendly with Connor rubbed Lila the wrong way. Did he not care that Connor stole their supplies and killed Bayer? Lila asks Angel if she will bring her mattress up to the villa because she doesn't like the idea of Angel sleeping in the other villa alone. And Angel agrees, and Santana asks Zaina if her and Connor could move into the palm tree rest to be closer, but Zaina shakes her head, and Lila knows it's because Connor would never allow it, would never abandon the food and water, even if it made Zaina more comfortable. Santana tries to tell her that he cannot make her stay there, grabbing her arm, which reveals a black bruise on the inside of her wrist. Zaina pulls away and says she is fine, and she's very happy at the water villa, though her voice is very unconvincing. So with the sun setting, they bring Angel's things down to their villa, and Dan still has not returned. As they round the turn, they see a dark figure of a man against the trees, and it's Dan. They give him water and his supper ration, and he asks where Connor is, and he says he doesn't like how Joel is taking Connor's side, and Lila says she gets his point, but they have to live with each other, and they can't afford to tear the island in half. Angel says, "May I remind you," Angel said stiffly, her accent as French as I had ever heard, "that Connor killed my boyfriend? Fuck his stupid YouTube videos. He is a murderer." She's spitting facts. And Lila cannot argue that Connor killed Bayer, but she isn't sure she would call it murder either, since Bayer picked the fight. In a court of law, it would have been self-defense. Santana says they can't do anything anyway tonight, they should just try to be civil, and asks if Angel wants to bed with her, and Angel is confused because she's like, "Don't you and Dan want to sleep together?" And then Dan admits to her that he is gay, that there's no point in hiding it now since they're likely going to die, and Lila tries to get him to be hopeful, saying surely someone will find them, like surely someone has to come soon to service the septic tank or the desalination plant, but Angel says she will bed with Lila since she is sure Dan doesn't want to share with Joel, and she is pushing the little fridge to make room for the mattress when she stops. That's weird. What's weird, I asked, but Santana didn't answer. She had dropped to her knees and was peering inside the little fridge. Then she yanked it out from the wall and put both hands inside, feeling around. When she stood up, I could see, even in the moonlight, her face was pale and stricken. "Dan, Lila, did either of you touch my insulin?" "Your insulin?" I was puzzled. "No, of course not." "Me either," Dan said. "How come?" "Because it's not there." I could tell she was trying to stay calm, but there was a tremble in her voice that belied her level tone. "It's not there?" Dan sprang across the room, picking the fridge up and tilting it as if he didn't believe Santana, but of course she was right. All that fell out was a metal shelf. Dan swore and threw the fridge down, causing Angel to wince and Santana to protest. "Dan, for fuck's sake, there is no need to smash the place up. There must be some explanation. It's no use to anyone but me." "But why would anyone move it?" Angel asked. She was frowning. "Who would mess with another's medication? It seems very strange." "It's him." Dan's expression was murderous. "Connor, it's fucking him. This is his way of getting back at me for this morning, by punishing Santana." There was a silence from the rest of us as we tried to make sense of this possibility, and he swung around to face first me, then Angel, then finally Santana. "It's him. Admit it. It's the only thing that makes sense." Angel folded her arms and gave a very Gaelic shrug. "I'm in accord with you, Dan. There is only one psychopath on the island, and it is him. When I came back earlier before dinner," I said slowly, "the door was open. I thought it must have blown open, but that must have been whoever took it." "Fuck whoever. It's fucking him," Dan yelled. There was a vein standing out on his forehead. "I'm going to confront him." "Dan, no," Santana said urgently. "Listen to me. My pump is full. I have at least 3 days before I need to start worrying. Maybe more. Let's take tonight to figure out." "I'm taking nothing," Dan was shaking with rage. "I'm going down to confront him." "Dan, please," Santana said, but Dan was already heading towards the door. "Dan!" She ran after him, grabbing his hand. "Santana, stop it." Dan's voice was hard. "This is between me and him. It's my fucking insulin. This isn't about the insulin. The insulin is just one more way for him to control all of us, and I'm not having it." "We don't know it's him," Santana said desperately. "Dan, please, Dan." But Dan shook her hand off and headed out into the night. Woo! Drama, guys. So Lila goes outside and asks Joel if he has seen Dan and tells him about the whole insulin situation. And Joel says if he interferes, it will likely just aggravate Dan more, and maybe they should just let him say his piece. Lila says that didn't exactly work out for Bayer, and Joel defends Connor. Like, what is this romance here?
What is he holding over you?
Connor targeted Joel's girlfriend in his video, and now he's all buddy-buddy with him. Way to honor her memory, dude. Lila makes her way to the beach and calls for Connor, and she gets to the water villa, and Connor answers, asking if everything is okay, but he answers in a towel, and his hair is a little damp, and she tells him Dan was coming here to talk to him, but he says he hasn't seen him. Zan awakes and asks what's going on, and she says that if Dan comes here just to tell him that they were looking for him, and that Santana needs him back at the villa, and she heads back. And we get to chapter 22. She gets back to Santana, who says Dan is not there, and they call for him with no response, and Joel says there's nothing they can do until the morning, and they should just go to bed until then. And Lila comforts Santana, who is confused about why Dan wouldn't just come back there, and Lila says worst case scenario is that he spends the night out in the open. Yeah, I don't think that's the worst case scenario at all. I think there are multiple bad things that could happen, but sure. They go to bed, and the next day, Lila wakes up to Santana pacing. She said that she has gone to all the accessible parts of the island, and she still hasn't found Dan, and is worried that something happened to him, that maybe Connor did something. Lila says she talked to Connor, and it seems like he was genuinely asleep. Did it, though, if he was in a towel with his hair damp? Was he genuinely asleep? But anyway, Santana asks Lila if she asked him about the insulin, and she says no, she didn't want to start more drama in the middle of the night. And Angel thinks it couldn't have been Connor because he was on the beach all day, and the person who took it would have had to done it after breakfast and before supper. She doesn't trust him and was keeping her eye on him the whole time, so she would have noticed if he had gone back through the forest. And Santana adds that he couldn't have known it was there anyway since he had never been in their villa and nothing else was moved like it was searched, so obviously whoever went for the insulin went straight for it and knew where it was. And they immediately eyed the sleeping Joel since he is buddy-buddy with Connor. Joel then wakes up and they change topic, and we get another journal entry. Dan is back, thank God. We were all so worried about him. He just appeared out of the forest while we were all fishing and swimming and apologized to the group for worrying everyone and for losing his shit over the water. Then he drank down the whole allocation we'd saved up for him while he was away. We told him we understood. Of course we did. Poor Dan, none of us blame him. It's hard. I could be the next person to lose it, or Lila, or even Connor, though that's hard to imagine. We all hugged him, and Connor said, don't do that again, okay, mate? It'd break our hearts to. He stopped. We all knew what he was going to say, to lose another person after Romy and Bayer. Dan didn't say anything, he just nodded, but I could see he'd been crying. I hope he's okay. And we go into chapter 23. The four of them spent the rest of the day looking for Dan with no luck. And at dinner, Santana bursts into tears and they comfort her. And Angel says she's going to go try the radio again. And Connor says he's going to go to the shore because he thinks boats might be easier to spot at night with their lights. Angel comes back and tells them the radio is dead. And then Connor yells for them to come quickly. And they run down to the beach. And it's Dan, badly torn up and dead. Santana loses it, weeping violently until Zaina leads her away, and the rest of them bury him. And as they are lowering his body into the makeshift grave, Lila finds something in his hand and slips it into her pocket and wonders why he was holding it so desperately as his body was swept out to sea. And we go to chapter 24. None of them could sleep. Angel is comforting the weeping Santana, and Lila slips out and joins Joel outside. She tells Joel that she found something, unsure if showing him is a mistake, but she has to talk to someone about it. She holds it out to him, and it's Santana's insulin. She says she doesn't think Dan took it. His outrage that it was missing was real. And she asks Joel if there's something that he wants to tell her. No, he said reflexively, but he looked sick, very sick. Joel, you can talk to me, I said, keeping my voice low. But Joel shook his head. He wouldn't look at me. He was staring out into the forest as though he was urgently searching for something in the darkness. Joel, I said, and he shook his head. Can you just leave me alone for a bit, okay? I need to think. Okay, I said. I turned and opened the veranda door and slipped inside. Angel was still crooning in French to Santana, who was lying with her head in Angel's lap, her eyes closed, her face still stained with tears. Wow, she dropped that quick. I would be pressing him. But she just goes to bed, and in the morning, Joel's mattress is empty, and she can't find him. Can people stop going off on their own? Apparently, it's very dangerous. While she's looking for him, she checks the villa where Romy died and sees a snake and thinks, And as I looked around the empty clearing, I realized it wasn't just a snake. I had been bad at assessing danger since the day I set foot on Ever After Island. I had trusted the wrong people, made the wrong decisions. I had let my instincts override the evidence in front of me. If I had learned one thing from my job, it was to accept the truth no matter how much I wished things might be different. I had a sharp flashback to that day just a few weeks ago, though it felt like a lifetime, when Nico had told me about One Perfect Couple, and I had sat there distracted, half listening to him talk, but really watching the graph of my results fill out on my laptop. The whole time he was speaking, I'd been willing the dots to make a different pattern. The nice, neat correlation I'd been hoping to see, but they didn't. I could have tried to ignore the data. I could have massaged my results or quietly erased a couple of points to make the pattern I wished was there look more persuasive, but I hadn't. I had looked at the information in front of me and accepted what it meant, because that was my job, because my sole overriding duty as a scientist was to face up to reality, and now I had to do the same thing here. I had to look at the facts and face up to what was happening on Ever After Island. I had to find out the truth. And we get another journal entry. Dan is dead. I can't believe it. Another accident. It just goes to show how fragile our lives are out here, how powerless we are when something goes wrong. And it was such a beautiful day. We were all down at the sea, laughing, swimming, playing in the waves. For a moment, I think we'd almost all forgotten the reality of our situation. We were just 7 young people hanging out, having a kind of fun, really. We were throwing around a makeshift ball we'd made out of one of the big empty water bottles, and Dan had swum far out, ready to catch it, and then suddenly he was really, really far out. Angel called to him to come back, and he seemed to hear, and he turned and began striking out for shore, but he wasn't coming any closer. He was swimming and swimming frantically toward us, but his shape was getting smaller and smaller. I couldn't understand it, and then Joel suddenly said, "He's caught in the rip. He's in the rip." He began yelling and shouting, "Swim sideways, don't swim against the current, swim along the shore." But I don't know whether Dan could hear. He was so far out, and the wind had picked up. The waves were starting to break over his head. Connor began to strip off, and Joel said, "No, let me, I'm a stronger swimmer," and pulled off his t-shirt. He dived into the water, but we could see, even before he had gone more than a few meters, that it was hopeless. And then Dan disappeared. Joel's head surfaced above the water, checking his direction, and he stopped. "Where is he?" He called back to shore. "I can't see him. Point me to where he is." But Dan was gone, so far to sea that we couldn't even be sure when we lost sight of him. Joel was beside himself, so was Santana, of course. She's absolutely destroyed. But I think Joel felt responsible, like he should have noticed earlier. Though of course we tried to tell him that it wasn't the case. I should have told him about the rip, he kept saying. I should have warned him. We have lost another person. I keep saying it aloud, trying to make it real. We've lost another person, lovely Dan, who was always laughing and joking and trying to make everyone else feel better. We have lost him. And we go to chapter 25. Before Connor and Zaina join them with their breakfast rations, Lila tells Angel and Santana that she needs to talk to them. She shows them the insulin vial that she found in Dan's hand, and she thinks Joel took it. She tells him that she showed him the vial, and his reaction was really off. I think Joel took the insulin and gave it to Connor. I don't know why. Probably Connor asked him to steal it because he knew we'd suspect him and we would be on our guard if he started sniffing around our villa. Maybe he came up with some sort of argument about Dan being a loose cannon and it being safer for everyone to have a hold over him. Or maybe he just straight up bribed Joel with some water. I don't know about you, but there's not a lot I wouldn't do for an extra liter right now. I wouldn't fucking steal someone's medication, Santana growled, but I saw Angel run her tongue unconsciously over her cracked lips, and I thought she knew what I meant, and was honest enough to know that we might all have been tempted with the right ask. But how did it end up in Dan's hand? Angel asked. Are you saying it was tandis mécanicien staged? That Connor put it there when he found the body? Sorry, I don't speak French again. I don't think so, I said, shaking my head. Dan had rigor mortis. His hand was completely clamped around the bottle. No, I think Dan did go and see Connor the other night. But you said Connor and Zaina were alone. I think I was wrong. I think Dan went out to the water villa and he got hold of a vial somehow. I don't know how. Maybe he found it, or maybe Connor offered it to him to try to placate him and it backfired. Either way, I think they ended up fighting and Connor drowned him, and then pushed his body into the riptide to be carried out to sea. It was just his bad luck that the currents carried it back with the insulin. You cannot know any of that, Angel said skeptically, and I shook my head. No, I can't. But going on what little data we do have, it's the only way I can make sense of Dan holding the insulin the moment he died. He must have taken it from whoever killed him, and we know that wasn't Joel. Joel was in the villa with us all night. And there's something else. Connor's hair was wet when I went out to the water villa that night. Wet? Santana said blankly. What do you mean? I mean wet, like he'd had a shower. He was wearing a towel as well. Now it's possible he went out for a last-minute swim before bed to cool down. but it's far more likely he got wet drowning, Dan, Santana said. Her voice cracked. Oh, darling Dan, you stupid fucker. I begged him not to go out there. I know, I said quietly. Angel put her arm around Santana's shoulders and she wept dry, racking sobs. You didn't do anything wrong. So we confront him? Angel said now, her voice fierce. We get Joel to confess what he did to the little worm, and then we confront the psychopath? Well, I said reluctantly, that's the other thing I'm worried about. I asked Joel about it last night, and he looked sucker punched, more shocked than I would have expected. I didn't accuse him in so many words, but it was pretty clear what I was saying. But I don't think that was what shocked him. I mean, he knew what he'd done. He must have known that there was a chance we'd put two and two together. No, I think he was shocked because when I told him Dan had been holding a vial of insulin, he realized what I did. That if Dan was holding the bottle when he died, that meant he did see Connor the other night, and it probably meant that Connor had murdered him. So he is forced to reckon with the true nature of his psycho friend, and now he is gone to have some midlife crisis moment in the forest? Angel said scornfully, her voice full of disgust. I shrugged. I mean, it's possible, and it's what I hope. It's what you hope? Santana looked up. Her eyes were red with unshed tears. It's what I hope because the alternative is worse. The problem was, it was also more plausible. I don't think Joel was the type to go hang out in the jungle with snakes. What are you saying? Santana looked taken aback. Are you saying Joel has gone over to Connor's side? I shook my head, though I didn't want to say it aloud. The truth was Joel had already been on Connor's side. We just hadn't realized it. But that wasn't what I meant. The alternative is Joel didn't want to believe what I was suggesting. Didn't want to believe that the man he'd put his trust in murdered someone in cold blood. The alternative is he went to confront Connor, and Connor killed him too. There was a long, long silence. 3 pairs of eyes turned to the water villa, and then we saw the door crack open, and Connor began to walk across the jetty. I stood up off the sand. My heart was pounding. Connor had killed Dan. I was sure of that, and it seemed increasingly likely with every moment that Joel didn't appear that he'd killed Joel too, which meant we were on an island with a murderer who was viciously strong and who increasingly appeared to be without a conscience. The question was, what should we do about it? We had less than 5 minutes to decide. Angel says they shouldn't confront him lest he murders them too, but Santana asks how they will get her insulin back, and Lila asks her how many days she has left, and she says maybe 5 with the vial she found, and she doesn't even know if it's usable since it could have gotten seawater into it. And Lila says they have to make him want to give the insulin back. If they accuse him, he will never admit it. They agree on just asking him if he knows where Joel is, and Connor approaches and he asks where Joel is right away, and Lila says they were just about to ask him that Joel left the villa last night, and they wondered if he went to see him, and Connor says no, acting genuinely surprised. Angel asks for their water, and Connor says there is a problem. He says they've been here almost 10 days, and that they are already through almost half the water, and that they are going to have to work a bit harder for their allowances. And he says that in order to qualify for the liquid allowance, everyone is going to have to bring back 2 green coconuts to the table each morning.
Who does this guy think he is?
Angel argues that he knows there are none left except very, very high in the trees where they can't reach. And he just says they'll have to climb the trees then, or knock the coconuts down. He doesn't care. They just have to contribute, or they don't drink. Santana asks him what about him, and he says he will be fishing. Convenient that he gives himself like the easiest job. Lila tells him that she understands that they need to find other sources of liquid, but they should get their allowance now before they go figure out how to get the coconuts down. And he says nope, he finds people work better with a little incentive. Zaina appears and tells him that Lila has a point. Connor, I think Lila has a point. Oh, you do you? Connor said. His voice was mild, but there was a kind of underlying menace in it. Zaina took a step back and then seemed to catch herself and stood up taller, nodding. Yes, I do. Give everyone their water now, and they can earn their supper allowance. Come here, Connor said with a smile. He held out his hand. Zaina looked puzzled, but she put her hand in his and he drew her closer. For a moment I thought he was bringing her in for a hug, and I remembered the way Zaina had stood up for Angel over the food after Bayer's death and the way Connor had backed down. But then Zaina began to squirm, and then she gave a cry, and then a full-on whimper of pain. At first I didn't understand, and then I realized she was trying to pull her hand away from Connor. I looked down and I saw that Connor had her hand in his and was digging his nail into the white half-moon at the base of Zaina's thumbnail, so hard that she was literally buckling at the knees with pain. I had a sharp, agonizing flashback to a time when I had been pinning up the hem of Nico's trousers for an alteration, and he had taken a step back and trodden in his dress shoes on the flat of my thumbnail. He hadn't stamped hard, just shifted his weight, but it had all rested on exactly the place where Connor was pressing into Zaina's nail. It had been, no exaggeration, exaggeration, one of the most painful things I had ever experienced. I had screamed and Nico had startled, fallen off the stool, and afterwards he had accused me of being a drama queen. There's not even a mark, he'd said, although that wasn't totally true. Later on, a faint purplish bruise had spread across the base of my nail, but the white hot pain of it had stayed with me ever since, and now the thought of Connor doing that to Xana deliberately, holding her while she twisted and trying to get away, while her knees gave way with the pain. "The fuck are you doing?" I yelled, and Connor let go of Xana's hand and turned around on me, and for a moment his cold calm was gone, and his face was full of anger that made me step back. "Holding my girlfriend's hand? What are you doing?" He snarled. "You were hurting her." My heart was thudding and my hands were drawn back, although to do what I could not have said. I didn't think my punch would do more than irritate Connor. "She's fine," Connor ground out. "Aren't you?" But Xana was curled over, cradling her hands, and didn't answer. "Get back to the villa," he said. But I moved to stand in between them, and now I found Angel and Santana were there too, side by side with me. So they tell him to leave her alone, and he just says he's going to be fishing and storms off. He might be a big guy, but I think the three girls should just take him out. Dude is dangerous, exactly like I knew he would be. But Connor leaves and they check on Xana, and he says he isn't normally like that. And Angel says nor was her last boyfriend until the first time he was, then the second, and so on. And Lila is taken aback that Angel was in an abusive relationship because she seems untouchable and seems to take no shit. But maybe that explains why. Angel says she was in one for 2 years. It's partly why she left France, and even some of her friends picked him when they split up because he was good at not leaving marks. And she tells Xana that he will not stop, that it will only get worse. And Xana defends him though, and Angel just looks sad. And then they go off to get the coconuts, and we go into chapter 26. So, since the coconuts are so high up in the trees now, Xana says she's going to try to climb one of the trees, and Angel tries to tell her that it's too high and she will die if she falls, but Xana says there are a lot of bushes and greenery to break her fall, and Lila thinks about how Xana is willing to put her own life at risk to avoid testing Connor. Xana ties her and Lila's shirts together, making a ring that she twists around her soles and ankles, and climbs up the tree and is able to knock down some coconuts. They cheer her on, but Lila realizes when it's too late that the next branch that Xana is going to step on, it looks desiccated and it falls as Xana puts her weight on it. Luckily, Xana is able to grip the tree and not fall and says she is fine, and then she stops, staring at something in the distance, and then slides down the tree super fast, yelling that there is a ship. We dropped everything and began running towards the beach, only for Angel to remember halfway that her lighter was up at the cabana. She doubled back and the rest of us ran on, ripping pages out of a copy of The Woman in Cabin 10 that Santana had snatched up as we ran past her villa, not the author doing a self-insert of her own book. We were panting and out of breath by the time we reached the ruins of the ocean bluff and the beacon we'd made. I saw that Xana's feet were bleeding from her hasty descent down the tree. Santana began stuffing the torn pages into the center of the beacon, her hands shaking. "Where's Angel?" she yelled, and I looked back down at the beach, shading my eyes against the glare of the sun. No Angel, but Connor was there, still knee-deep in the ocean, in front of the water villa, his fishing spear in his hand. He was looking up at us, frowning. "There's a ship," I yelled down to him, stabbing my finger towards the misty shape we're out to sea. "There's a ship, help us get the beacon lit." He didn't respond, but then I saw Angel appear from the forest, waving a lighter, running through the dunes toward us. She crested the little hill and then dropped to her knees in front of the beacon and began frantically clicking at the lighter. So they get it lit and are waving their arms. The bonfire was really smoky now. A great plume of white smoke was rising into the still air. It seemed impossible that the ship wouldn't spot it. Down below on the beach, Connor was standing, looking out to sea, shading his eyes, but he wasn't dancing and screaming like the four of us on the headland. He was standing stock still, staring intently at the horizon as if trying to make out what the ship was doing. "It's turning," Santana said, her voice pleading breathless. "Is it? It's turning. I really think it's turning." But as we watched, it became increasingly clear that it wasn't. It wasn't turning. It was continuing along the horizon until at last it disappeared completely. And we go into part 3. The Reckoning.
I think some real bad shit's about to go down.
Into chapter 27. The group is in disbelief that the ship didn't see them, but Lila tries to look on the bright side that there at least was a ship, so that likely means more fishermen are going out after the storm, and it's only a matter of time before another ship comes. Santana isn't being as positive though, because she says she will die in a few days if Connor doesn't give her her insulin, and she says this in front of Xana, which makes Angel hiss at her. And Lila thinks about how weird it is that Connor didn't help them light the bonfire and just stood there. Doesn't he want to be rescued? The question bothers her the rest of the day, and she brings it up to Santana and Angel when they go to bed. And they agree it was odd. Even if he is a killer, surely he still wants to be rescued. I think he wants him and Xana to be rescued. Yes, my stomach twisted, and not just because all I'd had today was Connor's fish and underripe coconut. The brioche had finally become too moldy to be eaten, and we had only a handful of cookies left. I'm just not sure he wants us to make it as well. It would be a lot more convenient for him. I stopped. I couldn't say the words out loud, but I didn't have to. Santana said them for me. It would be a lot more convenient for him if we all died too. Shit. I think you're right. There was a long silence, and Angel spoke, saying words that neither Santana nor I were ready to admit. So we must kill him before he kills us. It has to come to that. We're not killing anyone, I said automatically. Right, Santana? But Santana said nothing. She was looking at the empty fridge, the fridge that had once held her insulin and hugging her knees. Lila, Cherie, Angel said, and now her face was compassionate. Listen to me. Perhaps you have never lived with a man like Connor, but I have. And I know this to be true. If it is him or you, he will choose himself every time. And he has killed before. He killed my boyfriend. He killed him in cold blood in front of witnesses. And I think we both know that he killed Dan and probably Joelle, no? So how long do you think he would hesitate before killing you and me? He would do it right here in the villa. He would strangle us one after another. There would be nothing we could do. He can't though, I said more confidently than I felt. That's the thing. I've been thinking about this, and he's not going to kill us here. He's been careful about that. What do you mean? Santana said, puzzled. I took a deep breath and pointed up at the unblinking black eye in the corner of the room at the camera. It took Angel and Santana a minute for them to realize what I was pointing at, and a minute longer to realize what I was saying. But then Santana frowned. The cameras? But Lila, they can't possibly still be working. There's no electricity. They're battery powered, and I have no idea where the footage is stored or for how long. Have you? If it's on a central drive, there would be no record, Angel said slowly, because the Wi-Fi is not working. But if it's stored on the camera itself, that, I agree, could be a risk for him. But he could destroy the cameras, Lila. I shook my head. Can you imagine if someone took down every camera on the island only to be found as the only person alive 2 weeks later? It would be practically a smoking gun, no matter what explanation he gave. No, he can't afford to do that. All he can do is make sure that everything that happens, every threat, every suspicion, death, they all happen off camera. I'm pretty sure that everyone who's died, it's either been in the forest or down at the beach. There are no cameras there. What about the fight with Bayer? Angel asked. That was up at the cabana, and there are 2 cameras there. Yes, one at each end of the main table, but Bayer wasn't killed up there. He was killed on the steps. And there's no coverage there. I'm not saying that it was premeditated, I said quickly in answer to Angel's skeptical look. I think it was pure luck, but I think it made Connor realize he had a narrow escape, and he's been careful ever since. But our conversation, Santana said, all our suspicions about him, the discussion about him stealing my insulin, they'll all be recorded. Okay, it's not murder, but it's bloody and incriminating for Connor. It'd be more than enough to throw suspicion on him if we all disappeared. Not if the microphones aren't working, I said. Santana looked blank for a moment, and then realization dawned in her eyes. Fuck, I'd completely forgotten that whole thing with the sound. They never replaced the cameras, did they? No, I racked my brain trying to think back to that first day and what Camille had said about the dodgy cameras. I know mine and Nico's was out, and she definitely mentioned one of the cabana cameras and at least one other villa. Ours was out, Santana said. She looked resigned. I remember that Camille girl coming around to try to fix it. Fuck. She kicked angrily at the foot of the bed and then swiped at a mosquito whining past her. Fuck, fuck, fuck. Why does everything keep stacking up against us? How can he keep having all the luck? He cannot, Angel said. She said it calmly, but there was a grimness to her tone that I didn't like. Lila, these broken microphones, they work 2 ways. Yes, they make it easier for him to kill us, but they will also make it a lot easier for us to kill him. You are not killing him, I said through gritted teeth. We may not have a choice, Angel said. Are you prepared to sit there and let Santana die without insulin? That won't happen, I said. There's 3 of us and only one of him. 2, counting Zaina, Angel broke in, and I plowed on. And if it gets to that stage, we will make him give us the insulin. What do you mean? It was full dark now, the quick tropical dusk that turned the sky from milky lemon to deep night in just a few minutes, and I couldn't see Santana's face, but her voice was curious. What do you mean the missing mics will make it easier for us to kill him? I clenched my fist. I didn't like that will, not would, but will, because if he dies, they will have to prove motive, Angel said calmly, and without the microphones, we will not have one. We are not killing him, I said. I lay down on my mattress, pulling the thin sheet up to protect myself from the mosquitoes. It's not going to come to that. It won't. But as I lay there staring into the darkness, a picture came into my head that was not entirely comforting. It was Connor, standing on the beach, shading his eyes as he looked at the boat with an expression on his face that was not relief. It was calculation, and it took me a long time to fall asleep. Chapter 28, Santana asks Connor where Zaina is, and he says it's none of her business, and she is fine. And Angel says it is her business and tries to push past Connor into the water villa, but he holds her back with one hand. Lila decides if they can't get past him, she will go around, and she wades quietly into the sea while he is busy arguing with Santana, but halfway there, he dives in after her. She starts frantically calling out for Zaina when Connor comes up beside her and pushes her into the water, and she begins thrashing, yelling at him to let go, and he says he was saving her life, that she shouldn't go out of her depth if she can't swim, which it's crazy because she's a good swimmer, and she says she can swim fine and to leave her alone, and that she isn't going anywhere until she knows Zaina is okay. So he yells for Xana to come out, and she steps onto the veranda, and Xana has a black eye. Santana tries to call for Xana to come to her. Connor's like, oh, she just fell, she's fine. Except she has other bruises on her, so obviously it's not. Lila thinks that this is the price that Xana paid for siding with them yesterday, and then Santana says for Lila to come back and get away from Connor, and they leave because Xana won't come with them, and there's nothing really they can do at the moment. They return to Angel, and Angel asks where their water portion is, and they said they didn't get it, but tell her what happened, and of course Angel freaks out. Santana and Angel think they need to get rid of him, but Lila says they can't kill someone unless it's self-defense. This is self-defense, Angel broke in angrily, and she was over on the far side of the clearing, and her eyes were fierce. She looked like an avenging angel, the kind with a flaming sword, but she had only a piece of bamboo she was slashing at the undergrowth with. Slash slash. It is him or us, Lila. Slash. Stop kidding yourself. Slash. He has been in this to win from day one. It has just taken the rest of us longer to understand the rules of his game. Lila asks Angel what she suggests then, when a snake pops out from the trees, scaring them, and they wonder if it's poisonous, which then gives Angel the idea that they should poison Connor and pretend it was a snake, and Angel says she has sleeping pills, but she doubts it's enough to kill him. Santana suggests her insulin, saying it's like poison if you take too much. A healthy person might die in a few minutes from a vial, plus likely wouldn't be detectable in a poison test. However, it is the last of Santana's insulin supply, so she would likely die soon after, and they wonder if it's really Connor who even took her supply or if it was Joel all along. Look at the facts. He killed Bear, he stole our water, he's beating up Xana, and if Joel is missing, then he's missing with no water on an island with no water supply, so he's dying or dead. None of that is speculation. It's all true, undeniably true. Connor will kill us if we don't kill him first. This is true, Angel said. I agree. He must be killed. She sounded matter of fact. I couldn't believe it had come to this. I began, but Santana stood up. There was something terrible on her face, a kind of anger so deep. I knew that for her, at least, there was no going back. Lila, listen to me. I am dead in 2 days if we don't get that insulin. Dead. Do you understand that? It's him or me, so choose. Choose right now because you won't get a second chance. There was a long, long silence. I choose you, I said. All I felt was a terrible foreboding. Chapter 29. The rest of the day, they look for coconuts and discuss how they plan to take care of Connor. It will be easy to inject him, but hard to get close enough to do it. Angel suggests that they can put sleeping tablets in a coconut. Santana says it's too risky and the pills would be detectable post-mortem. Angel says they can claim he was sleeping badly and they gave him the pills to help, but Lila says Xana would never back up their story. They considered drugging Xana too and claimed the next day they all felt terrible and couldn't wake up like they got sick from the food. Santana asks what about the camera in the water villa, and Lila says she thinks Connor may have taken it down, as she didn't see it when Xana opened the window today. He likely took it down so no one could see what he was doing out there, and they agree on this plan to give Xana 2 sleepy pills and Connor 4. And we go to chapter 30. They make their way to the cabana. Coconut's already prepared, and Connor is already there with a jug of water. They get their water, and Santana tries to give him his coconut, but he just sticks it in the sand with the others. Plus, he is obviously having way more water than them since he looks pretty hydrated while their skin is peeling. He caught no fish today, so he shouldn't get his water portion, should he? But I'm sure he took it. They ask where Xana is, and he says she has a headache from when she fell and hit her face. Listen, I said hurriedly, thank you for the water, Connor, and for all the fish you've caught so far. I appreciate it's not an easy task, and I know today hasn't been easy for any of us, but we're only going to survive this if we stick together, so cheers. I picked up a coconut, one of the little ones I had been carrying. I recognized the little chip on the lip. Here's to cooperation. Santana looked at me, startled, and then realized what I was doing and why. If we didn't get Connor to drink his coconut now, we would never be sure that Xana wouldn't end up with both of them. To cooperation, she echoed, and gave Angel a look that was almost a death glare. For a moment, I thought Angel was going to tell us all to fuck ourselves, that she would never raise a toast with Connor, let alone to something as poisonously ironic. But then suddenly something seemed to click, and she nodded. Very well, to cooperation, she said stiffly, and reached out and took a coconut. Connor? There was a long pause, then Connor's mouth split in a wide grin, so close to the smile he'd worn in the headshot of that handout we'd received the first day on the boat, that my stomach twisted. When I had seen that headshot when I'd met him for the first time, I had thought what a nice smile he had, how open he seemed, how sincere. But now that wide, warm smile that didn't reach his extraordinary, ice-cold eyes, it seemed the most frightening thing in the world. to cooperation, he said. He picked up the 2 remaining coconuts, the one intended for him and the one we'd meant for Zaina, tucked one under his arm, and tipped the other back. The movement in the dying light was so quick that I wasn't sure which one had ended up under his arm. I was 90% certain that he had drunk the right one, but I wasn't sure. And now I found I was staring, mesmerized, as the muscles in his throat worked, draining the thin, sickly liquid. I saw that Santana was staring with the same intensity and knew that she was trying to figure out the same thing and probably wishing, like I was, that we had drugged both of them to the same level. Connor wiped his mouth, setting down the coconut, and grinned. It's been a pleasure doing business with you. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'd better head back to Zaina. About an hour later, they are all getting ready for bed, and Lila realizes that Angel has been in the restroom for a very long time and goes to check on her. And Angel doesn't answer the door, so her and Santana open it, and they find her slumped over the toilet asleep. Santana asks Lila if maybe she took the wrong coconut, and Lila thinks maybe she could have accidentally picked up Zaina's. And since they don't know if Connor drank his coconut or Zaina's, he could be wide awake when they go to the villa. Still, they have to go ahead with the plan since they don't have any more sleeping pills and can't do this again. And Angel was going to go alone, but now Lila insists that she go with her. But first they lay Angel on her side so she won't choke if she vomits in her sleep or anything. And they go out the bathroom window so that if the cameras are working, it looks like they were in the restroom with her all night. And we go to chapter 31. They head to the water villa over the unstable jetty, and through the window Lila sees that both Zaina and Connor are asleep in bed. She also sees far more empty water bottles than there should be if Connor was actually sticking to his water portion. And she opens the door and neither Connor or Zaina stir. And Santana jabs Connor with the syringe and he wakes up with a great bellow. Before I could move, let alone restrain him, he struck Santana full across the face, sending her flying backwards onto the tiled floor where her head hit with a sickening sound. Still, she got up, blood pouring out of a wound on her temple, and began staggering for the door, but Connor was faster. He scrambled off the bed on all fours like an animal and grabbed her around one ankle. She went down, slipping on her own blood, and he hit her again, punching her in the back so that she crashed to the floor with a moan of pain. As she lay there unconscious, he laced his hand into her hair, lifted up her head, and then with a calculated violence, he smacked it deliberately into the floor. Santana lay still. For the first couple of seconds, I had been too frozen with surprise to move, but with that last horrible smack, my limbs seemed to unlock, and I launched myself across the room to grab Connor from behind, my arm around his throat. It was a stupid move. I should have gone for his eyes or his balls, but I'd never studied self-defense, and I suppose I was mimicking what I'd seen in the movies. Connor, on the other hand, was a fighter, a trained one, and my attempt at holding him back didn't give him more than a few seconds pause. Reaching back over his shoulder, he grabbed hold of my hair and then flipped me bodily over his shoulder to crash to the floor half in and half out of the water villa. For a moment, I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe. I was so badly shocked and winded, it was all I could do to lie there, choking, trying to catch my breath as Connor hauled himself to his feet, kicked Santana in the head, and pulled the syringe out of his thigh. He gave a snarl of fury, then began staggering towards me. I couldn't seem to inhale. I couldn't get any air into my lungs, but somehow, with a huge effort, I rolled over onto my stomach, pulled myself to face the sea, and began dragging myself across the veranda, away from the villa. I'm not sure what I was trying to do or where I was going. There was no way I could have managed to cross the jetty to the mainland on my hands and knees. I only knew that Connor was going to kill me, kill us both, and I had to get away, even if that meant drowning. I had to get away. San, I mentioned, my voice strange and strangled. Santa, are you okay? Is what I was trying to ask. I was too winded to complete the sentence, but even just a whimper from her would have told me whether she was alive, whether it was worth my while trying to get to her, or whether I could only save myself now. Santa, I tried again, but before I could get any more words out, I felt Connor's hand close on my leg. Desperately, I dug my fingers into the edge of the veranda, trying to pull myself away from him, haul myself to standing, but it was hopeless. I had even got a knee under myself when he flipped me over and straddled me, one arm crushing my windpipe. You little cunt, he snarled. He was holding the syringe in his free hand, brandishing it close to my face. What is this? What have you bitches done to me? I couldn't answer. I could only gasp helplessly. His weight was immense, unbearable. It felt like my ribs might crack. My heart was hammering, hopelessly, desperately trying to get oxygen to my brain. But Connor's thighs were squeezing all the breath out of my lungs, and his forearm was pinning the arteries in my throat so that even if I had been able to breathe, no blood would have been able to make past. I could feel my limbs going numb as my body fought to survive, fought to pull back every atom of oxygen. The only thing that mattered, my brain. My vision was splintering into shards of light and dark. San, I tried again. San, was she alive? Or had she already bled out on the villa floor, her body as limp as mine was fast becoming? Because I was dying. I knew that. With absolute certainty, my thrashing limbs were barely twitching now. My vision was a mist of firework, fragments, and blurred darkness. And then, through scattered motes of blackness, I saw it over Connor's shoulder. The dark shape of someone staggering towards him. him. It was a woman, her arms raised with something in them. It took me a moment to make out what it was. A water bottle. A big 5-liter water bottle that she was brandishing like a weapon. Set, I managed, and it came out like a death rattle, like the last gasp of someone with nothing else to give. But it was only as she swung the bottle down towards us that I realized who was holding it. It wasn't Santana, it was Zaina. Oh, and we go to chapter 32. The water bottle hits Connor's head and sends him jerking to the side, and Zaina hits him again in the gut, and Connor falls into the water. Zaina says something to herself, almost like praying, and then jumps into the water and pushes Connor's head under, trying to drown him, and he fights back, and Lila tries to go help her, and she drags herself to the edge of the jetty, but they are being pulled out to sea, and if she swam any farther, she would be too. She yells for Zaina to let him go, then she dives into the rip, calling for her, telling her they have to swim sideways along the shore, and Connor is no longer fighting, and Zaina lets him go to swim along the shore, and together they swim back to the beach, but halfway there, Lila knows she won't make it. She watches Zaina get closer to the shoreline as she starts getting hit by waves and thinks this is how she dies. And we go to chapter 33, where Lila wakes up on the beach and rolls over to cough up a bunch of seawater, and Zaina says thank God and tells her Santana is alive and with Angel, the cabana, and has her insulin. And she's banged up, but she's okay. They were more worried about her because she was out for a long time. Zaina begins to cry, and Lila tells her she was so brave and thanks her for coming back for her. And then back with Santana and Angel, Angel is now telling Santana not to move, that her head is basically held together by a bandage at the moment. And Zaina had dragged her and Lila up the beach to the cabana, and now she is quiet, seeming really shell-shocked. Now Angel is the one keeping them together. Zaina says she's gonna go look for fruit, as they are really low on food, and when she leaves, Angel says she is worried about her. Lila and Santana say she's probably struggling with the idea that she just had to kill her own boyfriend, and the elephant in the room is what will happen after they're rescued. How will they explain Connor's death? And Bayer's, and Dan's, and Joelle's, because Angel found Joelle hanging from a palm tree. Angel says she has been thinking about the radio. Surely there must be a way to fix it or charge it. They look to Lila, but she says don't ask her. She's a virologist and knows nothing about electricity. And Santana suggests they bury the battery in the sand after a lot of fire and seeing if it will give it any more charge. And Angel says maybe it's a lead battery. It is supposed to be sulfuric acid, Angel said. She pronounced it like the French word sulfuric, with the stress on the last syllable. Fin, a mix of sulfuric acid and water. I am not sure where we could find something equivalent on the island. Angel, Santana said, how do you know this? Sorry, but you've suddenly turned into Bill Nye the Science Guy, and it's a bit disconcerting. I do not know this Bill.
Bill Nye, little bitch.
But my father owned a garage, Angel said. She looked down at her formerly pristine acrylic nails, now snapped to stumps inside. When I was a little girl, I would help him in the repair shop at weekends. I was obsessed with cars. It was my father's pride and joy that I could change a tire faster than any of the men he employed. I had a sharp flashback to Angel at the meet and greet, telling us she had wanted to be a Formula One racing driver when she grew up. How we had all laughed at the incongruous image. Now I understood, and I saw the little girl staring out of Angel's tear-filled eyes. I reached out and held her hand. I'm sure you are still his pride and joy, Angel. Then we go into chapter 34. That night they sleep at the forest retreat, and Santana has become feverish over the course of the day, so Zaina and Lila are keeping an eye on her, and Angel has spent the afternoon searching for something that could repair the battery. She returns with burns on her hands and tells Lila that the acid was still reactive. She tried to pry it open, but it's difficult without tools, so she will try again in daylight. And the next morning, Angel and Lila go and try fixing the battery again. I could smell the battery acid even before we had crossed the clearing, and when we got to the shade of the radio hut, I could see what Angel had spent all yesterday doing, hacking through the thick outer skin of the cell with a mixture of nails, screwdrivers, and a broken kitchen knife. She had managed to get a corner of the top cover almost free, like a partly open sardine tin, and you could just make out the liquid gleam of the acid inside. You could also see where quite a lot of it had spilled out onto the concrete and presumably onto Angel herself. They take it outside since it's presumably not very safe to breathe, and hitting it again, Angel accidentally misses her mark, causing a few droplets to land on her fingers, so Lila offers to take over. Angel guides her, telling her she's trying to create a hole large enough to attack the lead inside, that when they can get it open enough, she can try to scrape the sulfate from the lead, and if they expose enough fresh lead, they might be able to create a little more charge. So at last, she's able to get it open, and Angel works to scratch at the lead until it shows shiny. And without much more Lila can do to help, she goes back to check on Santana and Zaina, and Zaina says she can't get Santana to wake up or drink water. She is ice cold instead of hot now, and Lila thinks it may be her her blood sugar. They check her glucose reader and see she is really, really low in each sugar. They don't have anything very sugary left. Lila begins looking for her glucose tablets, and Zane asks if they look like big versions of Pez. And when Lila confirms, Zaina says Connor had them out at the water villa. Oh God, I'm so sorry. Connor took them. They're out at the water villa. I'll go, I said, but Zaina shook her head. No, I have to go. I know where he put everything. She looked sick. Zaina, I'll go. Just tell me where they are. No, I have to do this. Her face was white, but her expression was set. Do you understand? I sat by and I let him do this, and I let him starve you and take all of your water away and put Santana's life in danger. It's my fault she's in this situation. I have to make it right. So she lets Zaina go, and a while later she hears someone running and goes outside to see who it is, and it's Angel running up telling her she got a signal and she spoke to someone. And there's a boat. And we go to chapter 35, and across the clearing, Zaina appears asking what she said, and Angel excitedly tells her that they're going to be rescued. Lila and Angel grab each other and dance excitedly, but Zaina sits quietly. They follow Zaina into the villa so she can give Santana the glucose tablets. They have to crush them up to give them to her, and after a few, she finally becomes coherent and then takes some more herself, and they tell her the news that they got through to a boat, but they weren't big enough to get them, so they're going to go back to the mainland for help. So it might be like 5 hours, but they will be rescued. And then Zaina says, so I have 5 hours left.
What did she just say?
What do you mean? Angel looked at Zaina and then across at me, puzzled. 5 hours left of what? 5 hours left of freedom. I mean, I killed him. I killed my boyfriend. There's no way around that. There was a long silence. Then Santana spoke. Zaina, as far as we're concerned. She swallowed and looked up at me and Angel, seeking back up. As far as we're concerned, I said, it was an accident. Connor fell into the sea during high winds. We all tried to save him. You and I got swept out to sea and barely made it back alive, right? I turned to Santana and Angel, and they both nodded vigorously. Absolutely, Angel said. That's what happened. Zaina was shaking her head. There were tears in her eyes. There are bodies all over this island, not to mention the massive concussion on the side of Santana's head. How do we explain all that? How do we talk about what happened, about the water and the hoarding and Santana's insulin, without them figuring it out? It's all on camera, for God's sake. She waved her hand at the unblinking black eye in the corner of the room. What, you went out to confront Connor in the one place that doesn't have CCTV, and he just happened to fall in the sea and drown while I stood there and watched? They're never going to believe that in a million years, not even if we all swore on the Bible and our mother's lives. But doesn't that make our case for us, Santana said, if we explain what he was like? If I tell them what he was like, I'll be signing my own confession, Zaina said bitterly. You think some Thai or Indonesian court is going to care whether he hit me, or that he put spyware on my phone, or that he cut up my credit cards and made me resign from my job and burn me with spent matches? But I did. It's still murder. We all flinched. Santana looked stricken. Angel looked murderous. Look, I said slowly, Zaina's right. Problem is that we have a motive to want to harm Connor. Not just Zaina, we all do. To the point where no one will believe us if we say that we didn't, even if we back each other up. So that's what we have to fix. We have to make it so that Connor is a person no one would want to hurt. What do you mean? Zaina said. She looked puzzled. We have to create a record of our time here, something that explains everything that happened. Bear's death, Dan's, Joel's disappearance, all of it, but doesn't pin it on Connor. Something that explains about the food and the water, but makes it sound like we all agreed. Something that turns him into a man no one would want to kill. And we've probably only got 6 hours to do it in. I looked up at the sky. The sun was already above the palm trees. Does anyone have paper and a pen? I do, Santana said. She pointed at the front pocket of her suitcase, and I rummaged inside and came out with a lined notebook and a pencil. I handed them to Zaina. I think you need to do this, Zaina. Yours is the account people are most likely to believe. What day was the storm again? There was a silence while everyone tried to remember. Okay, so that's where all the fake journal entries come from. Zaina asks how they will explain her suddenly keeping a journal, and Lila says she could have started it to leave a record in case they all died. So they work out how to rewrite all the events in a way that would favor Connor. I'm not sure what day it is anymore. 27th, 28th, I've lost count. I don't care because the worst thing in the world has happened, and now I'm not even sure if I want to be rescued anymore. Connor is gone. It happened so fast. It was late and we were out at the water villa. Santana was there and Lila. Angel wasn't well and they'd come over to ask whether I had any painkillers left. In the end, they decided they had to leave and they got up to make their way back to Angel to check if she was okay. The wind had picked up over the course of the evening, and when they got to the jetty, Santana hesitated. Is this thing safe? She asked, and I could see why. The waves were buffeting in a way that made the planks shudder and creak. Connor shrugged. It was as safe as he could make it, but nothing on this island is safe. The deaths of our friends have proven that. I don't know, he said. Do you want to wait till it calms down? But Santana shook her head. We need to get back to Angel, make sure she's okay. Connor and I nodded. They began walking across the jetty. They were only about halfway when something happened. I still don't know what. Maybe a plank tilted, or maybe a wave hit them when they weren't expecting it, but suddenly Santana's feet went out from under her and she fell, hitting her head hard against one of the posts. She grabbed at Lila as she fell, more by instinct, I think, than deliberately, and the two of them went over and were in the water before Connor and I could react. For a second, I wasn't sure what to do. They're both strong swimmers and they weren't far from the veranda. I knelt by the edge, holding out my arms to try to pull them both to safety, but then I saw the blood in the water and I realized what had happened. Santana must have cracked her head when she fell and was barely conscious. Lila was struggling to hold her up in the water, struggling against the pull of the current, which kept trying to suck them out to sea with every wave. And before I could protest, Connor dived into the water. He got to Santana fast and managed to tow her out of the pool of the current and get her to me, and somehow, I still don't know how, I dragged her up to the veranda, but then he went back for Lila and I saw that they were both in the pool of the riptide. Beside me, Santana was choking out seawater. She was conscious at least, but Lila was struggling. She was far out to sea and Connor was going after her. I saw them swimming, and then I still don't know what happened. Connor was gone. Was it a shark? Bass told us ages ago that they couldn't get inside the reef, but I don't know if that's true. He was wrong about so much, poor Baz. All I know is that one minute Connor was there, cutting through the water towards Lila with his powerful crawl, and the next minute he was gone, and Lila was still being pulled out to sea. I didn't know if I could save her. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to fall on my knees and cry out to God, ask him why he kept punishing us like this. I couldn't save Connor. I couldn't even tell where he had gone under anymore. But I saved Lila. And Santana lived, and Angel woke up today and she's okay. But oh God, Connor is gone. Connor, my rock, my love, my life. He's gone. He's gone. Perhaps if I keep saying it, I can make it feel real. Connor is gone and I don't know how to carry on. And then we go to chapter 36, where Zaina is crying by the time she finishes the journal entries and doesn't say anything when she gives it to the other girls to read. Angel says it must have been hard to write, and Santana says it is bloody clever. It explains everything. They don't love that it paints Connor out as a hero when he's really a villain, but it's what must be done to protect them. They see Xana running towards them, and she tells them that the boat is there. It's here. Xana burst through the trees into the clearing. She stood there, her hands on her hips, and for a moment I saw her, really saw her, as the sailors would have. Her salt-matted hair, the sheen of dust and dirt, the scars on her arms and legs, the bruises and the black eye, and the way her skin cleaved to her sinews, every vein standing out, the water-starved muscles. She looked wild, emaciated, like a survivor, and then she smiled, and her grin was as wide as Angel's. The boat, it's here, we're saved, we're going home. And we go to chapter 37. They were saved. They find out that the Over Easy was lost to the storm. They offered them a room each to stay in, but they all wanted to stay together. Obviously, trauma bonded, so they ended up in a family apartment, 2 bedrooms, linked by a little sitting room. Santana and Angel in one, Zaina and her in the other. And in the evenings, they came together in the communal area to eat and drink all the water they wanted, and they talked and talked. She says, I told them about Nico, about the growing rift between us, and the fact that I wasn't sure we would have survived the experience of Ever After Island, even without the storm. I told them how I lay awake at night, wondering if Nico knew that, wondering if his last thought before he died was of me and whether I loved him. Angel told us about her childhood, her father who had died when she was 17, and how much she missed him, about her Parisian mother who told her every night she saw her that she gained weight, that no man would want her if she let herself go, and about her abusive ex and how long it had taken her to find the strength to leave him to come to London, where she had met Bayer, and where, for a while, everything had seemed good. Perhaps I will go back to Paris, she said with a shrug that veered on hopelessness. I do not know. Santana talked about Dan mostly, about their time together at school, funny anecdotes, about how he checked the teachers and the time he dressed up in women's clothes and asked for a tour of the school for his supposed son, Anthony. It was the art teacher who had taken him around, a man in his 70s who had taught the school since the 1980s, back when it was all boys, and who kept peering at Dan short-sightedly through his bifocals, murmuring, I'm sure I know you, my dear. Did I teach your father? And Xana talked about Connor, about how he had reached out to her on Instagram when she was just 17, and they had messaged back and forth, flirting, joking, and finally met up at a bar in London on her 19th birthday. She'd taken friends. She wasn't an idiot, but she didn't talk to any of them all night, just sat there enraptured by Connor, dazzled by him like there was no one else there. She told us how wonderful it had been at first, how bad it had become later. She told us how scared she had been towards the end of what Connor had done, might still do. It's my fault, she choked out, her hand over her face. All of this. If I hadn't agreed to come, if I had let him do everything he did. It's not, Angel said. There's nothing but compassion in her voice. It is not your fault, Sherry, I promise you. And how could you have known how far he would go? We have all known a man like him. Sometimes it is all you can do to survive. But as Santana nodded sadly, I realized it wasn't true, not really. Not for me, at any rate. The only man I had known like Connor was Connor himself. Nico and I might not have been a perfect couple, but he had been sweet and funny and gentle, and he loved me with nothing but respect and kindness. I mean, he did call you a stupid cow, so. But Angel and Zaina and Santana, they had all known a man like Connor. Some of them had known several. And as I thought about that, something else floated up from the back of my mind, something that had been scratching there for a long time, perhaps ever since that first day on the boat when I had met Joel and he had told me about his job. I've been thinking, I said now a little tentatively. Santana looked back up from where she was rubbing Xana's back. Zaina wiped her eyes and I swallowed and began again. Ever since we got back from the island, I've been thinking about this whole thing, the whole one perfect couple setup. There was something Joel said. It puzzled me at the time about seeing the handout and trying to get his job correct. And then Dan mentioned it too. Do you remember? I looked at Santana. He said something about looking Connor's videos up back when you got the information pack. Did you know what he was referring to? Santana nodded. Yes, that kind of dossier thing. We got it about 3 or 4 weeks before we left. Yes, but we didn't, I said. Nico and me. We didn't get one. We only signed up a couple of weeks before we set sail. For a moment, all three of the others looked puzzled, and then Angel's face cleared. Of course, I had completely forgotten. You are not in it. It was another couple. What was it? He had a stupid name. Hunting or something? Hunter, Santana said. Hunter and Lucy. I've never heard of him, but I actually know her slightly. She was a friend of my cousin, and when I realized they weren't on the boat, I texted her to find out what happened. And what did happen, I asked. Apparently her boyfriend pulled out when he got the dossier. He had a massive problem with one of the other contestants. Lucy didn't say which one. I know which one, Zaina said in a low voice. She looked at me. It was Connor, right? I nodded. I think so. Did you know Hunter, Zaina? Zaina shook her head. No, but Connor did. He saw his name in the dossier, and I got the impression he was looking forward to seeing him. In fact, he was the first person he asked about when we got to the boat. He asked Camille whether Hunter was here yet. When Camille said Hunter and Lucy had dropped out, Connor laughed. He said something about something like, Hunter always was a pussy. I do not see the point of this, Angel said, but not dismissively. She sounded puzzled. You have lost my thread. Think about it, I said softly. I was answering Angel, but I was looking at Zaina. Think about what all the couples have in common. Everyone except Nico and me. Really think. Angel looked surprised. Share we have nothing in common. Isn't that the point? We're all so very different. Models, actors, fitness coaches, teachers, scientists. The whole idea was to have a diverse cast. No, I shook my head. Everyone had one thing in common. At least one person in each couple did. You all had some kind of history with Connor. Santana frowned and I pressed on. Santana, you were at school with his ex-girlfriend. The one who killed herself, you could speak to his past as an abuser. Rami was a victim of his YouTube channel. All his followers descending on her to call her a body shamer or problematic or whatever it was. Hunter, well, I don't know what happened there, but clearly there was something. Maybe Connor had screwed up someone he loved. And what about me? Angel said. She sounded skeptical. I had never met the guy. No, but you did have personal experience of being in an abusive relationship. Is there any way Baz could have known about that? I mean, I have tweeted about it, Angel said with a shrug. I did a thread about relationship red flags that went viral. Well, there you go, I said. You were the ideal person to recognize Connor for what he was. And Bayer, well, he was the perfect person to rile Connor up, to get him to drop the nice guy act and show his true colors, which was exactly what he did. The first moment there was any kind of tension. You, Santana, Bayer, Romy, practically everyone on the island was handpicked to either speak to Connor's past or make him come clean about his present. Nico and I, well, we were dropped in at short notice, so there was no time to research someone with a link as good as Santana's. The best they could do was find someone like me, someone who might clash with him politically. I remembered Baz's questions at the interview, the ones that had puzzled me so much. Would you call yourself a feminist in your politics? Would you say that you're left of center? Now I understood. He had been trying to find someone Connor would butt heads with, and ideally a woman. Add in plenty of boost, oil the wheels, and some stressful tasks designed to make everyone lose their rag. The storm was never part of the plan. Of course, that was just horribly bad luck. But why, Santana said, her voice bewildered. Why would Baz go to all this trouble to take down a total stranger, however much of a shit? I shook my head again. I don't think they were strangers. Dan told me right back at the beginning of all this that Baz knew Connor. He said that Connor had dated Baz's niece. They start to wonder what if she didn't walk away unscathed either. There was a long pause. I could see the other three thinking about my words, turning them over in their heads. Then Santana's face changed. A kind of horror came over her expression. Wait a minute, what was his name? Baz's? Angel asked, puzzled. Yes, Santana was tapping frantically on her new phone. Part of the emergency package the British embassy official had arranged for us so we could contact our families. What was his surname? He only ever introduced himself to me as Baz. Baz from Effing Productions. I pulled mine out too and began searching back through the emails from Ari. It was true that Baz only ever signed off with his first name. His surname wasn't even in his email address. But finally, deep down in one of the contracts, I found it. Basil Ferrier. I read out. Sounds kind of posh, doesn't it? Not really totally in keeping with his Man of the People act. No wonder he preferred going by Baz. And then I realized the connection. Oh, I get it now. Effing Productions. F for Ferrier. Exactly. And that was her name. The girl I went to school with, Callie, the one who killed herself. Her full name was Callista Ferrier. She told me once she had an uncle in Australia. She was Baz's niece. I stared at her, and Santana stared back, holding each other's gaze as the final pieces slotted into place, and I felt a profound, terrible compassion for Baz sweep over me, in spite of his stupidity, in spite of the way he lied to us. It must have been bad enough for your beautiful 19-year-old niece to kill herself after breaking up with her boyfriend, but to watch the boyfriend go on year after year, growing bigger and bigger and more famous, watch his YouTube subscribers tip to 1 million, then 2, then 10 million, to watch his followers lapping up his rhetoric, more and more of them hitting that like and subscribe. I had watched some of Connor's videos since getting off the island, sitting on a toilet with the door locked and the shower running to cover the sound, and I had become more and more disturbed. Beneath the faux reasonable tone was a vein of poison that his supporters celebrated openly in the comments. Yes, I could imagine that a man like Baz would not be able to stand by and watch that. Car Crash TV was what Joel had called one perfect couple, and he'd been more right than he knew. A car crash was exactly what Baz had been aiming for, an engineered one, with Connor at the wheel, but with Connor's supporters waning on social media. It wouldn't have just been Car Crash TV, it would have been a viral Car Crash TV, and a double win for Baz, a rating bonanza for him, and a career-destroying meltdown for Connor. Baz would have walked away a made man, the hero who exposed YouTube guru for the problematic misogynist he was, and created the must-watch show of the year. The rest of us, well, we were just cannon fodder. I don't know though, because obviously his subscribers already agree with his views, so having them out on the open in the TV show wouldn't really make them stop watching him. I mean, if you've seen this current season of Love Island, these red pill men gain a lot of fans, unfortunately, so maybe it would have just made his fan base grow, honestly, like disappointingly, but I could see it going the other way too. Zaina then points out that the worst bit of this is that they immortalized Connor forever as a hero when he was actually a murderer, and she doesn't know she can live with that, and the girls tell her that's what they have to do to survive and keep themselves out of jail, and they all agree to keep the story going that Connor saved them. And we go into chapter 38. Back in her flat in London, Lila gets a new SIM card for her phone, inserts it, and sees she has a bunch of missed texts, and she answers them, and then she gets to the last set, and they're actually from Nico. She realized he must have texted her after he got back on the boat before the storm, and the texts read, "Hey Lil, well I'm back on the boat and had a chance to cool off, and fuck, I'm sorry, I was a dick. Worse than a dick. I guess if you're reading this you've been kicked out too, or maybe you've won. I hope you know I didn't mean any of that stuff I said when I left. I was just angry and maybe scared too. I felt like this show was my last chance and I let myself down, both of us down, because here's the thing, you didn't. You came through like you always do, because you're amazing and clever and a good person, and fucked, press send by mistake. I don't know what else. I just know I don't deserve you, and I've been feeling it for a while. You deserve someone who's gonna work hard and give you kids and all that stuff I don't know if I really want. I love you, Lil, and I feel like you love me too, but I don't know. Maybe it's time for me to let you go. Fuck, I shouldn't have texted that. Sorry, I'm drunk. I've had a lot of beer, a lot to drink. I love you, and I hope you win. I hope you get the whole prize and pot, Nad. You do something amazing, life-changing. I know you will. You deserve it. I love you. P.S. I hope you beat Connor. Bass says he dated his niece or something and that he's kind of a shit. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at the screen. I only knew that there were tears rolling down my face and that when my phone beeped again with an incoming text, the screen lit up like a candle, illuminating the room with a ghostly glow. I wiped my eyes and scrolled back to the top of the list, where a text from an unknown number sat in my text box. Hey, the text said, "It's me, Santana. Testing your new number. Old number, I mean. Stupid question, but are you going to be okay?" Closed my eyes, took a deep breath, tried to figure out what to say. Then I simply typed yes and pressed send. And that's it.
Oh, thank God.
Let's get into my thoughts about this. This was both a lot. As you know, this will probably be my longest video, and I had to read the most direct quotes for it to really make sense. I don't know why. Some of those parts I just could not accurately summarize while I was reading it. I'm mad at myself now for leaving in such long quotes because it's taking me so long to film. But yeah, that was, again, a lot, but also underwhelming at the same time. Everything you think will happen happens, and the only real twist was that one at the end there, that Baz set up this whole show to make Connor look bad and ruin his reputation. And honestly, reading about the game show accomplishing that would have been far more interesting, I think. Like, if we saw the game show play out and Connor freak out and become painted as this bad guy, I think that would have been way more interesting than what we got. I'm not gonna lie. Like, if you think of like The Compound that I mentioned before, that book by Aileen Rowell, I think, that was like that same kind of format, except it was like dystopian and they had to win the game show. But still, it was really interesting to watch those dynamics play out. And I think we still could have done the stranded on the island thing, but I still wish we had saw a little more of the game show play out and that Nico didn't leave so early on. Like, yes, it was a twist I wasn't expecting, and I think it was like shocking. The author did a good job of that, but I do wish I saw a little bit more of the dynamics play out. Maybe even Nico staying and getting stranded with them, I think would have been far more interesting, and seeing like how their relationship crumbled under that pressure. But no, he left very early on, and all the men in the book suck, and Connor being now immortalized forever as a hero really sucks. And they did that just because they were afraid that maybe Xana would get pinned for his murder, even though there's other dead bodies, and they definitely had enough proof that it was self-protection. Like, let's be for real. I don't think any of them would have gone to jail for it. I think this is very special circumstances that would have given them a little more leeway. Plus, they would all could have corroborated each other's stories and said exactly what happened and not gone to jail, I feel. I mean, tell me if you think otherwise. Tell me if you think they did the right thing, immortalizing Connor as a hero forever. I think it was kind of dumb. Additionally, I had a hard time connecting with any of the characters. For the majority of the book, we know basically nothing besides these like very stereotypical types that these characters are meant to be for the reality show. We just know their careers. We don't even get stories about them till the very end when the girls are all reminiscing. And I would have really liked to learn more about the characters throughout the novel, because you would think, oh, we're spending so much time on this deserted island, surely we're going to learn more about the people. No, we hardly learn anything. We also never really understand what Lila saw in Nico and why she would even agree to this game show in the first place and go to these lengths to make him happy. We don't really get like why. What is redeeming about him or their relationship? Because she's already in her head thinking, I don't know if this is gonna last. Yet you risk your career to go and try to salvage his career on a dating show where he has to date other people. I just don't get it. I don't get it. And Lila's annoying. And then Nico's kicked off before we learn anything more about him, and everything instantly goes to shit, and his exit is not even like very vital to the plot. And like I said, I don't really like Lila either. Her self-deprecating got old really fast. And I say that as someone who has the same issue, and I know it drives my boyfriend crazy, and I know it drives other people crazy, and I really need to work on that. The bright side of reading this book is that it really made me realize how annoying I sound. But she judges everyone else around her and their looks, especially the girls. I, at least, do not do that, I will say. And then she has to mention she's a scientist like every other page, and it just gets really annoying. Like, yes, that's an amazing career, so good for you, girl, but like saying you don't know how to do makeup or you're not as pretty as these other girls just because you're a scientist feels a little anti-feminist to me. She judges all the girls' makeup. She notes how they're pushing up their boobs, like all these things as if they're negatives. Also, why is an uber smart scientist blabbing to every other contestant about what her and Nico's plan is for the game show? In the first 24 hours, when she meets Joel, she can't help but be like, yay, another smart person who I can yap to and tell my boyfriend's eye secrets. And then Joel himself ends up being like super dumb, lapping at Connor's feet for some unknown reason. I felt like maybe he was kind of crushing on Connor. I don't know. Maybe I just took the compliments he gave him in the beginning about his abs a little too far, but like I felt like he was kind of crushing on Connor, and that's why he kept defending him even after Rami's death. It made me really dislike Joel. Again, every character felt like a one-dimensional cliche, and I understand they were cast because of this reason for the reality TV show, but like I said, we never dive deeper into any of their backstories, anything. Really, we don't even see their relationship dynamics besides Connor and Xana's obviously, and I expected the author to go much deeper, and she just never did. Also, I did not like the little in-between chapter snippets that were foreshadowing in the beginning. With the radio calls, I didn't mind the journals from Zaina, because obviously that played into the larger part of the story, but I felt like the radio calls were just spoiling what was going to happen. And then I also get the point of Zaina's journal entries, but they get boring and repetitive after a while, because she's like saying before the chapter what's going to happen, and then you're just rereading it in the chapter, and I'm like, okay, I wish we got this bit after the chapter. That would have made more sense. And the plot twist at the end again just felt really far-fetched, that Baz would go to these great lengths to set up a dating show, put all his money into it without anyone even actually backing it, and casting people that Connor has a past with, which also feels unrealistic, because like, what are the chances all those people would have a past with Connor and agree to go on a reality TV show? Weird. And all that was just with the slight chance would expose his behavior. And I think that's very unrealistic and crazy. And the twist just doesn't contribute much to the overall story. It lacks any sort of punch. I think, again, it would have been so much more interesting to see the game show play out. Connor turning into a villain and seeing him and Baz have tension would have been great. There could still be murder, even. Connor could start losing his shit. I know it would be an entirely different book, but it would be so much better, I think. And I understand that the author is obviously against these red-pilled men and their rhetoric, but then there's no consequences for them in the end. Like, Connor gets immortalized as a hero, Bayer just dies, Baz just dies, which I don't think is like doing what she thinks it's doing. And then poor Zaina probably be plagued with questions about how Connor saved them and how great he was for the rest of her life, therefore never fully escaping her abuser. And I think that's really sad and messed up and just a win for these men again. Yeah. All in all, this was just a big nothing burger that took far too long to get through and far too long for me to film, and I'm really annoyed that I have to then again go back and edit all this, which will probably take me days and days and days. But I am doing it for you guys. Yeah, the book left me with no memorable takeaways. It just reiterated the fact that I hate men like this, and I didn't need a reminder of that. I already know. That's all, guys. I don't want to leave you here too much longer, so just thank you for watching. If you got all the way through this, oh my god, trooper. I really appreciate it. If you enjoy, please subscribe, and yeah, have a great day. Bye.